When Shen Chu heard of it, he was suddenly overjoyed and slapped Luo Ling's shoulder, putting it that way, you have long-liked younger sister. Luo Shuiyan was also somewhat surprised. Luo Ling's character was warm and independent and would not expose his emotions to other. Even though he would normally treat Shen Miao well, Luo Shuiyan had only thought that it was an older brother taking care of a younger sister. She however did not expect that Luo Ling had such intentions. Luo Ling nodded his head. It is really convenient for you, brat. Shen Chu suddenly became somewhat dissatisfied and mouthed off. Chu shut your mouth. Luo Shuiyan glared at Shen Chu before looking at Luo Ling. The more she looked the more satisfied she became. However Shen and Shen Chu had different feelings. Their feelings were really very complicated. When no one wanted to marry Shen Miao, this father and son were not happy, and when someone would marry her, they were also not happy. It was especially so for Shen who felt that he had raised own daughter, who was as delicate as a flower and refined as a previous jade, and now to marry this brat in front of him just like that, he had gotten it cheap. He felt that Luo Ling's nose was not a nose and his eyes were not eyes. Shen Chu said, I did not say incorrectly. If this did not happen to our Zhao Zhao, one can just pick one among all the gentlemen of Ding capital, and even choosing an immortal would not be an exaggeration. Who knew that this happened? And younger Biao brother had gotten it cheap. One did not know what kind of virtuous acts one did in the past life. Luo Shuiyan was furious, you brat. Try speaking those nonsense again. No ivory will come out of a dog's mouth. Luo Ling smiled, older Biao brother said correctly, marrying Zhao Zhao is my blessing. But, he said, this matter has to be consulted with younger Biao's sister. If younger Biao's sister is not willing, then this matter need not be mentioned. At the end, one would still have to respect Shen Miao's decision. Luo Shuiyan and Shen looked at each other and both of them understood each other. At the end, one had to see Shen Miao's attitude if she wanted to marry or not. However, in the current situation, one thought that Shen Miao would not hesitate to choose to marry Luo Ling. After all, being a secondary consort in the Eastern Palace was something that was not Shen Miao's preference. Moreover, compared to the crown prince, Luo Ling's appearance was handsome and his temperament was gentle and accommodating. He was obviously more in line with the expectation of a husband. Luo Shuiyan said, you should not be unduly humble. No matter what, your Gu Fu and me, even your older Biao brother, will be at your side. Shen and Shen Chu was not happy being represented by Luo Shuiyan, but they did not refute. Just as these few people were discussing about the matter, suddenly a servant came in and reported, Master and Furin, there is someone at the door. These days because of Shen Miao's matter, all the people in Ding capital who had some friendship with the Shen family all avoided them and would not take the initiative to come to their doors. One really did not think that at this time, someone would come. Shen Chu asked casually, who is it? The servant said, it is the Furin of the Count of Pinnan. 163 to 168. Everyone. When Su Furin entered the room, she did not expect that Shen Chu and Shen would be there. Speaking of which, she was still somewhat afraid of Shen because early on some years, Shen and Su Yu had political disagreements, thus Shen would not give Su Yu any face. Naturally Su Yu would not take Shen to mind, and thus Su Furin was the same. If it was not because of Su Mingfeng, Su Furin would most likely never step into the doors of the Shen family. Luo Shuiyan requested Su Furin to sit down and Su Furin also greeted Shen. She smiled and looked towards Shen Chu. This should be the eldest young master of the house. Indeed a handsome young talent. With one glance, one could that he is not an ordinary person. Shen Chu successively declined and Su Furin looked at Luo Ling with a smile. This is. Luo Shuiyan explained, this is my eldest brother's son from my maiden family, Luo Ling. The look that Su Furin gave to Luo Ling was somewhat strange and she asked while maintaining his composure, does this young Biao master have a marriage match yet? Replying Furin's words, one does not have yet. Luo Ling replied politely. Afterwards he then looked at Su Furin questioningly, most likely he did not understand why this woman would ask him about marriage match at the first encounter as it was a bit abrupt. The more polite Luo Ling was, the weirder Su Furin looked at him. Upon careful observation, there was some sense of hostility. Naturally the people surrounding would not be able to understand and know how bitter Su Furin's heart was. She did not think that there would be such upright young Biao master in the Shen family. Looking at this young Biao master, he had a good appearance and seemed sensible, he was indeed not bad. One had to know that it was easy for something to happen between older Biao brother and younger Biao sister, and Shen Miao was still young of age and to a point of uncertainty be deceived by this older Biao brother. Like that, how would Su Mingfeng still have a chance? Su Furin kept her spirits up and decided to help her son to fight for it. Because Shen and the rest were males, it was not nice to sit down to hear females speaking, thus he began to get up to leave. Thus there was only left with Luo Shuiyan and Su Furin in the main hall. Luo Shuiyan smiled and asked, what is the matter for Su Furin to come today? She did not even send a card over which indicated her rush. Luo Shuiyan had a faint conjecture in her head but dared not think deeper into it as she thought that she had imagined too much. Su Furin said seriously, that matter that I have discussed with Furin a few days back, what is the result of Furin's current consideration? Luo Shuiyan was startled. The matter discussed a few days back. What matter was discussed a few days back? Is it Su Mingfeng's and Shen Miao's marriage matters? Luo Shuiyan could not help feeling somewhat terrified. Could it be that Su Furin had not heard about the recent rumors? Even though she wished that there would be people who would marry Shen Miao and the more the merrier, so that Shen Miao would have some choices. However, she did not wish to hide it from the other party and make the other fall into misfortune, thus the words she spoke were honest. Su Furin asked, what rumors? Luo Shuiyan's heart tightened and just simply said, the rumor that the crown prince has the intention to bring our daughter into the residence. So it is this matter. Su Furin smiled, I have heard of it. The young lady of the Shen family has unsurpassed behavior and appearance that the imperial family also kept thinking about. When Su Furin said these words, there were not even single mincing of words, she was much more magnanimous than Luo Shuiyan. However, Luo Shuiyan became somewhat confused. Was Su Furin's heart just too magnanimous? She did not understand the intention behind the imperial family of Shen Miao or just did not care at all. You have heard about this matter and still consider Su Mingfeng's and Shen Miao's marriage? Luo Shuiyan asked. Naturally one have to consider. Su Furin nodded her head. On must not be that overbearing and only let the Su family set one's heart on young lady Shen and not allow other families to set their hearts on young lady Shen, right? Furin, we the Su family are honest and sincere and would not be so overbearing. Luo Shuiyan thought that Su Furin's thoughts were not on the same point and she straightforwardly made it clear and told her carefully, the crown prince has the intention to bring one's younger daughter back to the Eastern Palace. As we are all mothers, I would not hide it from Furin. One's daughter is not willing to be the secondary consort to others and thus thought to marry early. However, this rumor was spread out and all the outstanding families are currently evading at all cost. Furin also understand that who would want to have marriage relations with one's daughter at this time. That meant one would be going against the imperial family. Angering the imperial family would only let one suffer in the future. Su Furin, now do you understand my meaning? Do you still want to make marriage relations? The sincerity of these words were concealed and the bad points were all told straightforwardly to the other party. Su Furin however gradually smiled. Could it be that Furin thought that I was a fool and unable to understand this matter? One will also not hide from Furin. Su Furin smiled. The current situation in Ding capital is just too complicated. Our family's master often said to avoid calamity and most probably unable to think of a way to avoid these matters. These 2 years the family of the Count of Pinnan had already withdrawn from the matters of the courts, and speaking of that, it is almost like normal official family, thus not much concern is made in doing things. I understand that this marriage naturally would have its own danger, but who let Mingfeng fancy it? Luo Shuiyan's eyes widened and asked with a loss of voice, fancy. She had always thought that the words that Su Furin said were all courteous words and to perfunctory praise her. Now seeing from Su Furin's expression, it did not seem to be true. Of course, Su Furin said, if it is not Mingfeng that had taken a fancy, how would I keep bugging Furin? She sighed, I have not seen Mingfeng interested in any young lady and know that this son of mine has a fixed mind. If one likes something, it would be too late to change it to another. Since he liked young lady Shen, then in the future, it would not be possible for him to like another young lady. One feared that he would seek death and thus fulfill his wish. Su Furin lowered her head and looked at her fingertips. Because of the Su family, Mingfeng could not enter and pursue officialdom and expend his abilities. It is already us who had mistreated him, and if this marriage does not go along with his wishes, then master and I can only feel that what we owe him cannot be made up in this life. As Luo Shuiyan listened, a little sorrow gradually raised in her heart. They were all mothers, naturally there were places that they understood one another. One heard Su Furin speaking again, however Furin can rest assured, even though our Su family are not official family, one have enough money and shops. Thus food is not a worry. When young lady Shen marries over, master and me will treat her like our daughter, and with Mingfeng's old-fashioned thoughts and kind temperament, there would not be other female in the inner courtyard. The family is simple, and even though young lady Shen will not be able to live as luxurious as in the crown prince residence, she can still feel satisfied. Luo Shuiyan's heart moved. Su Furin's words had gone into the depths of her heart. She did not seek for the person that Shen Miao married to be wealthy or noble, she only won the other person to be of upright character, good temperament, treat Shen Miao well and had a simple household. Su Mingfeng was indeed a good candidate. Thinking of Luo Ling just now, Luo Shuiyan started to hesitate. Luo Ling was certainly not bad, but Shen Miao had to return to Shaochun City. With Su Mingfeng, Shen Miao would be able to stay in Ding capital. This time, due to various considerations, Luo Shuiyan did not reject Su Furin directly and only said that more thoughts were required. When Su Furin left, Luo Shuiyan then went to look for Shen Xin to discuss about the matter. Of course the most important thing was to see how Shen Miao reacted. Both persons were young talents, and after one inquired about Su Mingfeng to confirm everything was all right, one will let Shen Miao take a look at her future husband. Somehow this matter was transmitted into Shen Miao's ears. When Luo Tan came looking for Shen Miao, she was smiling as pleased as punch. On normal days, youngest Biao's sister does not put a foot outside the house, but one did not expect that fragrant wine fears no dark alleys. You see, older brother Ling and the young master of the Su family had come to the doors, and there is also the crown prince. There are a total of 3 peach blossoms. In the eyes of others, one feared that they were envious to death. Shen Miao was very helpless about it. Luo Ling would actually choose this time to voice out to marry her. The most unexpected thing that Shen Miao felt was that Su Furin would actually come again to grasp this marriage for Su Mingfeng. Originally the matter of Su Furin wanting to have marriage relations with the Shen family had made Shen Miao's heart filled with doubts. She had feared that Su Mingfeng did it to investigate Xie Jingxing's identity. Now at this stage, the Su family did not hesitate to be enemies with the Imperial family to marry her. The more Shen Miao felt that Su Mingfeng was a dangerous person. Thinking that it was the best for Xie Jingxing to resolve Su Mingfeng's matter, but Shen Miao glanced at the window. One did not know when this person would return back. It was in the troubled times, but this person chose specifically this time to disappear for no reason. Shen Miao had some dissatisfaction in her heart. Luo Tan still continued speaking. Previous at Kutuo Monastery, when the red rope was hung on the tree of cultivating destinies, youngest Biao's sister's red rope was hung at a very good place. At that time I took a look, and there were a lot of branches around the red ropes, which one fear are the current peach blossoms. I see that these 3 blooms are not enough. There might be even 6, 7 or 8. Shen Miao picked up the teacup and said at the same. Do you think it is like cutting window flowers? One can cut as many flowers as one wanted. Luo Ling had a warm and gentle character. The Su family was marvelous family. It was already considered very rare to see 2 people who were not afraid to be enemies with the Imperial family. How would there be others? However, she remembered about what that mad priest said about difficulties in peach blossoms, and her heart could not help but jumped. Could it be that the Taoist priest had said accurately? Luo Tan still continued to talk to herself, but youngest Biao's sister's red rope was hung on the highest branch. That highest branch was the place of your destination. One did not know who will be my younger brother-in-law. Shen Miao drank a mouthful of tea and absent-mindedly listening to Luo Tan seriously speak her nonsense. It would be good if it is Prince Rui. Luo Tan clapped her hands. Then as the tide rises, the boat flows, and I will be the sister-in-law of Prince Rui. Shen Miao was drinking tea at the moment, and all the tea in her mouth sprayed out and she almost choked. One did not expect that Luo Tan's prophecy came true in Shen Miao's peach blossoms. When it comes, it was shocking. Just 3 blooms were indeed underestimating. On the morning of the next day, there was a special guest that came to the Shen mansion. The person who came was none other than Feng and Ning. After the previous incident where Shen Miao and Luo Tan was kidnapped, Feng and Ning really took the initiative to come over to apologize after everything. Shen Xin and wife were forthright people, and moreover Feng and Ning could not be blamed for the incident, and one could only blame those kidnappers for having superior methods. Even though Shen Xin and wife mentioned that it was not a serious issue and both Shen Miao and Luo Tan did not put it to heart, Feng and Ning however seemed to be very regretful about it. Other than sending people over every 3 to 5 days to give some small playthings, she no longer came over. Most likely she felt that she did not know how to face Shen Miao and Luo Tan, that even when Luo Tan sent an invite to Feng and Ning, she would refuse it. One did not expect that she would take the initiative to come over. Once Luo Tan heard that Feng and Ning came, she was very happy and pulled Shen Miao before running to the front hall. In the Ding capital, other than Shen Miao, Feng and Ning was Luo Tan's only friend. One of them was shrewish but straightforward, the other was bold and unconstrained, both were similar to the other. Because of the previous matter, Luo Tan had not seen Feng and Ning for a long time and was somewhat impatient. Upon arriving in the main hall, one really saw Luo Shuiyan talking to Feng and Ning. Feng and Ning was wearing a white short jacket dress with her hair up in a ponytail and wearing pearl earrings and ceramic glazed hairpin, looking much more quieter than her usual self. Luo Tan took the lead and called out, Feng and Ning, and ran over. Shen Miao however had noticed that beside where Feng and Ning was standing, there sat a young person in the early 20s. This youth's brows were beautiful and was wearing a blue-fitting robes with a gentle and well-mannered look. When he noticed that Shen Miao was looking at him, he nodded his head to Shen Miao lightly. His etiquettes were very detailed. There were some similarities with Feng and Ning with his eyes. Luo Tan only then noticed that there was another person and said, this is. Luo Shuiyan was somewhat embarrassed. It was not appropriate to let 2 young females see a male outsider without any rhyme or reason, but thinking of the reason of Feng and Ning's visit, she felt in somewhat of a difficulty and could not say if she was happy or guilty. It was Feng and Ning who took the initiative to speak. This is my elder brother. Shen Miao suddenly understood. There were only Feng and Ning and her eldest brother, Feng Zixian, who were the Feng family's deborn. This person would be her eldest brother, Feng Zixian. Feng Zixian stood up and cupped his hands to greet Shen Miao and Luo Tan. Shen Miao and Luo Tan quickly returned the gesture. Luo Tan looked at Feng Zixian somewhat doubtfully at Feng Zixian before looking at Feng and Ning again and asked, "And Ning, are you not here today to look for us to play?" If Feng and Ning come over to look for Shen Miao and Luo Tan, she would not bring Feng Zixian over. However, this made one astonished as one did not know what Feng and Ning's intention was. Feng and Ning did not speak and only looked towards Feng Zixian. Feng Zixian looked a little embarrassed but still spoke first. Today one came over because one had Shen Chu's brothers in the military department mentioning that honored residence was seeking for an son-in-law. This one is so bold as to recommend oneself. May young lady and Fern overlooked the aspect of the abruptness. Finishing, his face turned reddish and avoided Luo Tan's gaze. Luo Shuiyan was somewhat embarrassed but there was joy in her eyes. Luo Tan's mouth dropped as if she had not expected that the other party came over for this reason. Shen Miao was startled but she could not pinpoint what her feeling was. This Feng Zixian's words were considered very daring. Anyone who came over to matchmake would always get another to lobby for them. Either it was their parents who would come over to probe, there would be extremely little that they themselves would come over to speak about it. However, even if the younger generation come over, the older generation would be invited so that etiquette would still be followed. When this spreads out, others would speak much about Shen Miao's innocence. He was indeed a very well-mannered person. Shen Miao did not speak but Feng and Ning actively spoke. She looked at Shen Miao. The usual Feng and Ning who was always so proud had reduced her arrogance so much, most likely because she still felt guilty about the matter before and her tone of voice was somewhat tempting to please her. We have all heard about the rumors. Now all the officials' families are all avoiding but it is not your best choice to marry into the Eastern Palace. It is better to marry my eldest brother. My eldest brother is good at both literary and military matters and is dependable. If you marry to our residence, I will also help you and there will always be one to take care. Feng and Ning had always been one who did not know how to make turns thus she spoke very straightforwardly and honestly but was thinking of Shen Miao in all aspects. Luo Shuiyan's face became much softer and warmer than before. Shen Miao asked, "Does Feng Fern and Master Feng know about it?" Feng and Ning hesitated for a moment before saying, "Initially father did not agree but afterwards after our persuasion, he went along with us. My father is one who has a quick sharp mouth but a tofu heart. He is very vocal but he definitely would not block this matter." Shen Miao did not doubt this point at all. She knew that Feng and Ning was one who was not calculating and guessed that Master Feng was also one who was above it. She then looked at Feng Zixian again and asked, "Does gentleman Feng think that I am pitiful so one then lend a helping hand and marry me?" When these words were out, everyone was startled. Luo Shuiyan was at a daze that Shen Miao did not have a trace of shyness or any emotions in her lifetime event. It was indeed strange to treat it so calmly. Feng Zixian did not expect that Shen Miao would ask such a question that straightforwardly. He quickly recovered to his senses. This one's younger sister had mentioned about young lady numerous times and Zixian admires young lady's artistic talents and temperament. This time, it was also a coincidence opportunity, else one dare not take assistive measures. After finishing, his face became redder. When Luo Tan heard it, she laughed out. Shen Miao was somewhat weak all over. She really did not know how did Feng and Ning describe herself normally that artistic talents and temperament were used. Feng and Ning looked at Shen Miao anxiously. My eldest brother is definitely better than the crown prince. Shen Miao almost laughed out. If these words fell into the ears of other, one would say Feng and Ning is being disrespectful. However, for Feng and Ning to be able to say these words, it meant that she had sincerely placed Shen Miao in her heart. Shen Miao looked at Feng Zixian, who looked similar to Feng and Ning, magnanimous facial features. He should be an honest and straight person. Shen Miao smiled. One cannot settle my marriage in just a few short words. This would not be fair to me and also to gentleman Feng. Luo Shuiyan heard Shen Miao's words and had other thoughts in her heart. Shen Miao clearly had different thoughts of her marriage. However, as a mother, one did not know what exactly Shen Miao was intending to do. Shen Miao was not willing to marry to the Eastern Palace and was not interested with these young talented characters. Luo Shuiyan was somewhat anxious. One had thought that no one dared to go against the Imperial family and come over to the Shen mansion to propose marriage. Unexpectedly there came three, Luo Ling, Su Mingfeng and Feng Zixian. Either one of them would make one satisfied but Shen Miao unfortunately did not see anything special about all of them. Feng and Ning said, "But aren't you anxious? There is almost no time left." These words were not false as no one knew when the Imperial edict would be passed down. If it was previous, naturally there would be a lot of time for Shen Miao to think clearly but now if the Imperial edict was passed down then there would be no room for change at all. Shen Miao waved his hands and just as she was about to speak, suddenly she saw Jing Jie ran over in a rush. "Young lady, someone from the palace has arrived." Luo Shuiyan's face turned white in an instant. Not daring to let others discover that the siblings of the Feng family was here, Luo Shuiyan brought Shen Miao to the front hall to receive the message. Once the young eunuch who came to speak was done, they then know that it was not that an Imperial edict was passed and it was just to let Shen Miao enter the palace alone tomorrow as the Empress had some things to say to Shen Miao. After the young eunuch left, Luo Shuiyan's face became extremely ugly. Even though there was no Imperial edict, it was not much better than that. Tomorrow Shen Miao would enter the palace alone and if at that time the Imperial edict was brought up, Shen Miao would not be able to refuse by herself. Even if it was not mentioned, one did not know what kind of intimidating words the Empress would say. It was a sinister motive to let Shen Miao meet with the Empress alone. Feng and Ning and Feng Zixian were somewhat worried and conversely it was Shen Miao that advised them not to place it in their hearts. After the Feng siblings left, Luo Tan then asked, "Youngest Biao sister, what can be done now? Could it be that the marriage will be settled in these days?" The marriage cannot be settled overnight. 8 characters needs to be exchanged, the necessary people has to be invited to speak and there are many other matters to settle. It would not be in time for tomorrow. Shen Miao said. Luo Tan stared blankly, so there are still so many things. She then continued, "Youngest Biao's sister does know it clearly." Shen Miao paused a while. Of course she was clear with it, it was because in her previous life she was filled with joy as she watched each of these things were completed and could not wait to marry into the residence of her loved one early. But she did not know that it was a tomb that did not even spit out one's bone after it has eaten cleanly. Luo Shuiyan looked towards Shen Miao seriously. "Zhao Zhao, tell mother of these people, who do you like?" It not considered as like. Shen Miao smiled gently, "Just pick the one most suitable. Mother do not need to be overly anxious. It is not too late for me to decide after returning from the palace tomorrow. Maybe there would be even more suitable people appearing." Luo Shuiyan was startled. Shen Miao always looked at her marriage without a care and seemed not to have any expectation for her future husband which made Luo Shuiyan panic in her heart. It was until when Shen Miao left before she muttered to herself, could it be that Zhao Zhao still have feelings for Prince Ding? Shen Miao did not know these thoughts from Luo Shuiyan at all. She had already made plans for the worst case scenario and it was none other than to burn both Jade and the common stone with the Imperial family. She had the strong determination but did not know if the Fu family people have plans to abandon their reputation. Even in the worst case scenario, she could not lose one's hope since one had to continue living. As she thought like this, she looked over at the windows and finally felt a bit annoyed before instructing Gu Yu, close the windows tighter. I want to rest. The crown prince had the intention to marry Shen Miao as a secondary consort, which made the current situation of official families not daring to engage with the Shen family at all. The matter was in such a buzz that it naturally also spread into the ears of the princes. In the residence of Prince Zhou, the two brothers, Prince Zhou and Prince Jing, were sitting in front of the table discussing of the matter. After fighting with number 6 for so long, one did not expect that the crown prince exploit a loophole. Prince Zhou drank the wine indignantly. The crown prince looked honest usually and is now smart. Prince Jing was calmer than his older brother and shook his head. The way I see it, this matter is not only the crown prince's idea and also Imperial Father's incitement. Imperial Father is not satisfied with us in Prince Li's clique since the crown prince was still the rightful one. Imperial Father helped the crown prince in bias, thus wanted to give the Shen family army's power to the crown prince. Imperial Father is also old and confused. Prince Zhou sneered. It is always said that abler people does more work. That invalid and sickly crown prince did not think that even if the military power of the Shen family fall into his hands, how many years can he use it? It might be possible that one does not need to wait for it to warm up when one breathed one's last and then it would have given others a cheap advantage. These words were very vicious, as it had the meaning of almost cursing the crown prince to die early. Even as such, Prince Zhou's tone was filled with jealousy as one had to know what if the crown prince gained the military power of the Shen family, not only his power and influence would grow, not only could he fight with him and Prince Li as equals, he might be able to exceed them. The crown prince had the unique advantage of being the rightful successor and in addition to the Shen family's military power. With such odds, how could Prince Zhou not be anxious? So as to speak, at the beginning one might as well let that little girl of the Shen family marry to number 9. It is better than the crown prince. Prince Zhou said solemnly. Number 9. Prince Jing's smile was profound. Fourth older brother, number 9 is not as simple as you and I think. You are speaking about Shen Wan and Prince Jin's matter. Prince Zhou had a sense of uncertainty. No matter how one looks, there was someone behind inciting the matter. Even if it is true, then it only indicates that he has that ambition. Speaking the truth, between his 9 brothers, which one does not have any ambitions to that throne? Number 9 did not take any sides as he wanted to stand alone. With such ambitions, one have to have that ability first. One don't even participate much in the court matter on usual days, so which official was willing to follow him? Fu Shuyi and Shen Wan were very close in secret and there was also an unclear relationship with the crown prince of Qin country. When this was heard by the other princes, they were wary of Fu Shuyi but did not place him on the first position. There was no other reason except that Fu Shuyi did not participate in court matters for many years, so even if he had that ambition, he did not have the strength. It was just one who had the heart higher than heavens and life as thin as paper. Comparing with him, the arch-enemy was more important. Prince Jing shook his head. Fourth older brother should not underestimate number 9. I always felt that he hit himself deeply. Prince Zhou waved his hands impatiently. Without any rhyme or reason, why keep on mentioning number 9? Today I called you over as there is a matter to be discussed. Prince Zhou lowered his voice. We cannot just watch as the military power of the Shen family land in the hands of the crown prince. If the crown prince gained the military power and the imperial grandson is born now, Imperial Father would have the intention to support and our chances would become even smaller. I have fought with Prince Li for so many years and do not want the crown prince to gain such cheap advantage. Fourth older brother's meaning is. This marriage cannot be tied together. Prince Zhou smiled cruelly. The best to become enemies instead. There are thousands of methods to create enmity. Which one does fourth older brother pick? Prince Jing asked. Naturally it is blood feud. Prince Zhou placed his wine cup down. That little girl of the Shen family previously thought about number 9 wholeheartedly and definitely not willing to marry the crown prince. In this case our imperial family would not force someone to do anything, so why not free her instead? It is not easy to take action on Shen Miao. Prince Jing said. After the last time Shen Miao was kidnapped by others, Shen had double the number of guards she had and now she is heavily guarded, so how can action be taken? Prince Zhou smiled. It is not possible outside but it is possible in the palace. He was immensely proud of himself. After entering the palace, no matter what kind of guard they are, they all have to wait outside. Upon entering the palace, it will be our world. I had inquired and know that the little girl of the Shen family would be coming into the palace alone tomorrow. After she had entered and seen the empress, it would be our opportunity and it would be the easiest thing to do at that time. Prince Jing said, it is easy to take action in the palace but it is easily to be suspected upon investigation. So this is a matter where one can strike 2 eagles down with one arrow. Prince Zhou smiled. You say, why not make it look like it is from number 6 a hands? Prince Jing eyes lit up. Both brothers and Prince Li's clique had been fighting for so many years and none of them came up on top. If this time Shen Miao met an accident in the palace, with Shen's love for Shen Miao, he would place the blame onto the crown prince. If it was not the crown prince's intention of marrying Shen Miao would not encounter the accident, thus it could be considered as the Shen family and the crown prince became enemies. At the end when Prince Li was discovered as the mastermind, Prince Li would not benefit from it. Without utilizing one soldier or striking a single blow, to clear up 2 rivals, what was there against it? Prince Jing silled. Fourth older brother's idea is not bad but one have to carefully arrange it and remove all the flaws. Someone come and invite my aides in. Coincidentally when the residents of Prince Zhou was discussing about the assassination of Shen Miao tomorrow, the residents of Prince Li were also racking their minds over the matter. Prince Li smiled at the 2 brothers in front of him. What do you all think? Prince Shang had a cautious and timid character and as he was looking at Prince Li's appearance, he could not help but shudder. Prince Li had always been a smiling-faced tiger. On the surface he would have an amiable appearance but there were a lot of vicious things that he had done over the years. He said, would it be too risky? Prince Chen heard it and said, what risk is there? One could not really let the crown prince marry the young lady of the Shen family and for no rhyme or reason gain the military power of the Shen family. Sixth older brother and Prince Zhou had been fighting for so many years and there was still no result to it and the crown prince is sickly. He is not afraid that he had the life to obtain it but none to enjoy. Prince Chen had always talked straightforwardly and did not care about consequences. These words were very impudent but it was obviously in line with Prince Li's heart. Eighth younger brother did not say incorrectly. It was not my wish to see crown prince gaining the military power of the Shen family. If this marriage is successful, not only me but both brothers would also be implicated. This cannot happen. I propose to assassinate the young lady of the Shen family so that one can spare all later troubles. Even though the young lady of the Shen family is innocent, it can be said that she was also implicated by the crown prince. Prince Li talked about the assassination in all smiles. Even though his words were very sympathetic towards innocent Shen Miao, there were no traces of mercy in the tone used. But how does one push this matter to Prince Zhou? Prince Shang asked softly. Prince Zhou's usual actions are arrogant and it is reasonable that he would do things on impulse and Imperial Father had been very vocal about him. Moreover, when supporting the crown prince, imperial father would only blame him if one lost the Shen family military power because of Prince Zhou. Prince Li muttered on. One arrow, two eagles. It is a good idea. Prince Chen said with wide grins, I support sixth older brother. Prince Shang did not speak, but it did not matter if he did not speak. Both he and Prince Chen were following Prince Li, so Prince Li's decision also represented both of them. If it was successful, naturally one would be raised to heavens, but if it failed, then all of them will fall into misfortune. This was the shared delights and common hardships that was agreed upon in the beginning. His heart sighed slightly and he could only hope that during the assignation of Shen Miao tomorrow, everything would be carried out smoothly. The night was as dark as ink, and when the winter wind blew onto one's face, it was so chilling and sharp, as if someone was shaving one's face. The water that were drawn during the day had become ice at night, and just like the buckets that were placed outside the room, on the second day, it would be stuck on the ground and unmovable. Up in the inn, in front of the windows, the purple-clad youth was standing with his hands at the back. His brows were tightly locked and one did not know what he was thinking about. A snow-white dove flew in from outside and landed on the windowsill in front. There was a layer of thin ice on its body and perhaps was surprised to be flying in such a cold weather. Xie Jingxing took the little silver tube from the pigeon's leg before throwing the pigeon behind him. The charcoal was burning in the room, making it warm. The pigeon flew onto the study table in the room and stuffed its head into the little bowl of corn kernels. Xie Jingxing took out the small piece of paper from the silver tray and started reading. Afterwards he then threw it into the stove to be destroyed. Tai Yi walked in from outside and greeted Xie Jingxing's back. Master, the carriage is parent to return to the capital. Xie Jingxing replied with an sound. Tai Yi however did not retreat and looked at Xie Jingxing's back view, as if hesitating to speak about something. Speak if there is something to be said. Xie Jingxing said without turning around. Tai Yi quaked and quickly said, Master, there is news from the Ding capital. These days Shen is searching for a suitable young talent for 5th Shen young lady, seemingly having intention for marriage. Xie Jingxing did not turn back. Tai Yi looked at the straight back view of the other party and he did not know why, but he felt that his head was becoming numb. He did not know if he should say these things and he complained in his heart. Ji Yushu and Gao Yang of the Ding capital side did not mention about this matter in the letter that was sent over. Tai Yi mentioned it now. In the future Xie Jingxing would blame both of them and it would look like Tai Yi was the one who provoked it. However, if one did not speak of it, this issue mattered a lot, so if Xie Jingxing knew of it by himself, the matter would have become big and he did not need to work a personal bodyguard and it was likely that he would have lost his life too. Between loyalty and life, Tai Yi would choose the latter decisively. He said, Su Mingfeng of the Su family, Luo Ling of the Luo family and Feng Zixian, the eldest son of the Feng family, had all paid a visit to the Shen mansion. Feng Zixian, the youth turned around and stared into Tai Yi's eyes before asking, why did Feng Zixian pay a visit? Tai Yi's entire back was cold but he thickened his skin and said, because Shen is anxious to marry 5th Shen young lady off due to the news that was spread from the palace that the crown prince has the intention to marry 5th Shen young lady as a secondary consort. Then Shen family did not wish for 5th young lady to marry into the eastern palace and wanted to marry 5th Shen young lady before the imperial edict arrives. The young lady of the Feng family and 5th young lady are good friends, thus she had specially looked for her older brother to solve the issue. When did the news spread from the palace? Xie Jingxing asked slowly, but the voice seemed to be coated with a layer of ice. Tai Yi did not even dare to look at Xie Jingxing's eyes as he lowered his head all the way to the ground. 5 days ago. The news 5 days ago only reaches now. Xie Jingxing did get furious but instead laughed. The beautiful pair of peach blossoms' eyes seemed to have anger. This prince do not know when did one start raising a bunch of useless things. The air in the room got cold and seemed to be even colder than outside. Even with the warm charcoal burning, the pigeon on the table lightly cooed and hid its head under its feathers. Tai Yi felt like weeping but had no tears and still had to finish the words that he had not spoken. Today the palace sent a message to the Shen family for 5th Shen young lady to enter the palace alone tomorrow as the empress has something to discuss. Before the voice landed, one saw a flash of the handsome purple-clad youth's figure and he was already at the doorway as draped the fox fur cloak over before saying coldly, prepare the horse. Xie Yi was startled. Master, isn't the set off tomorrow morning? Xie Jingxing glanced at him indifferently and Tai Yi shuddered, not daring to say anything more. On this night, the wind and snow accompany each other, making the cold air enter one's bones. Some people were on the bed turning over, unable to sleep. Some people were in a luxuriously residence planning a assignation conspiracy. There was also some people who were taking for granted as they living in the Imperial Palace, and there was people riding on prestigious breed of horse galloping in the oncoming wind and snow thousands of li away. Some people were happy, some people were in sorrow, some people were restless, some people were as pleased as a punch. In the vast country of Mingqi that looked like a painting, the dance and music in the Ding capital rose and laughter was heard everywhere as the year was closing, but no one could see the turbulent times under the clam lake. In the residence of Prince Ding, in a certain room, there was someone who was playing against oneself. The male's green robes were natural and graceful and there was a disordered chess game on the table. The white and black pieces were intertwined on the place and looked extremely complicated. For every step that was taken, he had to think for a long time that it seemed that it was down to the bottleneck, but he could not place the black pieces in his hands down. The light slightly moved and seemed to be almost extinguished when he got up and poured in more oil and the room brightened. The male's brows were as light as breeze and as clear as moon, and were of an air of modest gentleman. There was also arrogance in his heart, but between his eyes, there seemed to be some sorrow. This person was Pei Lang. Pei Lang looked at the wind and snow night scene and sighed deeply. Fu Shuyi's chess piece move was indeed a good one, redirecting the waters of calamity to the east. No matter if it was successful or fail, there would not be any trace of relationship with Fu Shuyi. No matter what the result was, the crown prince would be in misfortune, Prince Zhou and Prince Li in bad luck, or the Shen family, to Fu Shuyi, it was a good thing. With such a move, Shen Miao almost did not have any other routes to go. Even there was, it would only be an inferior move. To sum it up for this round, Fu Shuyi would not lose. Pei Lang was somewhat worried for Shen Miao. He also did not know why was he worried for Shen Miao. If Shen Miao died, then he could follow Fu Shuyi rightfully and properly. Fu Shuyi replied on him heavily, and if he did not read it incorrectly, this person had the abilities of a monarch and in the future fowls and dogs like him would turn into immortals. There would be endless riches and glory and it would also be better to protect Lu Ying. However, he was still reluctant to see Shen Miao lose. These days Fu Shuyi suspected that there is a traitor in the residence and had doubled the guards in the residence of Prince Ding that even a housefly could not fly in, much less sending information out. He did not have any way to communicate with Shen Miao and could only be secretly anxious. Hearing that Shen Miao would be going to the palace alone, coincidentally, he was also going to the palace tomorrow. Even though it was as the aid of Fu Shuyi, he was still an low-ranked official. Shen Miao did not have any route left, but at the end of the road, will there be any other alternatives of survival? After a moment, Pei Lang looked at the chess game in front of it and it was in a predicament and there was not necessary to continue playing. One of his hands grabbed one of the legs of the board and suddenly turned his hand over. Just a light lift made all board filled with chess pieces fall onto the floor with crisp sounds. The ground was in a mess. Nothing of the original game could be seen. Early on the next day, Shen Miao entered the palace. Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qin were worried about her and let her bring a number of guards. But the guards of the Shen residence could not follow Shen Miao constantly, and once they reached the palace gates, they had to wait outside. Before Shen Miao's departure, she had put on all the different jewelry that Xie Jingxing gave. Everything that could be worn were worn. Towards the Imperial Palace of Mingqi, she could not guarantee that it is the most malicious place and only feared that accidents would happen, thus she made preparations. Once she reached the palace gates, Gu Yu and the rest waiting outside with the guards while Shen Miao was led into Kunning Palace by the palace maid. Along the journey, the palace maid felt somewhat strange. The journey from the palace gates to Kunning Palace was not considered easy, as one had to walk through a number of long corridors and a few gardens, but Shen Miao walked familiarly. Even along those old and loose steps, the palace maids need not need to warn her, and she would skip the steps accordingly. The palace maid was suspicious in her heart. Could it be that Shen Miao came to Kunning Palace once and remembered it so well that not one mistake was made? One would not expect that this Kunning Palace was the place that Shen Miao stayed in her past lifetime, that every single grass and wood were all remembered. Thus, facing all the imperial furnishing and delicate displays, she would turn a blind eye to it, and if one looked carefully, there was a flash of aversion in Shen Miao's eyes. These people did not know. Upon reaching Kunning Palace, the servant was styling the Empress's hair, and Shen Miao had to wait for quite a while before the Empress invited her in. Today consort Dongshu did not come over, and the Empress was the only mistress. She wore a somewhat formal robes with the 9 phoenixes hairpins and put a heavy makeup to display oppressive feeling. Shen Miao took a glance and understood in her heart. This was treating her as a little girl who had not seen the world and wanted to use the imperial family's prestige to scare her. Force her to relent voluntarily. No wonder Luo Shuiyan was purposely dispensed. If Shen Miao was truly a 16-year-old young lady and with the Empress' formal appearance and some threatening words, one would find one isolated and helpless, that in a state of confusion, she would relent accordingly. But how was Shen Miao a little girl? The person in front was an empress, and in her previous lifetime she was an empress and was more knowledgeable that this one had even bigger airs and suffered more, so this little act of a fox exploiting the tiger's might really did not enter her eyes at all. Shen Miao's eyes hang down and a humble smile floated on her face. The empress slowly frowned. Shen Miao's reaction was somewhat different than from what she had thought. She did not know if Shen Miao was deliberately acting confused or was originally stupid. Her gaze landed on the bracelet on Shen Miao's wrist and her eyes slightly congealed before she smiled. That bracelet is classified as high grade. Come up and let Ben Gong take a look. Shen Miao went up accordingly, and the empress held Shen Miao's hand. One did not know where one had found such a rare jade material, so transparent and exceptionally smooth. Just as she was about to praise a few sentences, she heard Shen Miao speaking with a smile, replying to your ladyship, this official's daughter's necklace and earrings also looks good. The empress was dazed before seriously looking at it, and the corner of her mouth could not help but jerk after looking at it. Cat-eye hairpin matching with pearl earrings with amber necklace, and needless to say all the other small jewelry. Each of them were pervious jewelry with exquisite craftsmanship, but why did one brainlessly wear all of them? The empress suddenly did not want to praise Shen Miao's jewelry and even lost interest in that bracelet. There was some despise in her heart, as in the beginning everyone said that the young lady of the Shen family was an idiot that loves gold, but afterwards there was a change. From today appearance, there was no difference from previous. Thinking of marrying Shen Miao to the crown prince, the empress's heart was not happy. If it was for the sake of giving the Shen family's military power to the crown prince, the empress was not willing to let such a coarse female marry into the eastern palace. The empress released Shen Miao's hand. Today Ben Gong only wanted to talk to you. She sighed. That day one had mentioned it with your mother that you do not have any engagement and at the right age. Ben Gong really liked you and wanted to be a matchmaker for you. Naturally Ben Gong would not make things difficult for others, you have to like it too. Shen Miao lowered her head without speaking. The empress patted her hands. Do you think Ben Gong live well? Is it impressive or not? Shen Miao sneered in her heart, but she had a smile on as she replied, your ladyship live well and it is impressive. Marrying into the imperial family would allow the powerful one protect and dote. Every female would be able to live well and impressively. Ben Gong life is indeed good. If you have this kind of good luck, do you want to live impressively? These words had the intention to tempt. Shen Miao's lips slightly rose, but her words were instead humble and fearful as she knelt down. This official's daughter is currently living very well and dare not to look at other things and don't even dare to compare with your ladyship. May your ladyship spare this official's daughter a life. The empress was stunned. She did not expect that Shen Miao would have such a reaction. There were numerous of people under heavens that wanted to climb to higher branches, thus the empress knew that as long as it was normal females, there would be a little vanity, and by using herself as a lure, it would be easy to convince Shen Miao due to her young age, and one did not fear she would not be tempted. As long as Shen Miao loosen a bit and follow her words, then the imperial family would be justified to push the marriage to the Shen family. Since one wanted to be a bandit, one had to conceal some parts of it. Who knew that Shen Miao would have this kind of reaction? Not tempted, no hesitation, and instead fearful. The empress did not feel good. Could it be that being an empress was such a scary thing? Or is it that the deborn young lady of the Shen family had a courage of a mouse, or was as stupid as a cow and could not understand her subtle hint and thought that calamity was approaching? One could not make mud rise up and climb the wall. In the remaining of the time, no matter how tactful the empress spoke or how harsh or gentle, Shen Miao still had a humble and fearful appearance on. It was because of this appearance, her mouth was very tight and one was unable to get a single word out of her. At the end the empress was somewhat angry and let Shen Miao go back in annoyance. She only thought that since this matter could not be targeted from Shen Miao, then one had to discuss new approaches with Emperor Wen Wei. Because the empress's attitude was not of satisfaction when she let Shen Miao leave, the palace maids that was bringing her also did not care much of Shen Miao and just give Shen Miao to a young eunuch who was passing by to bring Shen Miao out of the palace. The young eunuch naturally complied. The young eunuch brought Shen Miao towards the outer palace and took a few turns. There are a lot of palaces in the palace, and other than the few palace that was used by the consorts, most of it were the eunuch and palace maids' rooms. This young eunuch brought Shen Miao to a walk on the secluded area, and after turning into a garden, one was facing a neglected garden, Shen Miao stopped and said, this is not the direction to leave the palace. Where are you bringing me to? Her hands moved towards her bracelet. No one was more familiar than her on Mingqi's palace and halls, as she knew which direction to escape was the most advantageous to her. That young eunuch was startled and quickly whispered, Gentleman Pei wants to see young lady. Pei Lang. Shen Miao frowned slightly. After thinking for a moment, Shen Miao still followed the young eunuch. Pei Lang had not written a letter to her for a long time, and Shen Miao still thought that Pei Lang was discovered by Fu Shuyi. However, when she sent Mo Qing to inquire, he seemed to see Pei Lang in the residence of Prince Ding, and he seemed to be safe and sound. If Fu Shuyi were to be suspicious of Pei Lang, he would definitely not let Pei Lang be that unrestrained. If Pei Lang looked for her, then there must be something important. There were many coincidences in the world. What Shen Miao did not know was that the imperial family had the intention to bestow a marriage, implicating a group of people. Shen Qin, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Chu were family and would run non-stop with regards to the matter, but a few other people also came forward afterwards. For example, Luo Ling expressing his sincere heart, Su Mingfeng mistaken marriage, and Feng Zixian's reaching out to help. There were thousands of strands of connection in the world, and those connections were as thin as the sparkling and translucent thread that spiders spit out in each respective position. When it crisscrossed, it would form a thin and dense network of knots that would become a strange and unexplainable coincidence. Princess Rongshin entered the palace. Her health had always not been good and had become thinner in the recent years. She would only enter the palace in a handful of days in a year and seemed to be somewhat eager today. The palace maid wanted to report it, but Princess Rongqing waved her hands. Ben Gong did not have an invitation and just wanted to discuss about some matters with Imperial older brother, so there is no need to report it. How would the guards at the palace gates dare to stop? Even though Princess Rongqing did not show up often, she was after all the daughter that the late emperor doted the most and had a strong temperament. If one made her anger, there would not be good days ahead, thus she was immediately let go. The palace maid wanted to look for a sedan for Princess Rongqin but was rejected by Princess Rongqin. It is not convenient for the sedan when using small routes. Just follow Ben Gong to walk slowly. Princess Rongqin's heart was anxious. She did not ask about matters of the cost and would be in her princess residence all day. If she did not pass by the courtyard and heard that the servants speaking about Shen Miao's matter, she would not know that the imperial family had the intention to marry Shen Miao to the crown princess. Not to mention about Xie Jingxing, Princess Rongqing would still want to protect Shen Miao. Princess Rongqin herself appreciated Shen Miao and as a person of the imperial family, Princess Rongqin knew that for the female who married in, it looks glamorous on the outside but it was not necessarily happy. Moreover, Shen Miao was not a female who was keen in wealth and glory, so there was no need for such things for her. If one were to marry into the Eastern Palace, Shen Miao would not be happy for her entire life. Princess Rongqin was in a rush to look for Emperor Wenwei, hoping that she was able to change her imperial older brother's mind. Thus she headed towards a small route. Shen Miao had reached a remote pavilion. That pavilion was nestled in the middle of the woods with a long corridor leaning against it. There were several rooms along the corridor which made it convenient to hide. Pei Lang walked out from that room. The young eunuch stood outside to keep a lookout for both of them. Shen Miao nodded her head towards Pei Lang as a greeting and asked, "Gentleman Pei, is there any urgent matter to be discussed here?" Prince Ding had sealed the residence, thus one is unable to send you a letter. Pei Lang said, "The idea of the crown prince marrying you was brought up by Prince Ding." Shen Miao's brow raised, and when Pei Lang saw that she was not surprised, he asked, "You knew?" "Yes, that it was his handiwork." Shen Miao said blandly, "With the crown prince's brains, how would he think of me without any rhyme or reason?" Pei Lang had some doubts about Shen Miao's tone of voice as it seemed like she was very familiar with the crown prince and Fu Shuyi. But Shen Miao was an unmarried female who would not have any opportunities for interaction with the princess, so how would she be able to understand the prince's personalities? One feared that even Shen was necessarily as familiar as Shen Miao. This neglected garden once had a ghostly encounter, thus almost no one came here, thus Pei Lang did not worry about people passing by. He said frowningly, "What are you planning to do with the matter of marriage?" Shen Miao was somewhat surprised. Pei Lang had always been a person who would only analyze the pros and cons about a matter without personal feelings, thus it would be rare for him to ask about her marriage matter. After all, how she viewed this marriage matter was irrelevant to the overall situation. Shen Miao said, "Let nature take its course. You cannot marry the crown prince." Pei Lang said. Marrying or not is not important. The most hated thing for Shen Miao was Pei Lang's seemingly confident appearance, as if everything was within the control of his hands, thus he would not be able to see others' struggles and only did what he thought was right. She coldly said, "Even if one married over, I might not have a bad life as I will use my own ways to achieve my goals. Roads are walked out by oneself and every road would have different ways of walking. Gentleman Pei does not think that there are only one road in this world, right?" "I do not meant what you are thinking about." Pei Lang sighed. "By marrying into the Eastern Palace, perhaps it would let you walk your road, but it would be at the expense of your marriage. This is just too cruel to you and it is not worth it." Shen Miao's heart moved slightly as she looked at Pei Lang. Pei Lang could actually say it would be at the expense of your marriage. This is just too cruel to you and it is not worth it. One had to know that when Wan Yu had to marry to the Zongnu, Shen Miao had begged Pei Lang before because Pei Lang was Fu Shuyi's trusted aide. Fu Shuyi would consider Pei Lang's words. At that time Pei Lang said to Shen Miao, "Your ladyship, with the princess's marriage to exchange for Ming Qi's safety and the well-being of the people, isn't it a good thing?" Pei Lang, who excelled in observing the facts in the big picture, would actually put the overall situation in second place. Pei Lang did not notice Shen Miao's thoughtful look. He continued, "The imperial family had spread the news out. No one in Ding capital dared to have marriage relations with the Shen residents." Shen Miao said, "So what about that? If it does not work out, then you marry me." Pei Lang said. The air seemed to have stiffened within a moment. Unexpected to Pei Lang, Shen Miao stared at him without any surprise in her eyes, without any slightest of being moved emotionally. On serious observation, it even seemed to be a bit cold. She asked, "What did you say?" A bucket of cold water seemed to have been poured down on Pei Lang's heart as it was surprisingly cold. It was evident that he only did it due to pros and cons of the matter, but under Shen Miao's clear gaze, it was like some of his heart's hidden wishes seemed to be glimpsed. Suddenly he was in tough straits. Pei Lang evaded Shen Miao's eyes and collected himself before continued speaking. "You still have to marry others if you do not marry into the Eastern Palace. This is the only living route out. By marrying me, perhaps one can withstand this. Why does gentleman Pei help me?" Shen Miao said it lightly, but in her words, there seemed to be containing some other tone that make one unable to pinpoint. She said, "We only have a transactional relationship due to Lu Ying and it can be said of a master-servant relationship. I am the master and you are the servant. From the beginning to the end it is me who is threatening you, and if I am being confined, isn't this to your advantage? Following Fu Shuyi is 1,000 times better than following me, so for gentleman Pei to help me like this, those who don't know would think that you are sincere." There was some sarcasm in it that made Pei Lang's ears did not like to hear. He did not know why Shen Miao was polite with him at some times and at other times would seem to be hostile with him. Perhaps females were also fickle. But he could not answer Shen Miao's question. It was because he himself did not know why he was doing it. Shen Miao smiled gently. "Even if I marry gentleman Pei, it would be the most inferior plan. What kind of identity gentleman Pei will be using to marry me? How does one explain to Prince Ding's side? You will not reveal yourself because of me. Gentleman Pei is a good chess piece, thus I am not willing to casually use it like this. Moreover," she lifted her chin slightly, "marriage and husband is not as important as you all think to me. It is only a person sharing the same bed and pillow, eat together and sleep together. Other than that, there is no difference with that of a stranger. I do not care who one marries to. I also do not care if one was to be forced to marry. My fortune and happiness would not depend on these." Pei Lang kept shaking his head as he heard it. He wanted to negate Shen Miao words as he felt that Shen Miao was still young and did not know how important the lifelong event was to a female. This was only just a peek, and in the future when one understood the rationale and suffered, then it would be too late to regret. But when he looked up and saw Shen Miao's expression, he could not speak. Shen Miao had a serious expression and her cold indifference was like she was tired of the matters of the outside world, as if there was an unconscious disgust. She really did not care. But how could a female not care about the person that would be accompanying them for a lifetime? Pei Lang looked at Shen Miao blankly. As the atmosphere was in a deadlock, one heard a malicious ridicule coming from the back. One did not expect that there would be such a romantic affair. Shen Miao suddenly turned back and did not know when did two masked men clad in black appeared. These two people were carrying long swords and headed towards Shen Miao. Pei Lang quickly pulled Shen Miao over to dodge as Shen Miao shouted out sternly, "Who are you?" "Young lady Shen must not blame us. If one has to blame, then blame that you are blocking others' road." The two persons laughed and one of them swept towards Pei Lang while the other headed towards Shen Miao. It was killing technique without leaving any room of survival. Shen Miao cursed in her heart as she did not expect that this place that Pei Lang found would actually be convenient for others to silence them. She held the bracelet on her wrist, but this bracelet was only useful in short distance. When the needles were about to be released, one however saw two stones hurling in the air and hit exactly at the knees of the two black-clad persons. The two of them shouted out in pain and fell onto the ground. Two swords light flashed and two people swept past and the black-clad person's sword were now taken and pointed at their chest. Everything happened too quickly that there was no opportunity for anyone to breath. The two persons that appeared later were dressed as palace guards and Shen Miao saw them clearly. Pei Lang was about to talk when he saw that a person flip over from the roof. The person had a tall stature, wearing a purple gold robe with a silver mask and a pair of peach blossoms eyes that were as sharp as knives. It was Prince Rui. "Your Highness Prince Rui," Pei Lang whispered. He was intelligent, so after a moment of thinking, he knew that the two people dressed as guards should be Prince Rui's subordinate. Previously the black-clad people who came to kill, one did not know who they belonged to. Even though he did not know what kind of relationship Shen Miao and Prince Rui had, Pei Lang dare not neglect him. Even though he was extremely vigilant in his heart, there was still a polite smile on his face as he cupped his hands together. "Many thanks to your Highness Prince Rui for lending a hand to help." Prince Rui did not speak and glanced coldly at him. Although there was half a silver mask that hid his face, making one unable to see what kind of expression he had on, Pei Lang however felt particularly cold that one would have chills on their backs. Shen Miao frowned but Prince Rui had already grabbed her wrist and turned to walk out. Pei Lang was shocked and quickly called out, "Prince Rui cannot." The two guards ferociously blocked in front of him. Both guards were fierce and sinister, exuding an air of killing without battling an eye. Pei Lang was a scholar and was not skilled in martial arts, thus there was no way even if he wanted to help. It was Shen Miao who, stumbling as she followed others, still turned her head around and calmly said, "Gentleman Pei, return first, I still have some matters with Prince Rui." Prince Rui's pace had gotten even faster. Pei Lang looked at the two figures disappearing back and the two guards inexplicably looked at him before leaving. However, there were still two bodies on the floor, so Pei Lang could not say any longer. He did not know what was the relationship between Shen Miao and Prince Rui, but his heart suddenly felt somewhat empty. Shen Miao was feeling pain from where Xie Jingxing was holding her. Xie Jingxing did not say a single word as he walked quickly while she tried her best to keep up with Xie Jingxing's pace. However, the other party was tall and had long legs that she couldn't keep up with and almost stumbled several times. At the end, the anger in Shen Miao's heart came up and she angrily said, "Let go of me." Xie Jingxing walked to a corridor where there was no one before violently letting go of his hand. Shen Miao was grasped by him for most of the journey and when he suddenly released his hand, she almost fell over. After stabilizing herself, her anger started bubbling up. "You are crazy." This garden was somewhat more outside than the previous neglected garden. Shen Miao was somewhat afraid that others would see and wanted to head out, but Xie Jingxing pulled her back by the shoulders and pushed her against the wall before pressing her hands and looked coldly at her. He was wearing a silver mask and the outline of his face were revealed with a beautiful chin, but his lips were tight. There was no longer the usual frivolous smile on them, but instead fury were gushing out. He said one word at a time, "Shen Miao, you only have such capabilities." Shen Miao frowned at him. Xie Jingxing reached his hand out to hold her chin to force her to look straight at him. He looked down at Shen Miao from a higher position, just like a hunter looking at its prey. Shen Miao did not like to be looked from the top down and struggled to get out. But she was after all a female, so how could she compete with Xie Jingxing's strength? That little strength that she had could only tickle Xie Jingxing if used on him. Xie Jingxing easily dispelled the struggling and slightly flexed his knees against her legs, making her unable to move. However, this gesture was even more ambiguous. Shen Miao asked, "What exactly do you want to do?" One was unable to distinguish Xie Jingxing's tone of voice. "Luo Ling, Su Mingfeng, Feng Zixian, and now there is a Pei Lang. So many people want to be the hero to save the beauty. I have underestimated you." Shen Miao did not speak. The strength in his hands suddenly increased and her chin started to hurt, making her brow frown slightly. But that young man gritted his teeth and said, "Don't care who one married to and don't care if one was forced to married. You want to marry into the crown prince residence." Shen Miao's heart moved. Xie Jingxing had heard the conversation between Pei Lang and her. This man's favorite thing to do was to see everything from the dark, and if it was on normal days, Shen Miao would not think too much about it, but at this moment there was a little bit of indignant in her heart. It was like someone had seen some secrets that one was unwilling to be made public or that the awful side of herself had been seen and she was ashamed that anger came out. She said coldly with a smile, "What does it matter if one marries to the crown prince? Anyways, you also know that I want to be an empress. At the end the crown prince will need to sit on the imperial throne. Maybe when I enter the Eastern Palace, fought the crown prince consort to death and raise myself up, which then I will be Mingqi's future empress Shen." What is wrong with it? The words were said a bit too viciously that Xie Jingxing's face became even more livid. He also laughed, but it was so cold. Unfortunately, the crown prince will not be able to sit on the imperial throne. Shen Miao did not know where did Xie Jingxing's unfathomable anger came from, but at this moment she was already taken hostage and interrogated in such an embarrassing position, thus she felt very upset and wronged. Perhaps others would be impulsive and unable to grasp one's emotions during such situation, just like she did not know where was that grievance feelings came from, but all the unhappiness that she felt during these days all poured out. Xie Jingxing continued to pinch her chin, press against her legs and locked her hands. He was unbelievably handsome that even when in anger there was a different amorous feeling. That evil air hovered around him, making Shen Miao believe for a moment that this frivolous and indifferent appearance Xie Jingxing was only one side of him and the other side would make one's heart chill when he was cold, inflexible and furious. No matter how good the scenery was, Shen Miao unfortunately did not have the mood to appreciate. She said, "Even if he cannot sit on the imperial throne, it has nothing to do with you." Shen Miao raised her head and looked at him as she tired down. "Speak calmly, why does your Highness Prince Rui interrogate me? One's relation with you is not that good to such a level. Whether I marry or don't marry to who, what does it have to do with you?" When this was said, Xie Jingxing instead smiled slowly. His lips hooked up in a smile, but not a smile, as he pinched Shen Miao's chin towards him. "When you were thinking of ways to haggle over every ounce with me, when you were calculating on how to do business with me, when you borrow my hands to kill others, you were very capable. Why is it that now you only have this little capability?" Shen Miao's eyes felt somewhat sourish. She really hated Xie Jingxing's current way of doing things. She could not break free at all and hated that she was this reactive. She felt her view becoming misty and very uncomfortable. Xie Jingxing's brows furrowed, not allowed to cry. Shen Miao's tears were welling up but not falling, and she only felt extremely shameful in her heart. She was one who had lived for 2 lifetimes, but with just a few sentences from Xie Jingxing, she already wanted to cry. What nonsense was this? However, the grievances in her heart could not be alleviated. It was like internally she was entirely in chaos. She was also unwilling to lose face and had no way to break free of the situation. Thus, in a rush, Shen Miao glared at Xie Jingxing and said angrily, Xie Jingxing, don't be too much. Xie Jingxing. At the other end of the underbrush, an exclamation was heard. Xie Jingxing. Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing turned around quickly and saw someone staggering out from the underbrush. When the person came nearer, Shen Miao's entire body stiffened and unconsciously looked over at Xie Jingxing's expression. However, due to Xie Jingxing's mask, one was unable to see anything. That person was Princess Rongshin. Princess Rongshin originally wanted to take a shortcut through the smaller routes, but just at this time she saw Shen Miao being pulled by an unfamiliar man. Princess Rongshin quickly instructed the palace maid to wait outside as she followed up. If others saw that Shen Miao was together with another unfamiliar man, it would only invite rumors. Princess Rongshin trusted Shen Miao's character, but just now she saw that Shen Miao seemed to have some unwillingness and feared that Shen Miao was entangled with one of the prince in the palace, and if there was any trouble, she wanted to help Shen Miao out a bit. However, it was not ideal to rush up and cause a misunderstanding. She was rather far apart and could not hear clearly what both of them were talking about. Afterwards she saw that Shen Miao seemed to be almost crying and became anxious and walked up and heard Shen Miao saying, Xie Jingxing, don't be too much. Princess Rongshin cried out involuntarily. But upon seeing the tall figure turning around was an unfamiliar young man, wearing a silver mask that covered half his face, smiling gently at him and nodded his head. Princess Rongshin quickly stepped forward, and it was only then she saw that this male was Prince Rui. When the Prince Rui from Great Liang first came to Mingqi, Princess Rongshin saw him before. But she did not care about matters of the court and did not deliberately inquire about him. Now at this moment when she saw that this person was Prince Rui, she could not describe the feelings she had. However, Shen Miao's Xie Jingxing was indeed Xie Jingxing. She did not hear it incorrectly. Princess Rongshin looked at Shen Miao questioningly. Young lady Shen, just now you called His Highness Prince Rui as Xie Jingxing. Shen Miao was not in time to speak when Prince Rui spoke out first. This prince name is Xie Yuan and one small name is Jingxing. Just now young lady Shen called this prince small name. Shen Miao sighed in relief in her heart as she thought that Xie Jingxing reaction was very fast and he could always find a reason to turn it around. Upon seeing Princess Rongshin's strange look, she then reacted to it and cursed Xie Jingxing in her heart viciously. Other than family, only one's wife of lover would call another person small name. Who knew what kind of feeling would there be for Princess Rongshin when she called Xie Jingxing's little name? Xie Jingxing did it deliberately. Princess Rongshin swept a glance between Prince Rui and Shen Miao before her gaze finally settled on Prince Rui. There were some similarities, just like this purple attire. Only that youth who ride through the red light district on horseback would be able to have that air of nobility when wearing such purple robes. However, there were also differences. That was unfamiliarity, some coldness and the air of savageness and decisiveness that was different from the youth in her memory. Xie Jingxing was long death and he died on the battlefield under tens of thousands of northern Yang's horses and thousands of arrows piercing through one's heart. In a moment, there was a piercing pain in one's heart, making Princess Rongshin clutch her heart and bend down. She was unable to feel relief no matter how many times she thought of Xie Jingxing's death. After Princess Yu Qing's death, she had taken Xie Jingxing as her son, and to lose a son at one's middle age and for a white hair person sending off a black hair person, her grief was no less than shading. Shen Miao quickly went up to support her while that purple-clad youth stood with his hands down and swept his eyes towards her without moving his body. A trace of bitter smile could not help but appear on Princess Rongshin's lips. Yes, how could Prince Rui be Xie Jingxing? If he was Xie Jingxing, how could he be this cold and look at her like a stranger when she was struggling like this? If Xie Jingxing was still alive, how could he bear to see her in such pain? Princess Rongshin waved her hands. Why are you here? Shen Miao replied, Her ladyship, the Empress, requests me to enter the palace. Princess Rongshin frowned and then looked at Xie Jingxing before asking, why is Prince Rui here? Shen Miao glanced at Xie Jingxing before speaking. When I was heading out from the palace, the young eunuch that was leading the way had a matter to attend to in the middle. After waiting for a long time, one left but later realized that one was lost. One happened to encounter His Highness Prince Rui and requested His Highness Prince Rui to point the right direction. These words were almost in blatant lie. Just now Princess Rongshin clearly saw that Prince Rui pulled Shen Miao over here. Moreover, Shen Miao also called Prince Rui's little name, thus the relationship between the two was not normal. Princess Rongshin was unfathomably somewhat angry. At the beginning Xie Jingxing brought Shen Miao to the princess residence and Princess Rongshin had thought that Xie Jingxing treated Shen Miao special. With the many interactions with Shen Miao, she also liked Shen Miao and Princess Rongshin had the heart to match Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing. However, Xie Jingxing died afterwards, else this marriage would have been settled. Today Shen Miao was in a very close relationship with another male and that male's little name was also Jingxing. Princess Rongxing's heart was feeling uncomfortable as it was like one's thing was overtaken by others. She knew that it was not possible for Shen Miao not to marry for her entire life, but Prince Rui was after all not from Mingqi and Princess Rongshin had lived for a lifetime and could see people clearly. This Prince Rui's actions were bizarre and there was an air of danger around him. He was not a simple man, so if Shen Miao was related to this male, one feared that it would be too complicated. Like this, Ben Gong will thank your highness Prince Rui on young lady Shen's behalf. Princess Ronggong said that but she was doing her best to distinguish Shen Miao's and Prince Rui's relationship clearly. Prince Rui nodded his head. Since the eunuch who led the way had disappeared and Ben Gong has many palace maids, so Ben Gong will let them bring her out. Prince Rui would not need to worry about it. Princess Rongshin then said. This was clearly an attitude of guarding against Prince Rui. Prince Rui did not say anything more and faintly responded before leaving first. After Prince Rui had left, Princess Rongshin then loosened her mouth to ask Shen Miao, how do you get acquainted with him? Shen Miao did not expect the sudden encounter of Princess Rongshin and had never thought that Princess Rongshin would hear the conversation between her and Xie Jingxing. She could not help but secretly compliant about Xie Jingxing's secret guards that usually had sharp ears and keen eyes that even a mouse running past would be seized, but now at such a critical moment they would allow such a thing happen. One did not know if they were blind that they did not even notice Princess Rongshin. She said, coincidentally encountered His Highness Prince Rui for a few times and got acquainted. Princess Rongshin gave her a profound look. If you are not willing to speak about it, Ben Gong will not force it out of you. It is just that this person is not from Mingqi and it is likely that there is an intention to place you in a conspiracy. You are an intelligent young lady and knows how to handle some things. Even if one did not think of oneself, one have to think for your father, mother and eldest brother. She was indeed afraid that Shen Miao would be swindled by men. In Shen Miao's heart, she was between laughter and tears as the misunderstanding had reached to such a point that it could not be resolved. Princess Rongshin stroked her chest and gasped a few breaths. When Shen Miao saw it, she asked, is Princess feeling uncomfortable? It is a heart illness from the early years. Princess Rongshin shook her head. These few days it had worsened. Shen Miao saw her being upset with the pain. She remembered in the past lifetime that Princess Rongshin also had a heart illness and the imperial physician mentioned that she should not overworry herself else the pain of heart illness would worsen. She said, Princess should look for an imperial physician to take a good look or inquire for a doctor who specializes in treating heart illnesses. It is upsetting to hurt this much. It is of no harm. Princess Rongshin waved her hands. Ben Gong lived till now and have enjoyed what one can enjoy and experienced what one should not experience, thus there is no lose in this lifetime. Most likely one cannot life any longer and Ben Gong also don't want to be tormented. Her voice gradually faded. After all there is nothing much to be worried about. Shen Miao knew that she was thinking about Xie Jingxing again and did not know how to console her and could only say, if little Marquise Princess's current condition, he would not be happy. If he really cares about me, this Yi Mu, he would not be so callous and brush his hands and leave for the western region. Princess Rongshin retracted the sorrow she had on her face and patted Shen Miao's hands before saying, Ben Gong had heard about Imperial older brother's intention to bestow a marriage to you. Ben Gong entered the palace today as to talk to Imperial older brother about the matter. Shen Miao, you are also not willing to marry to the crown prince, right? Shen Miao did not expect that Princess Rongshin would actually speak out for her and for a moment of time she was somewhat choked. In the previous lifetime, she had spared no effort to curry favor Princess Rongshin and only gained Princess Rongshin's scorn and despise. In this lifetime because of Xie Jingxing's relations, Princess Rongshin's perspective had changed that she would even be willing to fight for her to change Emperor Wen Hui's decision. Shen Miao said, I am not willing to marry into the Eastern Palace but Princess need not be in a difficult situation. The matters of the world will go accordingly to the will of heavens and nature will take its course. The heavens would make arrangements accordingly. Princess Rongshin instead smiled, you actually could look through the matter. She said, the time is no longer early. I will not continue talking with you and head towards there. I will let the palace maid send you out. Shen Miao was sent out of the palace by Princess Rongshin's palace maids and Jing Jie and Gu Yu who were waiting outside quickly went forward. The first thing they did was to look up and down all over Shen Miao to ensure that Shen Miao was safe and sound before saying, scare this servant to death. One had thought that something happened after waiting for so long. If young lady do not come out any longer, these servants plan to think of some ways to enter and search. Shen Miao laughed, it is not a chasm for dragons to hide or a tiger's lair. How scary can it be? But her heart was secretly thinking about the two assassins that appeared mysteriously. She did not they belong to who that even dared to kill her in the palace. However when one look into it if she died, harm would only be brought onto the crown prince. The other party was not willing to see the crown prince be the only one getting bigger and if it did not go wrong, they were either Prince Zhou's or Prince Li's people. It was not possible to be Fu Shuyi as Shen Wan and the crown prince of Jin country matter was just over for not too long thus Fu Shuyi would not take the initiative to head towards where the wind and waves were the fiercest. With his ability to endure, he would lurk around for a period of time. Thinking about it, she could not help but sneer in her heart. In short, there was not a single good thing in the Fu family. The Shen family was destined to be on the opposite sides with the Fu family. It was either you die or I would be destroyed and since the other parties was so vicious, then she would not be merciless with her methods. Mo Qing stepped forward to lead Shen Miao up the horse carriage and set off for the Shen mansion. There was a bustling road where people come and go at the palace gates and in a crowded restaurant, there was a person at the corner who was monitoring Mo Qing and entourage's movements. When that person saw Shen Miao coming out from the palace gates safely, there was a flash of surprise in one's eyes before he took the sword from the table and quietly left. When Shen Miao returned to the Shen mansion, naturally Shen Chu and the rest gathered to question Shen Miao what did the empress spoke to her in the palace. Shen Miao skipped the events with Xie Jingxing and only spoke about the conversation with the empress. The Shen family once again worries as the imperial family side threatened Shen Miao and feared each day shortening and they must think of a solution as soon as possible. Luo Shuiyan again thought about the few people who came over to the residence to propose marriage and wanted to ask for Shen Miao's opinion. If among these few people, Shen Miao did feel a little better with either one of them, then they can settle that first. In any ways, Shen Xin had inquired about them and even though they were not perfect, there were no problems in terms of their conduct. However Shen Miao had encountered the whole thing with Xie Jingxing today and her mind was in chaos thus how would she still be in the mood to talk about these stuff? When Luo Shuiyan mentioned it, she displayed a rare displeased look. When Shen Xin and the few of them saw it, they all looked at one another and thought that Shen Miao was disturbed by the empress's words when she was in the palace and did not continue their words. Shen Miao was then able to return to the room to rest early and the rest scattered. When Shen Miao returned to the room, the skies were already dark and Gu Yu helped her to light the oil lamps. Jing Jie saw that Shen Miao's mood was not good thus she dared not stay in the room and disturb her. She pulled Gu Yu out and closed the doors, leaving Shen Miao alone. She was somewhat irritated as she brushed her hair and a nameless anger started to form in her chest that did not seem to go away. Thinking about Xie Jingxing's interrogation in the palace today, she could not help but be more annoyed and feel grievance. What did her personal affairs got to do with Xie Jingxing? Could it be that Xie Jingxing wanted to intervene with her life? However matters had come to such a point that with the different involved parties and not with an additional Xie Jingxing, she was unable to control independently. Thinking of what Pei Lang said, Shen Miao could not help but smile. However the smile was somewhat miserable. Which female did not want a male to love one another and live till old age? It was just that in her past life she was used to seeing the rise and fall in the world and at the end the so-called admiration between her and Fu Shuyi was nothing but her own wishful thinking. She also had not experienced the feeling of having mutual love of a couple. However she understood that once something happened, one's thoughts were not of oneself. She was not willing to be like the last lifetime, foolishly give one's lifetime happiness to others. Currently it was good. From the beginning she had controlled her heart thus it was much easier than retrieving one's heart that was already given away. It was just that she did not feel very comfortable at the bottom of her heart. She sat under the lamp for a while but she was not thinking about anything. After a while, she blew out the light and climbed onto the bed to sleep. The wind and snow in the residence of Prince Rui was exceptionally big. One entire type of guards were trembling as they stood in the wind and even the somewhat strong white tiger was thrown outside the bed chambers as punishment. Today everyone was not pleasing to Prince Rui's eyes and everyone in the residence of Prince Rui was punished. Even Ji Yushu and Gao Yong were locked in the tower prison to face the wall. What kind of place the tower prison was? The people who were locked up were the most evil and when dealing with these evil people, torture was necessary. As the cruelest place of the Mo Yu army, there were so many kinds of torture there that if there was no 81 types, there would be at least 49 types. Many men with unswerving determination would guard the tower prison and wail like ghosts and howl like wolves after a few days. The first time Tai Yu went in, he was bedridden for a long time and vomited whatever he ate for an entire month. Ji Yushu and Gao Yong looked like attractive and tender young masters that the guards in the residence of Prince Rui were secretly pitying them as they entered the tower prison. Yi Ying quietly tapped Nanqi's arm and asked, "What is with master? Who had made him angry?" Nanqi made a hush sound and see that there was no moments in the room before whispering. Gentleman Gao and young master Ji did not report that the palace wanted to bestow marriage upon 5th Shen young lady, thus master got angry. Yi Ying covered her mouth and her eyes widened. Gentleman Gao and young master Ji are truly daring to even hide 5th Shen young lady's matter. No wonder they are being locked in the tower prison. After finished speaking, she then looked at the white tiger that was trembling in the cold wind and said in pity, so pitiful. On normal days, it would eat, drink and live well. One had thought that it was different from us but did not expect that matters erupt, everyone are all punching bags. Huo Long flipped her long hair and sighed, it is the beauty that caused the fury. In the room, Xie Jingxing passed the letter that was written to Tai Yi, and after Tai Yi took a glance at it, he hesitated, Master, if His Majesty know that there is changes to the plan at this end. Xie Jingxing looked at him and Tai Yi immediately shut up. It was not a good idea to object to Master's decision now when Master was not in a good mood. Xie Jingxing put the other letter inside the letter and said, what is going on at Pei Lang's side? Go and inquire. After a pause, he then said, and also Feng Zixian and Su Mingfeng. His brows slightly riddled and suddenly thought about something, how about the matter about the medicine herbs? Tai Yi quickly said, one had already sent people to search and upon finding it, it would be sent to the medical hall. Princess Rongxin's heart illness had frequently occurred in the past and in the medication there was one herb that was in scarcity as it would only be available during spring. All the available herb in Ding Capital's medical halls would be bought by the princess residence and these days there were no new shipment for Princess Rongxin, thus she could only endure. Xie Jingxing instructed people to purchase it from outside with great value before smoothly selling it to the medical hall. As quickly as possible, Xie Jingxing pursed his lips. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly stood up and put on his coat before heading out. Tai Yi was slightly startled. Master still want to go out? Have not yet finished calculating the accounts. Xie Jingxing snorted coldly before walking away with a brush of his sleeves. The outside of the Shen mansion was already quiet and Shen Miao's room was a cloak of darkness. It was obvious that one had slept for some time. When Xie Jingxing reached, Kong Yang was sleeping on the tree and when he saw him walking over, he almost fell off the tree in shock. He quickly got down and stood at attention to greet Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing took a glance at the window and Kong Yang quickly said, young madam has already gone to rest. When Xie Jingxing walked to the front of the window, he saw that there was a jade-like ring and there was a pendant placed at the window still. Xie Jingxing looked at Kong Yang with questioningly gaze and Kong Yang said, after young madam went to rest, Luo Ling secretly placed the safety pendant on the window still. Young madam have yet to discover it. When Xie Jingxing heard it, his gaze moved slightly and he used his sharp dagger to pick up that safety pendant and threw it at Kong Yan, keep it well. Kong Yang was startled and heard Xie Jingxing continued speaking, the pet at home is missing a pendant. Kong Yang. At the time of Kong Yang's speechlessness, Xie Jingxing had already lightly and quickly opened the window to enter. On the bed, Shen Miao was sleeping soundly. Xie Jingxing walked to the side of the bed and crossed his arms for a while before raising his eyebrows. To sleep this sounding, it seemed that one did not take my words to heart. Really have such nerves. The young female did not have the usual dignified and calm look when sleeping and without all the different things to conceal her appearance, her original appearance was shown. Under the moonlight, her eyes were delicate, making one remember that she was just a 16-year-old young female and one could not ignore that because of her situation and the means that she had shown to be capable of. Thinking of how Shen Miao was enduring her tears when he was holding her chin, Xie Jingxing was a little guilty in his heart. He reached out to move the messy hair on Shen Miao's forehead to the back of her ears but saw that young lady's eyelashes trembled. Xie Jingxing's hands paused and his gaze went down and saw that the body that was wrapped in the quilt was slightly trembling. She actually was fake sleeping. Xie Jingxing raised his brows and simply sat closer a little before placing both hands at either side of Shen Miao's and leaned forward and whispered in a magnetic voice. After helping so many times, why not repay me once by devoting one's life? He stared at Shen Miao's eyes and slowly leaned over. Shen Miao's body was so stiff and that breathing sound seemed to be just beside one's lips with the feeling of oppression coming from the top was nearing her. She ferociously pushed Xie Jingxing and sat up before speaking in anger. What do you want to do? Her voice was however somewhat frenetic. Xie Jingxing pressed her back down to the bed. Shen Miao struggled in unease and Xie Jingxing had to subdue her a few times before laughing out. What do you think I will do to you? Then he gave her a critical look. In your dreams. Shen Miao was so angry that she wanted to call Mo Qing over to beat Xie Jingxing up. Because she only wore the middle clothes when she sleep at night, after struggling with Xie Jingxing just now, her middle clothes opened up, revealing a snowy white shoulder, seemingly one could see the plum blossoms on the dudo. Xie Jingxing was slightly stunned when he saw it and Shen Miao discovered where he was looking and became so upset. Just as she was about to scold, she saw Xie Jingxing showing over the quilt and covering her up. Shen Miao revealed her head from the quilt and said angrily, you are sick. Xie Jingxing ignored her and quickly wrapped her tightly in the quilt like a silkworm cocoon before pressing her onto the bed. Shen Miao could not move at all and Xie Jingxing looked at her as he supported his head with a head. Shen Miao finally got frustrated with struggling and asked, what are you here for? Shen Miao, behave yourself a little. Xie Jingxing frowned. With this prince here, who would dare to force you to marry? Shen Miao was so angry, she started laughing. You will not stay in Mingqi for thousands of years and there will be a day that I will need to marry. You can protect me today but not tomorrow. Even if you protect me tomorrow, there will be a day where you will not be able to protect. If one can protect, Xie Jingxing asked. Shen Miao was startled and did not speak. Xie Jingxing, you do not care about marrying others or just want to marry. What does it got to do with you? You ask too much. Shen Miao had taken Xie Jingxing's rudeness during the day to heart and did not plan to talk to him nicely. But upon thinking about it, how was she like a person who was an empress? She instead looked like those embarrassed young females on the streets. Thinking of how she was pestered by this person in front now, Shen Miao was very dissatisfied with herself. Her temperamental appearance was seen by Xie Jingxing and he was unable to make head or tail of it. He flipped over and pressed Shen Miao down and propped Shen Miao's head before asking lowly, who do you want to marry? Luo Ling, Su Mingfeng, Feng Zixian or Pei Lang. He was getting closer and that handsome facial features were magnified in front of Shen Miao and one could smell the fragrance of the bamboo scent on the other party. His eyes were exceptionally pretty but currently also had some overbearing manner, as if it could force out one true thought. When being looked at by this pair of eyes, it seemed that all of one's secret thoughts had nowhere to hide. Shen Miao's heart suddenly felt panicked. This distance was just too close. It was so close that she could hear the thumping of the heart, just like the sound of drums, but she could not differentiate if it was hers or Xie Jingxing's. Not wanting to lose control of her feelings and do expected things, Shen Miao suddenly shrank back. Her back was against the beam of the bed and Xie Jingxing reached out to protect so that she would not hit her head. This has nothing to do with you. Shen Miao quickly said, we only have the relations of allies and allies are of mutual cooperation. Prince Rui still wants to control my lifelong matter. Not to say marriage, even in the future when one give birth, separate, disposed, all of that does not have half a relation with you. Xie Jingxing was originally rather angry upon listening to the first half of the sentence but upon hearing the latter half, he was between laughter and tears, what nonsense. You really want to be a disposed empress? He had already heard her mention about disposed empress for an unknown times. Xie Jingxing did not understand how Shen Miao not be confident with herself that she must imagine such a miserable ending for herself. She did not seem to be a person of low self-esteem. Shen Miao was so mad that she was speaking incoherently. It has nothing to do with you. We are only allies. On what basis do you manage my affairs? Xie Jingxing stared at her as the anger that she provoked slowly raised up. He was also a proud person, and to be repeatedly dismissed like this, one could not mention how uncomfortable his heart would feel. He asked, allies. Shen Miao nodded her head. Allies cannot manage your affairs. Shen Miao continued to nod her head. Xie Jingxing said bombily, good. He quickly leaned over and gave Shen Miao's lips a peck. Shen Miao was momentarily stunned and saw that purple-clad youth using an extremely harsh tone. Now we are no longer allies. You. Shen Miao could not speak as there seemed to be a gentle feeling that remained on her lips. He laughed frivolously. Now one can manage your affairs. Finishing, he then got up from the bed and looked at Shen Miao condescending manner and threatened, remember, in the future marriage, giving birth, separate, disposed, all these would require this prince's agreement. After finishing, he looked coldly at the window still and disappeared. Outside the room, Kong Yang was forced to listen to everything from the tree till his face and ears turned scarlet, but he dared not depart without orders. When Xie Jingxing came out, Kong Yang greeted him and Xie Jingxing said, in the future when someone gives things, just throw it away. He took the safety pendant that Kong Yang gave him and walked away with annoyance on his face. At this night, someone deliberately disturbed a pool of spring water and caused the flowers to bloom even in the cold winds of winter. Naturally there were plans that fell through, and currently there were people who were in a thundering rage. In the residence of Prince Zhou and Prince Li, it was such a situation. In this evening, someone knocked Prince Zhou's room door and Prince Zhou thought it was the servants and called them to enter, but no one entered. Prince Zhou got up to open the doors and saw two ice-cold corpses directly hitting his face. No one knew how the two corpses came into the residence of Prince Zhou. Prince Zhou flew into a rage and punished all the guards that were on night duty harshly before looking through carefully for traitors, but at the end it was all without success. The two corpses were also identified as the assassins who was sent off today to kill Shen Miao. Prince Zhou's heart was restless and on the very night called Prince Jing over so that the two brothers could research the matter carefully. As for Prince Li's end, it was even worse. Someone just threw two bodies directly into the residence from the walls and scared guards in the residence of Prince Li. The guards went out to chase but could not even find the shadows of anyone. At the end they found out that the two corpses were the assassins that were sent to kill Shen Miao. Prince Li was very troubled and restless a bit. Obviously his assassins were killed and his root was broken, and naturally that was his enemy. However, for his enemy in Ding capital to be this highly skilled that the entire residence of Prince Li's guards could not even catch one person, Prince Li was extremely dissatisfied. At the other end, the two brothers, Prince Zhou and Prince Jing, were in the middle of a discussion. Prince Zhou asked, who do you think did it? Prince Jing muttered, perhaps it is Prince Li. I too think so. Prince Zhou nodded his head, perhaps he is taking the opportunity to threaten me, or perhaps he has the same thoughts as me. However, Prince Li always has an amicable appearance and would not do such a matter that could tear it apart. Prince Jing shook his head, it might also be from the Crown Prince's hands. The Crown Prince. Prince Zhou paused before nodding his head. These years the Crown Prince was proclaimed sick, but everyone knew that it was just a cover-up. Neither one of us had seen his methods before, and if he caused an internal fight between me and Prince Li, the Crown Prince can enjoy the benefits of a fisherman after the fight. Correct. Prince Jing sighed. You better not forget there is another person, number 9. Forget about number 9. Prince Zhou waved his hand without a care for it. Even if number 9 make it known, he has no guts to do it as he does not move in the court to gain connections. To be able to create trouble in the residence of Prince Zhou, one's subordinates have to be experts. One does not know why, but one always feel that number 9 does not appear as simple as he looks. Prince Jing said, you should not underestimate him. All in all, Prince Zhou signed, this matter is not that simple. No matter if it is Prince Li or the Crown Prince, the oncoming person has ill intentions. I will closely investigate it again. One want to know who is the one behind playing tricks. Prince Jing nodded his head in agreement. Naturally Prince Zhou and Prince Li did not know that the other party who eliminated both of their assassins and returned it back to them was not the Crown Prince that they guessed, but one who had nothing to do with them. However, this method of redirecting the waters of calamity to the east was indeed not bad. In the fight between the princes of Mingqi, unknowingly it had become fiercer. And in the passage of time, when everyone in the Shen family was uneasy about seeking appropriate candidates, the imperial edict of the imperial family of Mingqi did not come after a long time. This was not because of anything special, but because Emperor Wenwei was troubled by a matter. He asked the Crown Prince by his side, what is Great Liang's intention? Is to adopt a confrontational position with Mingqi. Zhen had never seen such an arrogant person before. The Crown Prince did not dare to speak up. Prince Rui of Great Liang made a trip to the palace and one did not know what was spoken to Emperor Wenwei. After Prince Rui left, Emperor Wenwei flew into a rage and threw the entire set of teacup on the table and almost wanted to destroy the imperial study. The Crown Prince guessed that some impudent words were spoken, else Emperor Wenwei would lose his self-control like this. Emperor Wenwei indeed had flew into a rage. He was clearer than anyone on Mingqi's current strength, and it was no longer as strong as when the late emperor was alive. Facing the slightly better Qin country and flourishing and fertile Great Liang, there was actually nothing to be proud of. In this tribute banquet, it was done that grandly so as to conceal his lack of confidence and show to Great Liang and Qin country that Mingqi has some abilities. It was just that these acts were only burying one's hand in the sand. Huang Fu Hao of the Qin country appeared to treat him with respect, but in actual it was not. Because of Princess Ming An's death, he did not let the Bureau of Investigations off, thus the judicial officers were often working on righting a wrong for the Princess of Qin all the time that one would be laughed at if it was mentioned. However, Emperor Wenwei dared not refuse it as he wanted to win over the Qin country to deal with Great Liang. One did not need to mention about Great Liang. This Prince Rui did things with his own set of rules. Huang Fu Hao at least showed respect for Emperor Wenwei on surface, but Prince Rui did whatever he liked and did not show any indication of respect for him. Emperor Wenwei comforted himself with that Prince Rui had such a personality like that, but did not expect that Prince Rui would make a trip to the palace and chat in the imperial study. Emperor Wenwei had the intention to establish good relations with Great Liang but was completely rejected by Prince Rui. Even though it was not indicated clearly, but his attitude did not give Emperor Wenwei any leeway at all. Emperor Wenwei was after all a monarch of a country, thus when he loses face, naturally his expression was not good and it became solemn. Who knew that Prince Rui did not even care that he would get angry and even casually mention about the several cities in the border of Great Liang and Mingqi, and the topic was all about taking back those cities. Emperor Wenhui's expression changed in an instant. Those cities were not very big, but there were several mines within the area. Those ore that were mined were used in most weapons. Those cities were just at the border of Mingqi and Great Liang, and previously Great Liang was not at all concerned about these as the people who lived in the cities were Mingqi's commoners. Now with these words, what were their intentions? It meant that Great Liang had the intention of occupying these cities. With Mingqi's military strength, it was not possible to compete with Great Liang. Prince Rui was the appointed envoy for Great Liang and he represented Emperor Yongle of Great Liang's intention. Prince Rui's seemingly casual sentence had revealed some of Great Liang's ambitions. What made Emperor Wenwei incessant grievances was that he obviously knew about the other party's ambition, but he dared not detain this treacherous Prince Rui because he was unable to withstand Emperor Yongle's fury. There would still be some confidence if one had strike an alliance with Qin country but with only Ming-Chi. He could only tolerate it. Being an emperor but without any dignity mad Emperor Wen Hui's heart burned in fury. With Great Liang's ambition, who knows what would they do next? Your marriage with Shen Miao is not in a hurry. Emperor Wen Wei said, Zhen cannot provoke Shen Shen now. It is the critical moment and if Shen Shen is dissatisfied with Zhen, it would not be good as Great Liang would be able to exploit a loophole. The crown prince felt somewhat disappointed when he heard it but did not say much. He understood Emperor Wen Hui's temperament and the more he was like this, the more one should go along with him. Thus he said, this son is not in a rush and naturally would focus on major events. One did not think that Great Liang concealed such a malicious intent. We must not relax our vigilance with them. Seeing the crown prince as such, Emperor Wen Wei was very pleased and patted his shoulders. Zhen knows. Don't worry, even though Great Liang has such ambitions, Zhen would not sit and wait for death and discuss with the crown prince of Qin tomorrow on alliance. If the Qin country knew about Great Liang's ambition, they would also be tense. It would be natural for them to strike an alliance with Ming-Chi and at that time, one did not need to worry about Great Liang. Zhen will then personally decree that the military power of the Shen family and that girl, Shen Miao, be yours. In the conversation, one took Shen Miao as an item that one was confident to place in another's bag. The crown prince smiled gently and complied but was somewhat resentful with Prince Rui in his heart as he said such things to Emperor Wen Wei just at this timing. The timing was just too coincident. Prince Ding gave him such a wonderful idea but it turned out empty with just a few words from Prince Rui that it made the crown prince extremely dissatisfied. But one could not do anything about it. The news that came from the palace indicated that the marriage between Shen Miao and the crown prince were temporarily suppressed. Even though one did not know the reason behind, Princess Rongshen was relieved. That day when she saw Shen Miao in the palace, she let her personal palace maid send Shen Miao out of the palace but she personally went to meet Emperor Wen Wei. Emperor Wen Wei was still courteous with Princess Rongshen so Princess Rongshen said that she liked Shen Miao a lot and hoped that Emperor Wen Wei would give up the decision on letting Shen Miao marry the crown prince. Who knew that Emperor Wen Wei immediately went on a rage that he even used the words females could not discuss politics. Princess Rongshen also had a temper and said, Shen Miao's marriage is just a marriage between younger generations so how does it relate to politics? She started quarreling with Emperor Wen Wei on the spot. At the end Emperor Wen Wei was angered and requested her out of the palace. On that night, Princess Rongshen was so angry that her heart illness recurred again. Fortunately Emperor Wen Wei did not doubt why Princess Rongshen did it as the few encounters that Shen Miao had were all rescued by Princess Rongshen. From an outsider's eyes, one would find that Princess Rongshen and Shen Miao had some faith thus it was understandable for Princess Rongshen to treat Shen Miao special. No one would have guessed that the reason why Princess Rongshen was protecting Shen Miao was helping Xie Jingxing care for Shen Miao. It is good like this. Princess Rongxing said to Yang Gugu beside her. Ben Gong thought that this time one would not be able to help her and was feeling conscience-stricken. Now that it is suppressed, there would be leeway to turn it around. Ben Gong will tell her about it. Else in the future when one reached the underworld, Ben Gong would not be able to face Jingxing. Yang Gugu quickly consoled. If little Marquis know about Princess's painstaking efforts, he would definitely be gratified. Just as she was speaking, one saw someone walking in from outside. The palace maid greeted before speaking softly. Your Highness, someone from the medical hall had sent the medical herbs over. Princess Rongxin was slightly startled before asking, wasn't it finished? She had heart illness for a number of years and there was a specific prescription for it and in it there was a particular herb that was extremely difficult and rare to find. There were only a limited amount in a year and almost all those herbs were sent to the princess residence. Previously when Xie Jingxing was around, one did not know what kind of methods were used every year to search for much more of it that Princess Rongxin was not at all worried. Later when Xie Jingxing died, the availability of the herbs in the medical hall returned to the former where one would not know if there would be stock for tomorrow. During winter days, it was even harder to look for it thus Princess Rongxin had not drank that medicine for a long time. Just a few days back there was no medicinal herbs and one did not think there would be some sent over today. The palace maid said happily. The doctor from the medical hall said that yesterday there was a traveling merchant who came to sell medicine and coincidentally there was a big batch of it thus the medical hall took all of it. Heard from the doctor that it is enough to use till next year. What a lucky coincidence. Yang Gugu also smiled. It is really lucky. Princess Rongxin waved her without paying much attention, sent it to the kitchens. The palace maid complied quickly and when the palace maid left, Princess Rongxin then gave a bottle smile and sighed. When Jingxing was still around, there would be baskets of herbs that was sent over. Why is it now that it had became one's luck? Yang Gugu knew that she was thinking of Xie Jingxing and was saddened by it. Just as she wanted to change topics, one heard Princess Rongxin continue speaking, support me to the Xing Yuan. Yang Gugu was startled. Xing Yuan was a courtyard in the princess residence. When Princess Yuqing passed on, Princess Rongxin was angry with Xie Jing's actions and roughed Xie Jingxing to the princess residence for a period of time. Xie Jingxing was fair and adorable and Princess Rongxin especially instructed people to build a courtyard for him, which was the current Xing Yuan. Afterwards Xie Jing took Xie Jingxing back but Princess Rongxin did not tear down Xing Yuan. When Xie Jingxing grew up, he would occasionally come over to the princess residence to stay for a few days and would rest in Xing Yuan. It was only after Xie Jingxing died in the battlefield 2 years ago, Princess Rongxin then sealed Xing Yuan and other than the servants who entered to clean, no one else was allowed to enter. She herself was afraid that seeing the objects would make one miss its owner, thus she never stepped into the courtyard a single step. However today for the first time ever in 2 years, she wanted to take a look at Xing Yuan. Yang Gugu did not dare to disobey Princess Rongxin's command and was somewhat worried as she supported Princess Rongxing to the Xing Yuan. Princess Rongxin said, one did not know why in these few days, one keep dreaming of Jingxing. As she spoke, her expression became strange. Yang Gugu was somewhat puzzled with it. Princess Rongxin was feeling somewhat uneasy. These few days she had been dreaming every night. There would be a purple-clad youth in her dreams, wearing half a silver mask. She did not know who it was and reached out to take the mask off the other party and that person had a face that was identical to Xie Jingxing but called her Princess Rongxin. It was Prince Rui's of Great Liang voice. Princess Rongxin would always wake up in shock from her dream and her back would be drenched with sweat. She was thinking if it was due to that day she saw Shen Miao with Prince Rui being entangled in the other party's little name that she had mixed Xie Jingxing and Prince Rui together that she became possessed at night. The more she thought, the more she missed Xie Jingxing, thus she wanted to go to the Xing Yuan to take a look. As she was thinking about it, she had reached Xing Yuan. The guards that were outside Xing Yuan was somewhat surprised when they saw her as Princess Rongxin had not stepped in here for 2 years and did not allow others to enter too. The guards parted the way and Princess Rongxin entered with Yang Gugu. The room was exactly the same as it was 2 years ago. Because there were people cleaning up every day, there was no dust at all and looked neat and tidy just like the past. It made Princess Rongxin felt that when she turned around, she would be able to see that handsome youth laying on the bed with his legs crossed and casually eating an apple. On the shelf were the little toys that Xie Jingxing had liked to play since young and there were Xie Jingxing's old clothes on the chair. Princess Rongshin walked to that charboard and picked up the clothes and stroked the lines on it, remembering it is exactly the same as before. Yang Gugu did not know what to say, and if she said nothing, she feared that Princess Rongshin would be saddened by past memories. The golden threads on it is still new. Princess Rongshin laughed. Jing Xing, this child, has so many rules. When he was young, he was not willing to wear the colorful clothes that one had made for him and only liked purple. Ben Gong finds that purple is too mature and not suitable for children to wear and wanted to embroider some flowers, but he disliked it a lot. Afterwards, it was the seamstress in the palace that used golden threads to embroidery in the dark lines on the robes then he was willing to wear. He wanted it to be gorgeous but was not willing for it to be shining. Really have such mischievous thoughts. Yang Gugu also laughed. Little Marquis is respectable like gold and precious like jade, that even though purple is matured, only Little Marquis can wear it that good. At the beginning, when your highness brought Little Marquis into the palace, others thought that he was a prince. That appearance was just like one from the imperial family. Even Yu Qing did not have such a bearing. Princess Rongshin laughed as she touched the corner of the robes that had dark lines embroidered with gold threads, but as she continued smiling, she slowly could not smile anymore. Her expression became solemn. Just like what she and Yang Gugu said just now, Xie Jingxing was very particular of the clothes he wore and loved to wear purple clothes as it was gorgeous but was not overly showy and must use gold threads to be embroidered on the quarter of the robes. Because his expectations were high and the thread was very thin and the patterns were very unique. But on that day in the palace, Prince Rui, who was tugging with Shen Miao, was wearing a purple gold robe, and in Shen Miao's hands, the quarter of the clothes were golden thread that had the same patterns as what Xie Jingxing usually wore. Princess Rongshin's health was not good, but she was not blind. That day she saw Prince Rui and heard Shen Miao calling Prince Rui as Xie Jingxing, and for a short moment, she treated Prince Rui as Xie Jingxing. But afterwards she saw Prince Rui's expression and bearing, she felt it was unfamiliar, and after hearing Prince Rui's explanation, she dispelled these thoughts. However, she had felt that there was something wrong, and after returning to the princess residence, she kept on thinking of Xie Jingxing and Prince Rui. She had always thought that the reason why she was brooding about it was because Prince Rui's little name was the same as Xie Jingxing, but now she understood in a lightning bolt that the name did not matter, as it was due to the corner of the other party's sleeve that she saw. After spending more than a decade with Xie Jingxing, Princess Rongshin regards Xie Jingxing like her biological child, and a mother would be exceptionally attentive to one's child's matter even if it was a small little matter. She remembered the patterns on the clothes clearly, and ever since Xie Jingxing died, she had not seen this pattern for 2 years and had not thought about it momentarily. Today she remembered it here, that it was exactly the same pattern like Prince Rui wore. Some things were destined and sometimes would only need a nudge before all the scattered pearls were stringed together, and everything has an answer. Both liked to wear purple clothes, the same pattern on the corner of the robes, both were called Jingxing, and both had a special relationship with Shen Miao. Princess Rongshin suddenly remembered about the basket of herbs. Why was it previously there was none and today it was available? It was because just a few days back, her heart illness erupted in front of Prince Rui, and after a few days there was a traveling merchant that came by to sell the herbs. When there were too many coincidences, then it was no longer a coincidence. Once the seed of doubt sprouted, there was no reason for it to grow back. It would quickly spread out its branches and grew into a towering tree that became unshakable and deeply rooted in the soil, that it was standing indestructible. Now thinking about it, when Xie Jingxing was young, there was an unclear nobility in it that one thought it was naturally and thought it was because one's blood was different. However, this air had changed, but there were things that were unchangeable, like some small habits, such as feelings between loved ones. Princess Rongshin suddenly knelt down and pressed her heart. Yang Gugu jumped in shock and saw that Princess Rongshin's face was pale and large beads of sweat were forming on her forehead. She quickly called out, "Someone come quick. Quickly call the doctor. The princess's illness has erupted." A hand ferociously grabbed onto Yang Gugu's hands. Princess Rongshin's face looked in pain, but her voice was very firm. "Help me back to the study and bring an invitation over. She must personally verify one thing." When Shen Miao woke up, Luo Shuiyan told her happily that the marriage between her and the crown prince was temporarily suppressed. Shen Xin established some access in the palace and found that it was related to Prince Rui. One heard that during the casual chat between Prince Rui and Emperor Wenwei, several cities around the border were inadvertently mentioned. Emperor Wenwei was worried that Great Liang had ill intentions, and at such a critical juncture, it was necessary to draw Shen Xin, a strong general, to his side. Thus for the time being, he would not be mentioning Shen Miao's marriage. Luo Shuiyan said, "Prince Rui matter came rather coincidentally, but it resolved Zhao Zhao's desperate situation. With much more time, we can slowly choose a suitable talent for Zhao Zhao." Luo Shuiyan, the person who spoke, had no intention, but Shen Miao who listened had taken it to heart. Naturally she knew that Prince Rui did not inadvertently mention about those cities and cause Emperor Wenwei to change his mind. At the same time as sighing in relief, Shen Miao could not help but be secretly shocked at Xie Jingxing's means. Xie Jingxing's method was not considered very brilliant, but it was very effective. Just with a few words, he was able to trigger the worries of a monarch's heart and cause one to be hesitant. The crown prince's marriage fizzled out. Prince Ding's schemes came to nothing. It was one arrow that hit a number of eagles, making one truly happy. No wonder Xie Jingxing had an uncaring appearance when he spoke about the matter. So he already had this ability. As she thought, Shen Miao had some anger in her heart. She felt that she was in some difficult crisis, but when it landed on Xie Jingxing's hands, it was resolved so easily, and this made her felt very incompetent. She could not help but recall Xie Jingxing's frivolous behavior last night and would love to beat Xie Jingxing up. Luo Tan said, "Youngest Biao sister, why are you holding this book so tightly that the pages are almost torn?" It was only then Shen Miao recovered to her senses and let go of her hands before looking embarrassed. Recently when she thought about Xie Jingxing, she would feel somewhat uncontrollable. It was all the other party's brazen actions to blame, but it was only her that took troubles to heart. Luo Tan held her chin and looked at her with mischievously. "Are you thinking that all three, older brother Ling, gentleman Su and eldest brother Feng, are all good and do not know who to choose?" Shen Miao said, "You think too much." Luo Tan still wanted to speak more, but seeing Luo Ling walking over from outside, Luo Tan stuck her tongue out before calling out, "Older brother Ling." Luo Ling smiled. "What are you all talking about?" "Talking about youngest Biao's sister's marriage." Luo Tan said loudly. "Youngest Biao's sister still have not decided who to marry, so I came over to inquire some information." Shen Miao felt helpless in her heart. Couldn't Luo Tan have a little tactfulness of a female? She just said it out like this. Unfortunately Shen Miao was one who had seen the world, else if it was a normal female, they would be embarrassed to death. Shen Miao did not react to it, but Luo Ling was somewhat awkward. He covered his mouth to cough before looking around. "Younger Biao's sister, did you like the safety pendant?" "Safety pendant?" Shen Miao's brow wrinkled as she asked, "What safety pendant?" Luo Ling was startled. "It is the one yesterday I..." Before he finished speaking, the servant from outside interrupted, saying that Luo Shuiyan requests Shen Miao to make a trip to the front hall. Luo Ling swallowed the words that had reached his mouth and smiled as he let Shen Miao leave first. Shen Miao smiled apologetically to help. Later one will chat with older Biao brother again. When she arrived at the front hall, she then know that someone from the princess residence had come to the Shen mansion. Princess Rongshin had sent an invitation to Shen Miao to make a trip to the princess residence. Princess Rongshin had saved Shen Miao several times and Shen and wife were very grateful to her, thus there was no reason to refuse. It was even more impossible for Shen Miao to say anything more. She smiled as she accepted the invitation but her heart was extremely heavy. If it was the past that Princess Rongshin sent her an invitation, Shen Miao would not hesitate to accept it. Honestly speaking, Princess Rongshin treated her well and because of the relation with Xie Jingxing, she took care of her in all aspects. When she knew that Emperor Wenwei had intention to bestow Shen Miao to the crown prince, she even spoken out for Shen Miao and Shen Miao was grateful about it in her heart. However, Princess Rongshin chose this time to send her an invitation. If it was to talk about the crown prince's matter, she could just send someone to speak about it. By sending an invitation for her to go to the princess residence was indicating that some matters required face-to-face discussion. But what matter could be this important? So important that Princess Rongshin, who don't see other, would take the initiative to invite Shen Miao over to the princess residence for a visit. Shen Miao could not help but think about that day in the palace when Princess Rongshin caught her and Xie Jingxing. At that time she called Xie Jingxing's name and afterwards Xie Jingxing managed to bluff his way out but her heart felt restless. If one truly understood one's loved ones, no matter how the other party became, there would be some little habits that one adhered to. Shen Miao's intuition had always been accurate. She did not think that once Xie Jingxing and Princess Rongshin had seen each other, this matter could still be hidden. This conjecture was too scary that she dared not think too deeply since the consequences were too unpredictable. But avoiding was not a way out as trouble had found its way to the door. Shen Miao felt that Princess Rongshin had discovered some suspicious areas but she was unable to refuse this invitation as by refusing it, it would be admitting to it. The invitation that Princess Rongshin sent had indicated the afternoon on the next day. Luo Shuiyan instructed Shen to prepare a number of gifts for Shen Miao to bring to the princess residence because Princess Rongshin had helped Shen Miao a number of times thus Luo Shuiyan would like to express her gratitude to Princess Rongshin. In order to prevent any accidents during the journey, Shen Chu had arranged a number of guards and even Aji and Mo Qing were also following. Despite these, Shen Miao did not have any relaxed feeling during the journey. When Jing Jie and Gu Yu, who were beside her, saw it and thought that Shen Miao was worried that the journey was not safe and consoled her for a long time. In the carriage, Shen Miao kept pondering how she should respond to Princess Rongshin's words. If Princess Rongshin asked about Xie Jingxing then how would she go about dispelling the other party's suspicion? Princess Rongshin was a very cautious person and once a doubtful thought formed, it would be very difficult to annihilate it. Shen Miao felt a terrible headache. Jing Jie smiled, what is young lady thinking that is so serious? This servant had not seen young lady like this for a long time already. Shen Miao was slightly stunned and her heart was somewhat flabbergasted. It was correct. Ever since she was reborn, the route that she was walking on was exceptionally smooth as she relied on information of her previous life's path. Even it was matters concerning Luo Shuiyan, Shen Qin and Shen Chu, it was not particularly difficult to deal with. As for other people, she would only be interested one's interest, just like Lu Ying and Pei Lang. How would she got to do with other people's business? But now she was cracking her head to think of an excuse for Xie Jingxing but what was the relationship between Xie Jingxing and her that she would make an all-out effort? Shen Miao started to be somewhat angry with herself and she also knew that she had a stubborn personality and would bash one's head against a brick wall. A voice in her heart said that these troubles were caused by Xie Jingxing and he should be the one resolving it. The other voice however could not bear for Xie Jingxing to handle this tricky matter alone. After all, to let Xie Jingxing reappear in front of Princess Rongshin with an identity of Prince Rui of Great Liang, no matter if it was to Princess Rongshin or Xie Jingxing, it was just too cruel. Unknowingly, when Shen Miao had not thought of an appropriate countermeasures, the horse carriage had reached the entrance doors of the princess residence. The servants of the princess residence had some impression of Shen Miao and naturally welcoming her respectfully. Shen Miao instructed Mo Qing and the rest to remain at the doors to help move the gifts for Princess Rongshin to the storeroom. Afterwards the palace maid brought Shen Miao in. She brought her directly into Princess Rongshin's room. Even though Princess Rongshin's figure was not commonly seen in court and she was normally low-key, but the princess residence was spacious and grand. Even since her Fuma princess's husband passed on, Princess Rongshin lived as a widow and was not very concerned about these mere worldly possessions. Her room's theme was simple and clean and when one entered, there was a sense of coldness. Princess Rongshin was drinking some sweet soup that was sent from the kitchens and when she saw that Shen Miao had arrived, she instructed the servants to bring a bowl for Shen Miao. She smiled as she said, this is a newly hired chef that makes good snacks and sweet soup. One does not know if you are used to eating it or not but Ben Gong felt that it is better than the palace's. Give it a taste. Shen Miao thanked Princess Rongshin and picked up the bowl to have a taste. She did not like sweet food particularly and because of Princess Rongshin's face, it was not good to refuse it. While eating, she was observing Princess Rongshin's facial expression. Princess Rongshin looked much better than that encounter she had in the place. Her face was rosier and her mood was not bad as there was a smile on her face. Shen Miao said, Princess looked much better. The medical hall had recently happened to receive a rare medicinal herb and the kitchens would simmer it every day for Ben Gong to drink. It would be difficult for Ben Gong not to get better. Princess Rongshin sighed, it is really lucky. Previously one thought that it was already not easy to search for this medicinal herb and did not expect that one actually encountered it at this timing. There was a bit of a surprise in her tone of voice. Shen Miao followed Princess Rongshin's topic but her heart felt a little weird. Princess Rongshin was not someone who was concerned about trivial matters and even chatting, it would be speaking of one's view on interesting matters thus there was no need to specifically mention this matter to her. However Shen Miao could not get the deeper meaning of her words. She had initially thought that Princess Rongshin would be asking about Xie Jingxing's matter today and did not expect that Princess Rongshin would not even mention anything about it thus she also did not intend to mention it. On the contrary the topic was changed to Shen Miao's marriage that Emperor Wenwei had suppressed a few days back. Imperial older brother had been obsessed with it before and seemed to really want you to be his daughter-in-law that even Ben Gong felt that it was not appropriate. However after you left on that day, Ben Gong personally went to Imperial older brother to plead for leniency and hoped that he would dismiss this idea but Imperial older brother did not agree to it. Afterwards it was all thanks to Prince Rui's lucky influence. She looked at Shen Miao with a smile, one had thought that General Shen had inquired about the reason and told you. Shen Miao nodded her head and she started to be on guard. Even though these words were somewhat treacherous, Ben Gong also do not wish to see Great Liang having ambitions on Mingqi. But one had to thank Prince Rui as if he hadn't said those words, Imperial older brother would not have changed his mind and your marriage would not be suppressed down like this. Shen Miao remained quiet as one would make more mistakes if one were to speak now. However she did not expect that Princess Rongshin would suddenly take her hand and spoke with a smile. Previously Ben Gong saw that the relationship between you and Prince Rui of Great Liang was not shallow and Ben Gong is after all much older than you and have eaten more salt than you have eating rice, and it is the same for looking at people. Prince Rui has a special identity and Ben Gong sees that you are still young and inevitably be deceived but one did not expect that he was one of loyalty and spoke up at this critical moment. Ben Gong was thinking that if this was said on purpose then it was somewhat constrained. Princess Rongshin did not have such an attitude on Prince Rui previously. Because the gap between how she was formerly and now was so great, Shen Miao became very cautious, but there was no trace of flusteredness on her face as she said with a gentle smile, Prince Rui is a dragon among people and this official's daughter is just a mere grass, naturally one is incomparable. This official's daughter is also not that arrogant to think that Prince Rui would speak for this official's daughter. These words was diplomatically denying the intimate relationship with Prince Rui. Ben Gong know that you are shy. Princess Rongshin was particularly eccentric today, Ben Gong would not tell others. Shen Miao wanted to speak but Princess Rongshin changed the topic at a turn of her head. Princess Rongshin was particularly exhilarated today and kept on talking to Shen Miao for a long time. When Prince Rui was brought up just now, Shen Miao thought that Princess Rongshin would continue to ask but Princess Rongshin changed topic and asked about the youths that Luo Shui helped to pick for Shen Miao. From the afternoon till the evening, Princess Rongshin seemingly did not want to end the day's chat and send Shen Miao back. Shen Miao was somewhat confused about Princess Rongshin's intention. Jing Jie and Gu Yu however wanted Shen Miao to return eerily as the roads were not easy to travel on at night as one would not be able to see the road that the horse carriage was traveling on. But this was the princess residence and the princess and Shen Miao did not say anything about it so how could they, two servants, say anything? When the last pot of tea was finished, Princess Rongshin got up and Jing Jie and Gu Yu gave a slight sigh in their heart as they thought that Princess Rongshin had a rare interest today and finally they would be able to return. Who knew that Princess Rongshin pulled Shen Miao's hands over amiably and smiled, accompany me around the courtyard. Jing Jie's and Gu Yu's mouth dropped. Princess Rongshin had lived here for so many years and would have walked around her own courtyard every day, without any rhyme and reason why would one let Shen Miao, a guest, take a walk around the courtyard. Moreover it was currently pitch dark and it was very cold outside, so why the need to take a walk around the courtyard? Wasn't one afraid of catching a cold? Was it that the princesses of imperial families were all so eccentric? Shen Miao however understood. Princess Rongshin obviously had other things in mind and today's invitation to Shen Miao to come over to the princess residence would definitely not only to let Shen Miao chat with her. Princess Rongshin definitely had her own plans. But Shen Miao had no ways to reject it. She said, all right. Out of Jing Jie's and Gu Yu's expectation, the courtyard that Princess Rongshin brought Shen Miao to was a side courtyard. There was no lantern at the doors and one could not see clearly what words were on the plaque. Princess Rongshin pulled Shen Miao's hands as she stepped into the room and smiled, this courtyard is Xinjiang Yuan. Shen Miao heart thumped and she knew what Princess Rongshin would say next. Sure enough when Princess Rongshin entered the room, she picked up the little toys on the shelf and reminisced and smiled while she spoke, this is where Jingxing stayed. Jing Jie and Gu Yu who were following behind felt that the words was a little strange. This was where the little marquis of the Xie family stayed. Jingxing did not have a mother when he was young. After Yu Qing left, Ben Gong pitied that he was so young and was angry with the restless side family of the Marquis of Lin and that caused a fire in the inner courtyard. Yu Qing's life was bitter and at the end had a reputation of being a jealous wife. However at that time Madame Fang exploited a loophole and one could not use the imperial might to deal with her as it would only bring forth infamy to Yu Qing. Ben Gong was first angry and second fearful that Madame Fang would take sinister action and carried Jingxing back to the princess residence to raise. Jingxing is very naughty from birth and is very close with Ben Gong. Ben Gong did not have any son and thought that it would be good to have Jingxing raised by my side, thus built this Xinjiang Yuan for Jingxing. When Princess Rongshin was speaking about these things, she was still sighing. With her description, Shen Miao could almost see a baby in swaddling clothes. The fortunate thing about Shen Miao was that her parents were safe and sound and doted on her a lot. Even though due to the second and third household of the Shen family's instigation, there were some alienation, it could still be remedied. However when Xie Jingxing was born, he did not have a mother. In other words, when he was born, in the false identity in Mingqi, he played the role of a pitiful and unfavorable role. Jingxing was raised at Ben Gong's very well and the Marquis of Lin and came a few times to bring him buck and even did it through imperial older brother's end but Ben Gong did not acknowledge it. However later on Madame Fang gave birth to two sons then Ben Gong returned Jingxing back. Princess Rongshin turned around and looked at Shen Miao, do you know why? Shen Miao thought of it for a moment before saying, because the little Marquis was the son of the residence of the Marquis of Linen and he should be inheriting the residence of the Marquis of Linen. If the little Marquis continued to stay in the princess residence, Madame Fang and the two Shu sons of the Xie family would exploit it and in the future the position of the Marquis of Linen will also fall in the hands of the two brothers. Princess Rongshin smiled when she heard it. Ben Gong had long knew that you were one who could see things thoroughly. When I was at your age, one would not have think of that. Shen Miao smiled gently and did not express an opinion. Naturally a young female who had not given birth would not plan for a child, much less plan in advance. But she was a female who gave birth to two child thus if it was Wan Yu and Fu Ming, she would also let Wan Yu and Fu Ming return. It was originally her own children thing so how would one let others take it? Although Jingxing returned, his relationship with Ben Gong still remained very good. It was always said that blood is thicker than water, so Ben Gong was afraid that he would get along with the Marquis of Linen and with vile characters provoking, he would instead be somewhat resentful to Ben Gong and Yu Qing. But what Ben Gong was surprisingly delighted was that his relations with the Marquis of Linen was not been so good. No matter how well the Marquis of Linen treated him, he would not be indifferent to it. Sometimes Ben Gong thought that he and the Marquis of Linen did not look like a pair of father and son so how would there be an instance of blood being thicker than water? Shen Miao's heart was hoisted up as the meaning behind Princess Rongshin's words was just too strong. Princess Rongshin picked up a small mirror on the shelf and said, actually not only does he not look like a father and son with the Marquis of Linen, he does not resemble Yu Qing. The Marquis of Linen was a military man but had some indecisiveness thus in some matters he would be muddled else he would not be schemed by a slut like Madame Fang. Yu Qing was a foolish one as her heart went out fully to that man but at the end she even lost her life and allowed her child to suffer. Xie Jing's character was however different from the both of them. Jingxing had a very stubborn temperament but he was very decisive in his actions. Once he obtained a treasured sword and it was regarded highly by his good friend. The good friend did not say anything but he saw it. Afterwards he said that he took to fancy that friend's mirror and used his treasured sword for an exchange. Ben Gong asked him why did he lie when he obviously didn't like the mirror and he replied Ben Gong that it was because he did not like that treasured sword. He seemed to know clearly what he wanted or not when he was young. He would not take a glance more at the things he did not want and would grab on tightly on things he wanted from the very beginning in his hands. He would always smile and would be liked by females but had never expressed any special indication to any female. He is actually more indifferent than anyone else. Princess Rongshin stared at Shen Miao and for a moment Shen Miao felt that Princess Rongshin and Xie Jingxing were similar in some aspects. It was especially so when they stare sharply at someone, they seem to have the ability to see through one's souls. This kind of compelling sense of oppression had re-emerged from this imperial princess once again. She then opened her mouth to speak. Ben Gong was thinking that perhaps in his eyes the Marquis of Linen was a thing that he did not need so from the beginning he did not treat the Marquis of Linen affectionately. Ben Gong had always thought that Ben Gong was the person that he would hang on tightly onto but from now it seemed that Ben Gong was wrong. Ben Gong was also a person he did not need, correct? This word correct was directed to Shen Miao to answer. Jing Jie and Gu Yu had already been pulled out by Princess Rongshin's personal female official, Yang Gugu and there was currently no one in the room. Shen Miao listened quietly before speaking. The little marquis places the princess in his heart. Shen Miao, Ben Gong knows that you are exceptionally intelligent and is good at appraising others' mind, so there is no need to coax Ben Gong. Princess Rongshin coldly laughed. If it was truly placing Ben Gong in the heart, then why would one deceive with the news of the fake death? How would one just watch on as Ben Gong suffers in pain and sleepless night from the news of his death? It was obviously that everything was planned in the beginning but still had to deceive for Ben Gong's trust and sincere heart. Obviously one is right in front but refuse to recognize and still use half-hearted excuses. Shen Miao, you tell Ben Gong if this is called placing Ben Gong in one's heart. When the last sentence was spoken, the tone was very sharp as if there was anger in the questioning. Shen Miao's heart sank. At the end, she knew about it. However, she could not admit to it. There were a lot of matters that even though one knew the ending, one could not speak about it. Even if evidence was conclusive, nothing could be said. Princess Rongshin was Mingqi's princess while Xie Jingxing was Prince Rui of Great Liang. Once this information was confirmed and was set out by her, Shen Miao could not verify how much trouble it would bring to Xie Jingxing. She could not just confess impetuously. Even if Princess Rongshin had affirmed it in her heart. She said, this official's daughter do not understand what princess is talking about. Princess Rongxing looked at her contemptuously and the previous kindness and gentleness had disappeared and what replaced was the look of a superior looking at a lower rank with the arrogance that one could step an ant to death. This was the most common expression from the Fu family and once upon a time, Shen Miao would see it daily. Disgust started to suddenly appear in her heart. It was not hatred for Princess Rongshin but most likely the hatred was the blood of the Fu family that was running through Princess Rongshin's veins that made them similar when they used different means to achieve the same end. Princess Rongshin said, do you know about the crime of lying the imperial family? Offensive deceiving the monarch. Shen Miao answered. Collaborating with the enemy to betray the country and deceiving the monarch. These words are enough to make your entire household be executed and implicate 9 branches of a family. You can already see it in the case of Shen Wan. Do you know that you are saying to Ben Gong? What kind of lies are you saying to Ben Gong? Not shedding a tear until one sees the coffin. Princess Rongshin's voice had a bone-chilling effect. If Ben Gong wants you dead, it is an easy matter. If you are not able to answer to Ben Gong's satisfaction, Ben Gong only need to mention it to Imperial older brother and it would be a calamity for your Shen family. Because of your stubbornness, you want to let your parents and older brother pay with their lives. Shen Miao said. This official's daughter did not say anything. Shen Miao was silent. Princess Rongshin slowly spoke. Now tell Ben Gong, is Prince Rui the Xie Jingxing that died in the battlefield? It isn't. The firm 2 words came out of Shen Miao without a single waver. It was as if all the scary threats previously were all smoke clouds and had not leave any trace in her heart. Shen Miao. Princess Rongshin got angry. Ben Gong will punish the Shen family. Everything requires evidences. As long as Ben Gong is willing, without evidences, one can also punish you. Shen Miao's heart almost laughed out grimly. The Fu family people were always like this, so overbearing. Be it with the seemingly fair Princess Rongshin, as long as one was facing a matter that one wanted to know, there would not be any hesitation to use one's imperial power to bully. Humans were complex. Human nature was selfish. Ben Gong asked you one more time. Is Prince Rui, Xie Jingxing? It is not. Princess Rongshin almost wanted to burst out in anger. On normal days she appreciated Shen Miao's presence of mind in the face of disasters but when this was directed to her, Princess Rongshin felt that she was facing a bronze P where she was unable to find a single flaw. Normal female would have been scared but Shen Miao was not afraid at all. Someone come. Princess Rongshin's face became solemn. Go and take Shen Miao. Before she could finish her sentence, the rest of the words were swallowed down into her throat. A purple-clad figure leapt into the window outside. The figure came in from the back window and there was no one guarding the backyard thus no one saw him. That person was clad in a dark purple brocade robes and at the corners of the robes there were golden thread embroideries which Princess Rongshin was all too familiar with. After he entered the room, he took his time to glance around before leisurely strolling over to Shen Miao. It was as if it was as natural as one's home and stopped in front of Princess Rongshin. He then lazily spoke slowly. She is timid. Rong Yi, don't scare her. Princess Rongshin remained silent after seeing this person and stood there blankly. Upon hearing Rong Yi, she pointed her finger at the other part but could to speak anything. In the not very spacious room, the light from the lamp was swaying slightly while that person played with the rung on the thumb and wearing half a silver mask. In the cold light of the mask, a slightly smiling red lips was revealed, but one did not feel warm at all. Shen Miao stared at Xie Jingxing unbelievably. She had never thought that Xie Jingxing would dare to appear at this moment. How could he appear in the princess residence without making any secret of it? To Princess Rongshin, Xie Jingxing had died in the battlefield in northern Zhang 2 years ago and if Xie Jingxing appeared again, not to mention the waves that would be created in Mingqi, but in addition to the identity of Prince Rui, there would be all kinds of names of being a scout, spy or traitor that would be used. How could he dared? Princess Rongshin pointed at him and trembled before asking, what did you call Ben Gong? The purple-clad youth in the room had a tall stature as he slowly reached out to remove his mask. When the mask was removed, one could see clearly his outstanding facial features. Unparalleled beauty. That pair of eyes that was always filled with a little radiance and frivolous smiles was now offset but his lips that had a slight ridicule. The frivolous look was covered and there were indifference and pride showing. An unfamiliar Xie Jingxing. A young man that was completely different from the dazzling handsome youth but on his body, one could vaguely see a shadow of the youth. It was just that arrogance was suppressed down and what replaced was a type of danger that was terrifying. He then put the mask back on but it was done heedlessly as he spoke somewhat lazily, trust Rong Yi has been well. Princess Rongshin was stunned for a long time and it seemed that she recovered to her senses just then. She looked at Xie Jingxing and sized him up with an unfamiliar gaze before speaking in an unclear tone, Ben Gong should call you Prince Rui or Xie Jingxing. The alienation and defensive in those words gave Shen Miao a shock. She had previously thought about what kind of scene it would be like when Xie Jingxing bumped with Princess Rongshin but she had not thought that it would be like how it was currently. Previously the family affection had become a scam and joke and the short-lived family with Princess Rongshin had become so hostile that it made one astonished. Xie Jingxing said, as the princess wishes. As the medicine herb sent by you? Princess Rongshin asked. Xie Jingxing only smiled and not answered. Princess Rongshin also smiled. Ben Gong dare not accept Prince Rui's things for nothing. One thinks that the prices for these medicinal herbs are not low. Ben Gong will instruct people to send the money over to the residence of Prince Rui. Many thanks to Prince Rui. No need, Xie Jingxing said. What is Prince Rui here for? Princess Rongshin's voice was polite but vigilant, unlike how would be facing one resurrected son. It was completely a confrontation with stranger and one could say that the tone used was when they faces an enemy. She don't know anything. Xie Jingxing pointed to Shen Miao with his chin. Just ask me directly on any doubts that the princess has. There is no need to make things difficult for her. How would I dare to make things difficult for her? Princess Rongshin laughed coldly but her tone was somewhat complicated. It is good that things are not difficult. Xie Jingxing walked over and held Shen Miao's shoulders, uncaring what expression Shen Miao had. Regarding about today's matter, this prince would come personally another day to explain. There is no need to implicate others on any misunderstanding that the princess have with this prince. He lips raised, the residence of Prince Rui is always waiting at any time. After finishing, he did not care what Princess Rongshin's expression was and took a few steps and went out from the window. Shen Miao was shocked by Xie Jingxing's actions today and did not have any reaction when she was brought out of the princess residence. She had never thought that Xie Jingxing would dare to appear pompously in the princess residence and reveal his identity to Princess Rongshin. Even though Xie Jingxing and Princess Rongshin had relations of a mother and child, that was in the past. Xie Jingxing was currently from Great Liang and with a different nationality it would cause changes in many matters. This was especially so in the position they were in. For example, when Princess Rongshin saw Xie Jingxing today, Shen Miao had thought Princess Rongshin would be hysterical, question angrily or would weep in pain. However, the first expression that Princess Rongshin showed was bringing her guard up. Her frigid irony and scorching satire but silent probing was done in a polite manner without making one difficult. This kind of restrained emotions only represented one fact, which was that Princess Rongshin was more suspicious than happy to the resurrected Xie Jingxing. The words that Princess Rongshin had floated to her ears. He seemed to know clearly what he wanted or not when he was young. He would not take a glance more at the things he did not want and would grab on tightly on things he wanted from the very beginning in his hands. He would always smile and would be liked by females but had never expressed any special indication to any female. He is actually more indifferent than anyone else. Was it because Xie Jingxing knew that such a day would happen, thus the family relations that he did not want was not because he really did not want but because he could not afford to have? Because once he had it, there would be a day where he would lose it. Loved ones would become hostile enemies and the once compassionate and caring eyes would become defensive. Since it was so, it would be better to be strangers from the start. Without any closeness, there would not be any moment of drawback to look forward to. Shen Miao's heart suddenly felt upset. The wind at night was really extremely cold. Xie Jingxing only brought Shen Miao out of the princess residence as the horse carriage from the Shen family was waiting outside. Shen Miao wanted to speak but Xie Jingxing's figure disappeared from her side. It was Mo Qing and Aji who was somewhat surprised when she suddenly appeared at the residence's doors. Aji asked, "Why did young lady come out alone? How about the rest?" Just as he spoke, Jing Jie and Gu Yu ran over panting and only gave a sigh of relief when they saw Shen Miao. Jing Jie said, "These servants were waiting outside but Yang Gugu said that you had come out and this servant thought that she was lying. It was only when one see that there was no one in the room then one came over to take a look. One did not think that young lady really came out." She then looked around and said in confusion, "However, it was only a room and these servants were standing guard outside. Why did one did not see young lady coming out? Could it be that there are some secret passage in the princess residence?" Gu Yu lightly coughed to remind her not to talk nonsense. This was after all outside the princess residence and even if there were secrets in the princess residence, it would be the princess residence's secret so how could it be said so unscrupulously by them? Jing Jie stuck her tongue out and looked at Shen Miao. Shen Miao's brows were tightly knitted and her expression was very solemn. Jing Jie saw it and said softly, "Just now when one went in, Her Highness the Princess's expression was not very good. Young lady, did you quarrel with Her Highness the Princess?" Shen Miao shook her head and thought about everything that happened today. Unknowingly her head got bigger. She climbed up the horse carriage, returned back first. If there is any matter then one would continue thinking about it upon returning to the Shen mansion. What had happened today was totally out of her expectations. Just when the carriage was about to depart, Shen Miao could not help but to lift up the curtains and look back. The dark night had covered everything as there was not even a trace of moonlight, thus nothing could be seen. She sighed softly. However, at a corner near the princess residence, the purple-clad youth silently watched as the horse carriage left. Gao Yang no longer moved his folding fan and instead kept it at his waist. He looked at that handsome youth in front and his expression became a little complicated. He asked, "Is it worth it?" "There will always be such a day," Xie Jingxing said indifferently. "Isn't it a pity?" Xie Jingxing's lips slightly raised as his mask covered his appearance and expression. Like usual, it made others feel the slight sarcasm and some disdain. He said, "It is only the end of fate." Gao Yang no longer spoke and only shook his head after a moment and patted Xie Jingxing's shoulder. A few servants came out from the princess residence and were carrying some things in a basket. They poured its content onto the floor before throwing the basket on the ground. One of the servants felt it was a pity, this thing cost a lot of money and if one sell it to the medical hall, one would even make a profit. It is really a pity to throw it away. What do you know? The servant by the side glared at her. One did not know if this thing has poison. If there is poison then it would be inviting trouble if one were to sell it. Don't look at it anymore, let's leave. The two servants then turned around and returned to the princess residence and left the lone basket on the ground. However, one had knew that these were the coincidentally received herbs that the medical hall sent over for Princess Rongshin's heart illness. However, at this moment it was abandoned like used shoes and even had the suspicion of being poisoned. Gao Yang had a disturbed expression as one's meticulous effort was being trampled on that no matter how big-hearted one was, they would not be happy about it. He wanted to say some words of comfort but Xie Jingxing had already walked far away. His brocade robes, tall stature and leisure walk in the night had an irresistible magnificent style. It was just that figure looked a bit lonely from the back. Shen Miao returned to the Shen mansion. Shen and wife had been waiting for her in the residence as the skies were already dark but Shen Miao had not returned, making everyone think that something had happened. Seeing that she returned safely, they finally gave a sigh of relief. Shen Miao was troubled and mentioned that she was tired and wanted to rest early thus everyone did not suspect anything. When Shen Miao returned to her bedchambers, she instructed Jing Jie and Gu Yu to withdraw before sitting down in front of the time. Her heart was somewhat not restless. It was a bit of a rash decision for Xie Jingxing to appear in the princess residence today and expose his identity in front of Princess Rongshin. Xie Jingxing was not an obtrusive person thus there was no other reason other than to help Shen Miao out of the impossible situation as Princess Rongshin would take action against the Shen family. To create more difficult situation due to oneself was something that Shen Miao was unwilling to see. Even though Xie Jingxing was said to be difficult to deal with every time, he did not do real harm to her from the beginning to the end. Shen Miao did not know how deep the relationship was between Princess Rongshin and Xie Jingxing was but in the princess residence, Princess Rongshin's reaction of Xie Jingxing's real identity was indeed heartrending. Xie Jingxing did not say anything and looked casual as if it did not enter his heart but Shen Miao knew how big the damage was when it was caused by one's loved ones. Just like in the previous life, Fu Shuyi did it to her, the second and third household of the Shen family did it to her, it was because when all pretenses were dropped, it was so cold and all those warm and tenderness were such ridicules. If the indifference and damage was from Xie Jingxing could care about it but because it was Princess Rongshin, he could not. After all, the first tiger head bracelet that Xie Jingxing made was given to Princess Rongshin. After all, upon returning back to Ding capital after 2 years and learning that Princess Rongshin's heart illness erupted, he still sent people to search for the herbs immediately. At the end there were emotions that were invested in it. Shen Miao got up in irritation. She walked over to the windows and pushed it open to look outside. The skies outside the window seemed to have splashed within as the winter night in Ding capital seemed to reveal a feeling of sorrow. She thought for a while before turning back to the room and retrieved a dark red brocade cloak to drape around her body. The rope in front of the cloak was tightly knotted before she walked over to the window to call out softly, "Kong Yang." A black shadows fall from the tree and stood straight in front of Shen Miao before respectfully speaking, "What command does young madam have?" Currently Shen Miao no longer hear the way Kong Yang call her. She hesitated before saying, "Bring me to Xie Jingxing." Kong Yang jaw dropped and he sucked in a mouthful of cold air. He was born with a serious look and normally had a principled expression on and currently looked somewhat comical. Shen Miao's gaze was somewhat ashamed into anger. "Do you have a way or not?" "Young madam." Kong Yang recovered to his senses and looked like he was in great difficulty. This subordinate do not know where master is at the moment. Shen Miao frowned. Kong Yang monitored him all day in the Shen mansion and indeed was impossible for him to know about Xie Jingxing's whereabouts. Today when he came out of the princess residence, Xie Jingxing walked too quickly and before she could even ask, no one knew where Xie Jingxing had gone. However, one did not know why, but one felt that Xie Jingxing would be at the residence of Prince Rui at the moment. One could not talk about his happiness or anger and he was used to bottle up his emotions under the mask, thus Shen Miao felt that if Xie Jingxing was frustrated, he should be alone. She made a decisive decision and said to Kong Yang, "Bring me to the residence of Prince Rui." Kong Yang's face turned to one of difficulty and Shen Miao frowned. "You cannot even do this." Kong Yang quickly explained, "This subordinate can naturally do it by oneself, but it is not possible to bring young maid along." Shen Miao asked him, "Do you know Qinggong?" Kong Yang nodded his head continuously. "Then it is all right." Shen Miao said, "You can grab me and bring me to the residence of Prince Rui." She thought it very simply, just like what Xie Jingxing did to her. Kong Yang was Xie Jingxing's people and in some degree even easier to move them than Mo Qing and the rest. The most important thing was she did not want more people to know about Xie Jingxing's identity, as an additional person knowing would be an additional risk. Even if it was the people she trusted, as one would not know if they would be made use by others. When her words were out, Kong Yang repeatedly shook his head and there was some fear in his eyes as he said, "No can do." "Whatever is wrong?" Shen Miao's patience was almost exhausted. Kong Yang said, "It is improper for male and females to have physical contact." Shen Miao. She really did not know how Xie Jingxing found these guards that were more disciplined than females. Afterwards, no matter what Shen Miao said, Kong Yang was not willing to bring her to the residence of Prince Rui. Now Shen Miao was in a difficult position. Without letting Kong Yang use Qinggong, she would need to walk out of the main doors of the Shen residence. The main doors of the Shen residence were guarded by Shen Shen's army and cannot be alerted. To go out in the middle of the night like this, one feared that before even getting out of the main doors, most of the people in the family would be awakened and at that time she would not know how to explain. Shen Miao's head ached a lot. She looked at the wall outside the courtyard and suddenly there was a flash of light in her mind. When Xie Jingxing just moved over to Yanqing Lane, as he did not lack of money to spend, he had bought all the houses between the residence of Prince Rui to the Shen mansion and even claimed to be neighbors. It can be said from this that the residence of Prince Rui was near to the Shen mansion. It was just that Xie Jingxing's room was a bit far. Even though it was the neighboring courtyard, Shen Miao's gaze landed on the tall wall of the courtyard. She said, "Climb over the wall then." Kong Yang looked at her blankly, seemingly not believing his ears. He was ordered to protect Shen Miao's safety and had monitored every single movement of Shen Miao in the Shen mansion, thus she knew what kind of person Shen Miao was. Shen Miao was calm and very disciplined. She was able to withstand quietness at such a young age and looked like one who was from the palace. Her everyday actions reflected that she was brought up well. Kong Yan had often felt that this young madam was different from others and was extremely noble. However, when one heard that this noble young madam wanted to climb over walls at this moment, Kong Yang thought that there was something wrong with his ears. Shen Miao glared at him and said angrily, "Are you not listening to me?" "Yes, yes, yes." Kong Yang quickly stood up straight and dared not look at what expression Shen Miao had on. 168 to 172. Afterwards Kong Yang felt extreme suffering. Initially he thought that Shen Miao wanted to climb over the walls herself, but the climbing over walls that Shen Miao had mentioned was referring to bring things for her to climb up like stairs and Shen Miao could walk over the walk to the other side. Kong Yang spent most of the night stealing haystacks from the wealthy people as steps, but the problem was that there was over tens of courtyards between Shen mansion to the residence of Prince Rui. Every courtyard had a wall in between and Kong Yang was so busy that he was perspiring in the middle of a cold day. Seeing that Shen Miao arrogantly walked over another wall, as if she was walking upstairs in the palace, he could only lament and sign of his own destiny. If one wasn't afraid of tarnishing young madam's body and provoke dissatisfaction from master, Kong Yang would not spend that much effort. One had to know that his Qinggong was good and it was more than enough for fly with an additional person, so why was there the need to run around like this? Previously when master transferred him out of Mo Yu army, his colleagues were all envious of his good fortune, but they did not know that this job was like being a laborer for others that was even worse off than servants. Kong Yang could only cry silently in his heart. When Shen Miao finally climbed over the last wall and entered the residence of Prince Rui, Kong Yang was so tired that he did not want to talk. Because they came in from the direction of the inner courtyard and not the main entrance, there was not a single guard seen in the big residence of Prince Rui. Kong Yang also had a doubtful expression as it was now that sloppy in the past. Shen Miao was looking at the layout of the residence of Prince Rui. It was as luxurious and beautiful as in the rumors. It was just a temporary place to stay, but it was renovated this beautifully. One really did not know how extraordinary Great Leon's Imperial Palace would be like. Just as she was thinking about it, a middle-aged male clad in black appeared in front of her. Tai Yi. Kong Yang shouted and immediately asked, "Where are the rest?" The guard by the name of Tai Yi was startled upon seeing Shen Miao and asked her with cupped hands, "Is there something urgent for young lady Shen to come over personally?" Shen Miao looked at the other's appearance and he seemed to know her. Seeing that Kong Yang greeted him, she guessed that he was Xie Jingxing's people and said, "I am looking for Prince Rui. As one have some words to say." Tai Yi seemed to know that she would say that and nodded his head. "Master is in the inner courtyard. Do come with me." When winter comes to Mingqi, no one was willing to walk around outside. If it was at night, there would not be a single person on the streets and even a bird, cat or dog would stay in its warm nest and not willing to move one bit. The water in pond was already frozen. The thick layer of ice had completely covered the scenery. The entire summer scene of lotus flowers and koi were swimming. It was as if no matter how good the days were, it would always pass. Just like the flowers that bloom in spring would always wither one day. The purple-clad youth lazily slept on top of the tree with both hands behind his head and without taking off his mask. There was a lantern hanging on the tree and under the weak halo of light, his expression seemed to be somewhat not of sorrow, but it was not happiness and instead somewhat lonely. It was like the wind that passes through the tree, floatingly light but was also cold and heavy, quiet and silent. The white tiger was lying under the tree and from time to time it would scratch its claws at the trunk and occasionally bit the ice on the ground. The crushing of the ice was clearly audible at night. This scenery was what Shen Miao saw when she entered. The youth and white tiger slept on, but it made her thought of her past lifetime self, walking in the Imperial Gardens in the middle of the night, seeing the remnants of laughter from Fu Shuyi and Mei Furan during the day. It was somewhat agonizing as she walked around without any goal. The white tiger suddenly realized that someone was approaching and immediately got up and looked at her vigilantly as it growled warningly. But because it was after all too small, there was no deterrent from its voice, making it adorable instead. Zhao Zhao, shish, Xie Jingxing said, be quiet. Shen Miao. She walked to the tree and looked up at the person sleeping in the branches and said, who are you calling? Xie Jingxing moved and suddenly looked down. When he saw Shen Miao he was startled for a moment before he asked, why are you here? The conversation in the princess residence was not finished, thus one came over to take a look. Xie Jingxing took a glance at her but did not come down from the tree and instead chuckled, you came over because you are concerned of me. What you think is your business? Shen Miao answered. Could it be that you thought that I would be sad? Xie Jingxing seemed to have heard a Zhou and his expression became interested, really naive. It is the best if there is none. Shen Miao did not pay any attention to his ridicule and said calmly. Xie Jingxing stared at the skies and waved his hands lazily, go back. I am fine. Shen Miao did not return. The white tiger on the ground seemed to be aware that Shen Miao had no malice and moreover its master had not shown any hostility, thus it gradually relaxed its vigilance before cuddling at Shen Miao's feet and call out. Shen Miao quickly looked at the youth up on the tree. After a long while, she asked, Xie Jingxing, you want to wipe out Ming Qi? The air became silent in an instant and it seemed that there were tiny lingering sparks that came out from one of the hanging lanterns. In the dim light, the branches concealed the youth's expression that even if one could see him, one was unable to see his expression due to the mask. One could only see the corner of the gorgeous purple robes that was hanging down with the golden threads that was shining under the light. Those lines interlaced and waved but seemed to be vaguely outlining a picture of a beast. Seemingly a dragon. The silence made one apprehensive and he did not answer. Shen Miao's back was leaning against a tree as he said faintly, if you at the end want to wipe of Ming Qi then everyone that one come across can be adopted or discarded. There is little common ground for understanding between people of differing principles. Some people are good but are destined not to be on the same route. Since there are different routes, why be bothered about them? Xie Jingxing laughed and his voice was heard on top, you are comforting me. No, I am comforting myself, Shen Miao answered. She could understand Xie Jingxing but she was somewhat different from Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing was a man and had to be even more decisive, thus one believed that after tonight, he would still be the confident Prince Rui and nothing was difficult for him and there was nothing that could stop him. He was like a lion who had a powerful existence but it's just that when he was licking his own wounds alone, she so happened to encounter him. You also have matters to grieve. Xie Jingxing scoffed, still using the frivolous tone as before. However Shen Miao knew that in his eyes, there was no smile at this moment. This was because there were some emotions that even he was unable to hide it, thus he went up to the tree where no one could see and was even unwilling to take down the mask and sit there quietly. My grieving matters are no less than you. Shen Miao smiled gently, at least Princess Rongshin is still alive. Shouldn't the most painful thing in the world is that the person who had misunderstood and blamed are gone? Some mistakes can be compensated but some wrongs cannot be made up. Like her Wan Yu and Fu Ming, she could save many people but only these two could not be saved. Even if one's entire life was exhausted, one could not save them at all. No matter if she could take her biggest revenge in the future, or even if the entire Shen family could live on splendidly, there would not be any opportunity to make up for this regret and one could only think about it at night. Even dreaming about it was a luxury. You also knew that there would be such a day sooner or later, so why be concerned about it? Everything is destined and things that were done with meticulous virtue and attention to duty. Everything more would be too much and this is only that fate has come to an end. Shen Miao said, no one would walk with anyone on the same road for an entire lifetime. Just like my marriage. Fu Shuyi is not on the same road as me, the crown prince is not on the same route as me. Huang Fu Hao is not, Feng Zixian is not, Luo Ling is not and Pei Lang is also not. Fu Shuyi and the crown prince were people in the Fu family and naturally they were enemies and it was impossible to be on the same route as Shen Miao. Huang Fu Hao labored sinister motives. Feng Zixian grew up smoothly without any bumps in life like a flower in a greenhouse and it was different from her. Luo Ling personality was straightforward so how would he understand the schemes and calculations in her year? As for Pei Lang, it was a complicated entanglement since in the past lifetime he had been involved in the destruction of Shen Miao's life. This itself would always separate her from him, so much so that she could never treat him honestly. If you say it like that, there is no one under the skies that are on the road with you. Xie Jingxing reminded her. The truth is like this. Shen Miao sighed in her heart. For a person who crawled out of the grave and lived the second time round, there was some parts, in some ways, that was almost like a ghost. She had been traveling on the road of revenge alone and it had always been so. Then with you comforting me like this, it would make me have the illusion. Xie Jingxing smiled gently, that you and I are on the same road. The wind picked up the leaves on the ground, blew it onto the pond. The surface of the pond was frozen till it was as hard as a rock and unshakable. It seemed that one was able to see through the surface of the pond as one was able to see the breeze blowing in the spring and water flowers blooming. The ice in the pond was slightly glittering and the red flowers and green willows scene was indeed a great scenery to look at. Winter days would always pass and spring would always come. Shen Miao's voice was light that it was even lighter than the wind in the night as it filled the air. She said, who says it is not? The shadow of the tree flashed and someone came down from it. The youth's back was tall and handsome and when the white tiger was in a distance saw that its owner had came down, it immediately ran over with joy and even licked the corner of other party's robes. Do you think that I am Prince Rui of Great Liang or the little marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Linen? He asked. Shen Miao leaned against the tree and placed both of her hands behind as she looked at his back view, is this important? I too thought that it was not important. Xie Jingxing stood by the pond. His voice was calm, as if there was no waves at all as he said, from the moment I knew about my identity, there would be people who would remind me constantly that it is important. The Marquis of Linen is weak, incompetent, indecisive and is not worthy to be a father. Even if the real little Xie Marquis did not die at the beginning, he would still die in Madame Fang's hands. Rong Yi treats me well. I thought that it was important to others but to her, my identity is not important. But now it seemed that I had made a big mistake. He said dully, to the people under heavens, this issue had been important from the beginning to the end. There is no flukes. Believing that all of one's feelings would be able to break through the shackles of one's identity and family feelings would be above all but at the end it was a slap to one's face. The most important thing was that feeling of deep disappointment. Shen Miao stared at his back and only spoke after a long time, to me, it does not matter. Xie Jingxing lightly laughed. He turned around and walked towards Shen Miao before stopping in front of her. He looked down at Shen Miao and asked, do you know who I am? You are just Xie Jingxing. She refused to admit defeat and seemed to be pressing down the other party's momentum. Just. He was slightly dissatisfied. You can deceive others but cannot deceive me. Shen Miao looked at his mask. From the beginning I know what kind of person you are. Ever since I know you till when the alliance concluded, you are just Xie Jingxing, nothing more. Xie Jingxing gave a long and meaningful oh sound. He took another step forward and Shen Miao unconsciously retreated. She was leaning against the tree and this time her back was up against the tree and there was no way to retreat it and Xie Jingxing lifted her chin up. Xie Jingxing said, "Do you find that I am cruel?" "One does not think so as I am also the same," Shen Miao answered. "Then do you know that I am not a good person?" His voice was very deep and pleasant to hear and with the cold wind blowing by one's ear, it made one's entire body feel hot. Shen Miao backed up but he was not willing to be looked down upon and said, "I know, I am also the same." Xie Jingxing held onto her waist and pulled Shen Miao to him. The mask was blocking his face, making his handsome appearance a bit mysterious. He said, "Then I can now answer your question." "What question?" Shen Miao did not understand. "You asked if I want to wipe out Mingqi." Shen Miao stared at him and in that beautiful pair of eyes, they only filled with bright glittering gems as if one could be sucked into in. "Then what is your answer?" she asked. "If I say yes, will you report me?" Xie Jingxing smiled devilishly. Shen Miao slowly said, "No. Because I am also the same." It was like sparks suddenly appeared on the sheet of ice. One was unable to see if he was happy or anger when he asked, "Do you know what you are saying?" Shen Miao was silent. He gritted his teeth as if he wanted to swallow Shen Miao whole. "Shen Miao, you better not regret. Once on board my ship, one cannot alight from it in this life." He suddenly leaned over and kissed Shen Miao. Shen Miao unconsciously wanted to avoid it but was held by the waist by Xie Jingxing. His cold mask touched Shen Miao face as he held Shen Miao hands and kissed her lips roughly. His kisses were hot but the silver mask was cold, as if it was carrying some unspeakable emotions that overwhelmed heavens and earth. The more Shen Miao struggled, the more tighter he held her and locked her in his arms and took her lips like making an oath. The flowers bloomed in winter, the butterflies flying in autumn, the ice springs in summer and the snowflakes in spring could not describe the bizarreness of this moment. There was the sound of wind by one's ears but that beautiful youth's hug was strong and his kisses was burning, as if one had exhausted one life and could not escape. When Xie Jingxing let go of Shen Miao almost went limp and could not breathe. In the previous life, she desired Fu Shuyi but from the beginning till the end was a one-sided enthusiasm. Even during Fu Shuyi's wedding night, it was just a perfunctory gesture. She had never been this intimate with any man. Shen Miao flew into a rage out of humiliation as she felt that she had lost her self-control just now. Xie Jingxing supported her so that she would not fall as she glared angrily at Xie Jingxing. However, she did not know what after she was being kissed just now, her eyes were almost watery. With eyes full of life and charming with a blushing face and red lips like petals, it made one want to feel tenderness towards. Xie Jingxing covered it up and looked away. Other than being embarrassed and angry, Shen Miao was a little overwhelmed and did not know what to do. In all fairness, her heart more or less expected this scenario. As to why did she not block it or let it develop, it was because her heart had unconsciously reacted to it but Shen Miao did not want to go into the reason behind it. "Talk about your marriage." Xie Jingxing had restored that frivolous tone of voice. "What is your plan now?" Shen Miao looked at him unfathomably. "What plans?" Xie Jingxing looked at her with squinted eyes and spoke in a somewhat dangerous tone. "The Crown Prince, Luo Ling, Feng Zixian, Su Mingfeng and Pei Lang. Who do you want to marry to?" Shen Miao frowned and had a serious look of consideration. Xie Jingxing's eyes coagulated and his tone was unkind. "You really want to marry to someone else? Why can't I marry someone else? After kissing me, touching me, you still dare to make me wear a green hat? Shen Miao, you really have the nerves." Shen Miao smiled slightly. "You cannot be thinking to let me marry you. You are finally smart for once," Xie Jingxing said unhurriedly. Shen Miao was startled. It was not that she did not think about the relationship with Xie Jingxing before. Both of them are allies but they were more ambiguous than allies. About matters between male and female, though one had not eating any pork, one at least saw pigs running. On those nights when her heart beat that quickly, Shen Miao discovered some things. However, this did not mean that Xie Jingxing could marry her. Xie Jingxing is Prince Rui of Great Liang and she was a daughter of Mingqi's general. Not to mention that Mingqi's side would not agree to it, one feared that it would not be easy to explain to Emperor Yongli's side. Especially in the current situation, Xie Jingxing has a high status in Great Liang and the greater the power he has, it meant that Emperor Yongle valued Xie Jingxing heavily. There would be many things that one would not be able to act independently when being valued heavily by an emperor. This included one's own marriage. Just as Shen Miao was still distracted, she heard Xie Jingxing saying, "You do not have to worry about anything and just embroider the wedding dress obediently in the room and wait for me." "When did I promise to marry you?" Shen Miao retorted back with a question. "Oh," Xie Jingxing thought about it a little and a smile appeared on his lips. "I also don't mind turning the raw rice into cooked one tonight." Shen Miao looked at him in vigilance but Xie Jingxing laughed. "You look like you are looking forward to it." Shen Miao decided not to speak to Xie Jingxing about it. This person appeared genuine but was actually devious and would speak obscenities in every 3 sentences. She said, "With regards to the Crown Prince matter, I have an idea." Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrow. "You have a countermeasure early on." Suddenly thought about it. Shen Miao stressed, "Need your help." "Need my help?" Xie Jingxing smiled lightly and whispered to her, "This husband will help you." Shen Miao. When Shen Miao returned back to the Shen mansion from the residence of Prince Rui, the skies were almost in the early hours of morning. Naturally it was Xie Jingxing who brought her back and when he came to know that Shen Miao climbed over walls when coming over, Xie Jingxing laughed till Shen Miao almost got angry. However, as this night passed, there were many things that had quietly changed. During the discussion with Xie Jingxing in the residence of Prince Rui on the countermeasures against the Crown Prince's marriage, Shen Miao had a strange feeling. All the while when she was in the road of revenge, she was always alone and now unfathomably having a strong enough backing, it made her feel secure. Especially this support was intelligent and could see the loopholes in her countermeasures in a glance and propose improvements. Shen Miao felt that their partnership was very cooperative. Unconsciously the words that Xie Jingxing had said during the night floated up in Shen Miao's mind. Just embroider the wedding dress obediently. Xie Jingxing was one who would look at certain things casually but what Princess Rongshin said was correct. He knew what he wanted and did not want from the very beginning and Shen Miao was not clear how much words that Xie Jingxing said was true. However, on the matter of Shen Miao's marriage, Xie Jingxing had revealed his absolute strength and tyranny that no one had any room to refute. Shen Miao sighed again. The road ahead was long and the muddy waters of Mingqi was not cleaned yet. This was just too extravagant to mention about one's feelings. Counter soldier with arms and water with earth. If Xie Jingxing really had that ability and he dared to marry the daughter of another country's general, then there was no reason for her not to dare to marry. Her lips were slightly tingling in pain, as if there was still a lingering heat on it which made her lower her head. The mouth that could not deny and the heartbeat that could not be suppressed. That youth was handsome and beautiful, and was intelligent and decisive. It was difficult for anyone not to be tempted. In the residence of Prince Ding, the lanterns were brightly lit the entire night. After Fu Shuyi knew that Shen Miao's and the Crown Prince's marriage was suppressed because Prince Rui unintentionally mentioned that one sentence. On this night, all the aides had reached the residence of Prince Ding and discussed about this matter from the beginning to the end. Previous I had guessed that the relationship between Shen Miao and Prince Rui was not that simple. Now after using the Crown Prince to test, the cloven foot had been revealed. Fu Shuyi laughed coldly. Once anything happened to Shen Miao, Prince Rui will not be able to sit still. Pei Lang stood beneath and did not say a single word. These days Fu Shuyi had changed his treatment to him and would not ask for his opinions on many things. Because the contrast before and after was too great, other aides noticed it and thought that Pei Lang had offended Fu Shuyi and took joy in his misfortune. However, Pei Lang knew that as Fu Shuyi was an intelligent person, for him to inexplicably neglect him, he must have discovered some clues or perhaps his relations with Shen Miao was discovered by Fu Shuyi. Even though his heart was on fire, Pei Lang did not display even a little of it. Fu Shuyi still did not drop all pretenses, so it meant that he had his own intentions or perhaps he only suspected it but it was not confirmed yet. A full set of show must be performed when acting and one could not abandon it halfway. Pei Lang knew this truth well and only portrayed the reaction of a normal aide that was being shunned. What is Gentleman Pei's view on it? For the first time, Fu Shuyi asked for his opinion. Pei Lang's heart moved and dropped his head to say, this subordinate thinks that one should immediately investigate on the relationship between the Shen family and Prince Rui or Great Liang. Shen Miao's position is special as she represents Ming Qi's most important military power. If there is some private agreement between the Shen family and Prince Rui, one fear. The aides started discussing. Even though they were not satisfied with Pei Lang, they did not admit that Pei Lang's words were incorrect. Shen Miao was after all a young female and not a great beauty that could overthrow cities and ruin states. It is better to say that Prince Rui valued the Shen family behind Shen Miao than to say that Prince Rui targeted for a beauty. This was then reasonable. Fu Shuyi said, gentleman said it correctly but today I have heard something. Everyone was waiting for him to say the words next. Shen Miao had spent the entire day in the residence of Princess Rongxin. The princess's health had not been good all the time but she still held her till at night. It seems that after Shen Miao departed, the princess's mood was also not good. Fu Shuyi smiled. Could it be that the princess knew something? After a moment of silence, an aide said, perhaps Princess Rongxin had inside information. Your Highness may wish to start with Princess Rongxin's end and perhaps there would be some little clues. I too think like this. Fu Shuyi looked at Pei Lang and one was not sure if he was purposely saying it for him to hear, even though behind Shen Miao that is the big backing of the Shen family, she is very eccentric. Prince Rui only lend a helping hand to her every matter so there must be some hidden motive. If Princess Rongxin is also involved then the matter would become interesting. Paper cannot wrap fire. I must uncover the secret between them. Fu Shuyi smiled meaningfully, one have to rely on all of you. Everyone responded that they didn't dare and Pei Lang lowered his head but felt a little uneasiness in his heart. This night, the princess residence was not at all peaceful. Princess Rongxing had sat in Xinjiang Yuan for the entire night. Xie Jingxing did not die and instead became the Prince Rui of Great Liang. This was something that Princess Rongxin had never expected. In the past 2 years, Princess Rongxin had countlessly hoped that one day she would discover that Xie Jingxing's death was just a dream and also hoped that when she woke up that handsome and proud youth would still be standing in front of him and call out Rong Yi lazily. However, when the actual moment arrived, Princess Rongxin's first thought was not gratification. He wore a noble purple gold robe and the corner of the robes were embroidered with a flying dragon with gold threads. He wore a cold mask and greeted her with familiarity but with the title of Prince Rui. That was the biggest threat for Ming Qi. Princess Rongxin originally was angry due to the deceit and cover-up but once she realized the true identity of Xie Jingxing, Princess Rongxin's instinctive reaction was to be vigilant. This did not mean that the many years of relationship with Xie Jingxing was false but because of one another's position in politics, she was the princess of Ming Qi and pride and suspicion of the imperial family would always appear at such times. She wrote a letter at the table to warn Emperor Wenwei and stopped halfway before tearing the paper into small pieces. The entanglement and complication in her heart had poured over to her face but she was not willing to see Xie Jingxing again because she did not know how to face him. The initial part of Princess Rongxin's suspicion was that Xie Jingxing did not die so how would he become Prince Rui, the blooded younger brother of Emperor Yongle of Great Liang. Prince Rui's name was obviously not something that could be used casually. Was Xie Jingxing originally a person from Great Liang or was he bought over by Great Liang by coincidences? If it was the former then it was still excusable but if it was the latter then Xie Jingxing had committed treason. Xie Jingxing was not close to Xie Ding and one would not be successful if one asked Xie Ding. Shen Miao must know some stuff but Shen Miao would definitely not say anything. Since Xie Jingxing was also protecting her, it was not easy for Princess Rongxing to touch her. After thinking about it, Princess Rongxin finally thought of someone. Grew up together when Xie Jingxing was in his childhood, with good relations between both families and was considered to be Xie Jingxing's best friends in Ming Qi. Because they grew up together and spent most of the time together, there would be times when one would be able to see the differences with Xie Jingxing. The heir of the Count of Pingnan, Su Mingfeng. Princess Rongxing instructed the servants to bring an invitation over. As the days passed, it got closer to the end of the year. The commoners were starting to rush to purchase New Year's goods and thus the streets would be filled with bustle every day. Life would go on smoothly so normal people would not be able to know what was in the minds of noble people. It was like how the eagle and sparrow saw the skies, it was destined to be different. Ever since Emperor Wenwei had been shocked by the wildly ambitious casual chat with Prince Rui, he was more and more inclined with an alliance with Qin country. It was just till now there was no conclusion to Princess Ming An's case, thus there was still a line between them. However, with Emperor Wen Hui's increased sincerity, Huang Fu Hao's attitude was somewhat softened. All the different departments of Ming Qi's official could be dispatched by Huang Fu Hao, that even the Bureau of Investigations would time to time be interrogated by Huang Fu Hao. No matter what the result was, Emperor Wenwei had gave Huang Fu Hao enough face. Even though one was unable to discover the cause of Princess Ming An's death, Huang Fu Hao did not think that Ming Qi deliberately covered it up since he had witnessed the process of the investigation. It might be that Princess Ming An had offended some powerful character else how would there be no traces left? Not mentioning about the matter with Princess Ming An, the words that Prince Rui said to Emperor Wenwei finally reached to Huang Fu Hao's ears. If one were to say from the beginning that Huang Fu Hao represented Qin country, he clearly had the intention to form an alliance with Ming Qi but purposely put up airs in an attempt to seek more personal benefits. When he heard the words from Prince Rui, Huang Fu Hao could not sit still. If Prince Rui represented Great Liang and really had the intention to get the few cities that produces ore in Ming Qi, just like what Emperor Wenwei worried, Great Liang would not need those mere cities but the entire Ming Qi. That meant that Ming Qi was in danger. Without the lips, the teeth would feel the cold. Just one Qin country was not power enough to deal with Great Liang, moreover it would be the Great Liang that had absorbed Ming Qi's military, weapons and wealth. At that time when Great Liang take care of Qin country, the Qin country would not have strength to fight. The purpose of the alliance between Qin country and Ming Qi was to contain Great Liang. Huang Fu Hao sent this information back to Qin country. Even though the Emperor of Qin was furious that he had lost a princess in Ming Qi without rhyme or reason, but comparing a princess in the entire country of Qin, it was insignificant. Thus the Emperor of Qin let Huang Fu Hao temporarily put the matter of Princess Ming An aside and form a good alliance with Ming Qi. When Huang Fu Hao got the message from the Emperor of Qin, he started to enter the Imperial Palace of Ming Qi more frequently. One had the intention to strike an alliance and the other was worried that there would be no help, thus they clicked quickly and on the surface had joyous and harmonious relations. The relationship between Emperor Wenwei and Huang Fuhao had become much closer. Emperor Wenwei had the intention to support the crown prince and previously wanted to get Shen Miao to marry the crown prince, but who knew that he suddenly glimpsed upon Great Liang's ambitions and dared not take action with the Shen family. Now that Huang Fuhao came over, it was good to let Huang Fuhao have more interactions with the crown prince so that the crown prince and inherit the relations with Huang Fuhao. The matters in this world is inextricably linked. Normally the relations that would be even touched by a 8-foot pole, but now there were various connection. Intelligent people would find their usefulness in these relations, but normal people would be lost in it if they were not careful enough. In the residence of the Minister of Land, Shen Dongling was drinking tea at the moment. High-grade Yurching type of tea leaves that was grown in the dangerous peaks of the southern country that one small handful would cost a few hundreds of silver. Her posture when she appreciates tea was beautiful and she was wearing the southern Yang's brocade robes and had family bracelets on. She was very pretty and delicate that when one take a glance, one would see that she was a charming woman that lived like a noble. No one would have though that not too long ago, she was still an obscure shoe daughter of the Shen residence that would not leave the courtyard all year round, that even the servants did not know that she was a young lady of the Shen residence. Not to say when Ren Wanyan was the head of the household, there was not even oil in the dishes for 10 days to half a month. The difference from the past and now was like clouds and dirt. Human seeks one's way up just as water seeks its way down. Even though the residence of the Minister of Land did not look as powerful as other official families, it was considered to be very wealthy. There was no one that could live with only that little money from court. Before marrying into the residence of the Minister of Land, Shen Dongling had always thought that the Wang family was following Prince Zhou and only later learned that the real master of the Wang family was the crown prince. Being a Minister of Land but had such an abundance of wealth like this, it was not because the Wang family had some dealing with the salt smugglers, but the money would naturally flow into the residence of the crown prince, and these are only some fathers from a flying goose. Just these few feathers was able to let the family stay in Ding capital without worrying. It all shows how profitable the business of privately selling salt was. If one were to say that the matter of money was an unexpected surprise to Shen Dongling, then Wang Bai himself made Shen Dongling very satisfied. Wang Bai looked honest but was in fact savvy and was considered highly ranked under the crown prince. At the beginning Shen Yu did not look up to Wang Bai and did not know that it was her that had no eyes. Shen Dongling was born with beautiful looks, had a soft temperament, and the most important thing was that she could always make some suggestions for Wang Bai's matters. However, she would not interfere too much and would always keep a cautious distance. The more she did that, the better Wang Bai treated her. When marrying a wife, one would want to marry one who was virtuous, and besides being virtuous and smart, it was even more valuable for one also understanding other people's views. Wang Bai had felt very fortunate that Shen Dongling and Shen Yu had exchanged their marriages. The family of the Minister of Land only had Wang Bai, the only son, and Wang Bai was very capable that almost everything in the Wang family was decided by Wang Bai. Naturally Shen Dongling became the matriarch of the Wang family. The servant would be very respectful to her, and if Ren Wanyan was still alive, one feared that she would faint in anger. That shoe daughter that she viewed like ants was not even more comfortable than when Ren Wanyan was in the beginning, and naturally Wan Yiniang was like the boat that floats when the tide rises and lived a wealthy lifestyle. Today it was the same. Wang Bai came back from outside and handed the pastry in his hands to the maids before saying, "One passed by Guangfu Jai and conveniently bought some cakes for you to eat." Husband is considerate. Shen Dongling smiled at him as she poured a cup of tea for him. Her every move was delicate and tender, most likely because she was after all a daughter of a Yiniang, there would be some amorous feeling. She smiled as she said, "Husband looked very happy today. Is there something good that happened?" To Shen Dongling, Wang Bai did not hide most things from her because Shen Dongling was not one who would talk and could occasionally help to share his worries. Currently Wang Bai and Shen Dongling were newlyweds and would be in their honeymoon period. Wang Bai said, "His Majesty let Huang Fuhao have more interactions with the crown prince and most likely want to have good relations with Qin country. By giving the crown prince this favor, it can be easily seen that His Majesty wants to support the crown prince. When man attains the Tao, even his pets would ascend to heavens. We are the crown prince's people, so when the crown prince ascend to the throne in the future, we would have credits for our efforts." He smiled towards Shen Dongling. "Do you think it should be celebrated?" Shen Dongling's mind turned and immediately showed a surprised happiness expression. "Really?" Afterwards she looked at Wang Bai with some admiration as she spoke softly, "Husband is really powerful. It is this one's past fortune to be able to follow husband. To be looked with such admiring gaze by a charming and seductive female, any male's vanity would be greatly satisfied." Wang Bai smiled. "This is easy to satisfy." He then sighed and spoke with some regret. "If a while ago, His Majesty bestow marriage upon 5th Shen young lady to His Highness the Crown Prince would have the military power of the Shen family and it would be more advantageous. If so, then our winning chances would be even higher. Now even though one have some relations with Qin country at the moment, in terms of military power," he sighed again, "it is often the most important thing." Shen Dongling's mind turned and she conveniently leaned into Wang Bai's embrace and reached her hand out to place it on Wang Bai's chest and said tenderly, "Husband is too demanding on himself. To be able to do to this level, one would not be an ordinary person." This was exactly what Wang Bai wanted to hear. He smiled. "You are really contented. This key is contented with a man like husband." Shen Dongling smiled delicately and asked inadvertently, "Currently one cannot let 5th younger sister marry the crown prince." "5th younger sister?" Wang Bai was startled before saying, "Almost forgot that you both are sisters." He said it unintentionally, but it was particularly sharp when it was heard by Shen Dongling, as he seemed to say that she was a Shu daughter while Shen Miao was a D daughter, and there was a difference between D and Shu. Humans' greed would change accordingly to the change of environment. In the past, Shen Dongling was busy ensuring her safety in the Shen residence and schemed for a good life for herself and could tolerate all the ridicules and sarcasm and would not have the energy to be picky about it. However, she was now the fern in the residence of the Minister of Land, thus she was particularly sensitive to these things. She buried her head in Wang Bai's embrace and did not let Wang Bai see her sullen expression, but still asked, "It cannot be done." "It is not that it cannot be done." Wang Bai said, "It is just that Great Liang's ambition is difficult to make clear, thus many things need to be delayed as one still requires Shen Shen's reputation. It is just that Shen Miao is currently not young of age and one heard that the Shen family is not willing to let Shen Miao marry into the residence of the crown prince. The key point of the matter is to resolve it as soon as possible. As time goes by, there will inevitably be changes and Shen Shen would have found a marriage for Shen Miao and married her off. At that time, the crown prince's place would have fallen through. Why can't the marriage be firmed up first?" Shen Dongling asked. "Silly," Wang Bai said, "the Shen family do not want Shen Miao to marry the crown prince and Shen Miao herself also is not willing. If some tricks are used now, it would make Shen Shen dissatisfied. Isn't this bullying others with one's power?" Shen Dongling's lips twitched. However, her words did not take Shen Miao into any consideration at all and made the bandits who imposed others on their demands as the aggrieved people. "It can be said like this," Wang Bai said with a smile. "Then on what grounds they can use power to bully others but not let the crown prince bully others with power?" Wang Bai smiled. "The crown prince is virtuous and would not do such bullying. The crown prince cannot do these but other can do it. Just like ordinary people, those ordinary commoners. If everyone under heaven's request fifth younger sister to marry to the crown prince, can this be considered as using the power of the commoners to bully others? Wang Bai initially thought that Shen Dongling was saying words of anger, but who knew that when he heard what was at the back, his expression gradually became serious. He looked at Shen Dongling as Shen Dongling sat in his embrace charmingly, as if those words she said were just casually done. But Wang Bai was an intelligent person and could hear some details in Shen Dongling's words, thus he asked, "It could not be that you have thought of some ideas. Let's listen to it. Husband is really crafty. What benefit if I were to speak of it?" Shen Dongling asked. Wang Bai pretended to think about it. "If it is good, then I will think of ways to request an imperial mandate for you." He was thinking that if Shen Dongling really had a way to get Shen Miao to marry to the crown prince, then he would have made a big achievement, and in the future when the crown prince succeed the throne, he would be grateful for it. There would not be any loss to ask for an imperial mandate for Shen Dongling. When Shen Dongling heard of it, a glimmer of satisfaction appeared in her eyes. She said, "I'm not doing to be a mandated fern but for husband. Whatever husband wants to do, naturally this key would support. Husband wants to help the future monarch and this key is just a little female and can only show one's inadequacy." The playfulness she used while speaking was even more pleasing to Wang Bai's heart. "Actually this method is very simple. One only need the crown prince of Qin country to cooperate," she said. "Actually this method is very simple. One only needs the crown prince of Qin country to cooperate," Shen Dongling said. When Wang Bai heard it, he asked, "Do explain these words." Shen Dongling smiled. "Now that our Mingqi is about to enter an alliance with Qin country. From husband's words, the Qin country is also willing to form an alliance with us. What if the Qin country requirement for the alliance was to marry fifth younger sister back? This is naturally impossible. Even if His Majesty considered for the people and agreed to it, General Shen would not agree to let fifth Shen young lady to marry far away." Wang Bai was very clear about it. After all, there was no one in Ding capital that did not know that Shen Qin doted on Shen Qin a lot. It was already not possible to let her marry out of the state, much less marry into Qin country, such a faraway place where one would only meet once every few years. Shen Dongling smiled. It is because of this rationale that if one spread this information out and let the people of Mingqi know about it, they would definitely beg General Shen to marry fifth younger sister over. After all, Huang Fu Hao is the crown prince of Qin country and looked not bad, thus fifth younger sister would not be at any disadvantage. If eldest Bo does not agree, then Qin country would not be in an alliance with Mingqi and perhaps Great Liang would take advantage of it, making the Mingqi fall into a dangerous situation. With one fifth younger sister to exchange for the common people's safety, no matter if it is worthwhile in eldest Bo's eyes, it would be worthwhile in the eyes of the commoners. Wang Bai fell into deep thoughts. Shen Dongling said again, "Everyone knows that my eldest Bo is a person would place righteousness and justice of the world before himself. However, now to be threatened by the commoners, he could fight against officials but could not ignore the wishes of the commoners. Even if His Majesty would also can't do anything more, as one need to consider the commoner's mind. What more my eldest Bo? Eldest Bo would not wish to see Great Liang seizing the opportunity, but at the other end would definitely not be willing to let fifth younger sister marry afar. But who can stop Huang Fu Hao? Even there is, they would not dare. At this time, as long as His Highness the Crown Prince step out to say that fifth younger sister is already the person that the residents of the Crown Prince had fixed on, everything will be resolved." This, Wang Bai listened in somewhat of a hesitation before hearing Shen Dongling continued smile. Huang Fu Hao could not just ignore the Crown Prince. Moreover, Huang Fu Hao would have already inquired the happening some days back. Comparing to marrying to Huang Fu Hao and living in Qin country, eldest Bo was more willing to marry Shen Miao to the residents of the Crown Prince as one could still take care of her. As long as the Crown Prince step out in this critical time, eldest Bo would be grateful to the Crown Prince. Wang Bai tightened his hands around Shen Dongling and gave Shen Miao a kiss. "I did not expect to have married to a brain trust." Shen Dongling suddenly lowered her head. Husband really know how to tease this key. This key only suddenly thought about it. There must be a lot of areas that are out of place, but husband would certainly think of ways to rectify it. It is already not easy for you to think it to this level. Wang Bai felt more joy as he looked longer at Shen Dongling. "This time you really helped me a great deal. Rest assured that when everything is successful, I will definitely credit you to the Crown Prince so that our family's linger would be prestigious." Shen Dongling's heart had some disdain. When men done a meritorious deed, they most feared to credit others, not to mention she was a female. It would be a wonder if Wang Bai would even speak about her contribution. It was all only some flowery words at the moment. However, even though one knew it clearly in the heart, Shen Dongling still pushed Wang Bai and said hurriedly, "Husband must not mention that it is this key's idea. How can one scheme one's younger sister? Today, if it is not because of solving husband's worries, this key would not say it. If these words were spread out, how would this key go on living?" Wang Bai only said it casually, but if Shen Dongling followed the thread of line, he would find her as greedy, but now with Shen Dongling being flustered, it made him satisfied. The more he looked at Shen Dongling, the more he felt that she was adorable and the more he was happy that Shen Dongling and Shen Yu exchanged their marriages. He said, "All right, I will not speak of it. But these are not anything bad to marrying the Crown Prince. When the Crown Prince ascend to the throne, fifth Shen young lady would be an imperial consort and would thank you in the future. This is an auspicious matter that one could not even request for." Shen Dongling smiled. This key also feels the same. Her heart was however clear that Shen Miao was not one who was greedy for power, and the Shen family had already viewed Shen Miao as a pearl in their hands, thus although wealth was not as important as her. In some aspects, Shen Miao was the same with Shen Qin. Both of them had the same type of stubbornness in their bones. To others it was a good thing to be married to the Crown Prince, that even if one was unwilling in the past, would be satisfied with the sweetness after a period of time. But Shen Miao was different. Once one step was taken incorrectly, she could ensure her death. Even if nothing could be seen on the surface, her heart would not feel good about it. "Sorry," Shen Dongling apologized in her heart. In the entire Shen residence, she was the most unwilling to be enemies with Shen Miao because Shen Miao was dangerous and she had the unconditional support from Shen Qin and wife. But the present was different with the past. Now Shen Dongling had the right to compete with Shen Miao, and Shen Dongling also remembered that she was actually envious of Shen Miao. Shen Dongling could step everyone in the Shen residence underneath her feet, including second and third household, Shen Yu and Shen Qing, but she just could not be comparable to Shen Miao. The family that Shen Miao relied on was exactly the thing that Shen Dongling could never get. Once someone of a lower status gained power and abandoned their former carefulness and humbleness, it would make one even more warped. This was why when those poor scholars attained the first position in the imperial examinations and gain a low-rank position, their character would become extremely arrogant. The position in society was ingrained in one's bones, and one feared that others would be able to see one's unbearable past. When Shen Dongling's mind was wandering, she heard Wang Bai speaking. At this moment one need to plan it well. I have to discuss it with the Crown Prince. Shen Dongling received to her senses and smiled. One have to invite fifth younger sister out. She thought about it. This key will send an invite to fifth younger sister. Oh, Wang Bai asked. She will come. It seemed that he knew that Shen Dongling's and Shen Miao's relations were not warm, but in Shen Dongling's ears, it was mocking the D and Shu difference between her and Shen Miao. Shen Dongling pressed down the unhappiness in her heart. Husband don't believe in this key. Rest assured, this key will definitely call fifth younger sister out. In the residence of the Count of Pingnan, Su Mingfeng was currently having a headache at the moment. Yesterday Princess Rongshan suddenly came to the residence of the Count of Pingnan. Princess Rongshan had not gone out for a long time and had lived simply so no one noticed her. She even disguised herself that Su Mingfeng almost didn't recognize her. For Princess Rongxing to come to the residence of the Count of Pingnan this condescendingly, it must be extremely important. Princess Rongxing let the servants report it directly to Su Mingfeng, which indicated clearly that the matter had no relations to Su Yu and she came especially for him. Even though Su Mingfeng was puzzled, he did not dare to neglect her at all and welcomed Princess Rongxin in, thinking of what matter Princess Rongxin would be instructing him to do. Who knew that Princess Rongxin was not here to instruct people but to inquire information? The information that she was inquiring also gave Su Mingfeng a big shock. Princess Rongxin was inquiring about information on Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing died 2 years ago in the battlefield with the northern Zhong, and because the Ding capital people knew that Xie Jingxing had close relations with Princess Rongxing, she fell into a serious illness after Xie Jingxing's death. Ever since then, no one dared to take the initiative to mention Xie Jingxing in front of Princess Rongxin, lest that Princess Rongxin would recall about the sad things. Who knew that Princess Rongxin would take the initiative to ask Su Mingfeng about it? Princess Rongxin asked Su Mingfeng about some old stories of Xie Jingxing and even asked if Xie Jingxing had any secrets. At the end, she also asked about Xie Jingxing's corpse. Xie Jingxing was killed in the northern Zhong by thousands of enemies' arrows and was skinned and hung up on the city walls by the enemies. When Xie Jing saw Xie Jingxing's corpse, he fainted on the spot. Princess Rongxin feared that she could not withstand it, so she did not dare to take a look at all. It was Su Mingfeng, his childhood playmate, who went to send Xie Jingxing off one last time. At this moment, Princess Rongxing came to ask Su Mingfeng if that body was truly Xie Jingxing. If it was normal, Su Mingfeng would feel a little confused, but ever since the last time he coincidentally met up with Shen Miao and discovered the tiger head bracelet on Shen Miao's wrist, Su Mingfeng had a nagging doubt in his heart and had been monitoring Shen Miao's movement in the Shen residence. With Princess Rongxin's sudden inquiry of Xie Jingxing's matter, Su Mingfeng could almost immediately confirm his thoughts that Xie Jingxing was not dead, and one feared that he was still alive in this world. Even though he did not understand why was Xie Jingxing not appearing since he was still alive, Su Mingfeng was no fool. After dealing with Princess Rongxin with a couple of words, Princess Rongxing left, but Su Mingfeng fell deeply in his thoughts. Since Princess Rongxin had some doubts, she must have discovered some clue which meant that Xie Jingxing must have revealed something. Thinking of Shen Miao's bracelet and Princess Rongxin's behavior, Su Mingfeng made a bold guess. Not only was Xie Jingxing not dead, he was also in Ding capital. However, what made Su Mingfeng puzzled was that there had not been any secret between Xie Jingxing and Princess Rongxin, and their relations were also at its best, so what would make Xie Jingxing be reluctant to say to Princess Rongxin? Moreover, why was Princess Rongxin asking about Xie Jingxing's childhood? What was the connection? Regardless of the reason, Su Mingfeng felt that Xie Jingxing must have his own reasons. The most imperative thing was to search for Xie Jingxing's whereabouts, and after he was found, all questions would naturally have an answer. But where to find Xie Jingxing? The Ding capital was not said to be big, but it was definitely not small. To find one person who purposely hid himself in the sea of people, especially when this person was quite capable, that was definitely not an easy thing. Su Mingfeng intended to send someone to monitor Princess Rongxin. Since Princess Rongxin had discovered some small traces of clues, the things she had on hand was definitely more than him. As long as he followed behind, he would be able to conveniently pick up the advantages. Su Mingfeng waved his hands to call the servants before whispering some words in his ears. When Shen Miao received Shen Dongling's invitation, Xie Jingxing was drinking tea in her room. Ever since that night, Xie Jingxing was more than justified to manage her affairs. Shen Miao initially was not accustomed to it, but afterwards she got used to it since Xie Jingxing had extensive hands and eyes. Even if one did not tell him, he would be able to find it out himself, and at the end, it would still be the same results. Xie Jingxing took a glance at the invitation in her hands. Shen Dongling. Most likely she had devised a plan. Shen Miao said, "Invite me to have an incense appreciation." She was startled for a bit before she smiled. Even incense appreciation is used. It seemed the foundation of the residence of the Minister of Land is good. Appreciating tea and alcohol was quite normal, but appreciating incense was different. There were some that cost thousands of gold and it would be gone after burning it. Shen Miao knew that the most expensive incense scent was the jade pear agar wood incense, which cost 10,000 of gold for a fingernail worth. Previously there was a Western merchant who paid his tribute to the palace and wanted the name of an imperial merchant. That jade pear agar wood incense that was provided was only as big as a child's fist and was very rare. At that time all the concubines in the palace came to take a look, and even Shen Miao also felt it was very novel. Shen Miao had always thought that the jade pear agar wood incense would be placed in the national treasury, as it was something that was very precious. Afterwards, during Mei Fern's birthday celebration, Fu Shuyi lit the jade pear agar wood incense in exchange for a smile from the beauty. Appreciation of incense was actually appreciating gold, as one of it would reduce a lot of money. The invitation that Shen Dongling wrote was appreciation of phoenix peak incense, and it was very valuable. With the income of a minister of land's position, it was definitive that it could not withstand such squandering. It was evident that the family that Shen Dongling married into had enriched an affluent foundation. After all, among the officials in Ding capital, many of the first-ranked officials would not be so extravagant. One did not know when Shen Yu, down in the underworld, knew of it. Would she be so angry that she became alive? Phoenix peak incense is not cheap. To spend this much money, it would definitely not for the sake of reminiscing between sisters. Scheme against you? Xie Jingxing asked with his brows raised. Shen Dongling is not Shen Yu. Even if she really scheme against me, I would not fall for it easily. Shen Dongling is not stupid, so I guess that she will scheme against me. If I gone, it would only make things goes her way even smoother, and if I did not go, there would not be too much losses. Shen Miao smiled. I just feel that since it is surprising that the family of the Minister of Land have this much money. She looked at Xie Jingxing. At the execution grounds, when Shen Miao saw Shen Dongling, she had noticed that the clothes and jewelry that Shen Dongling was wearing was extremely expensive. No matter how much Wang Bai pampered her, it was irrational to surpass the wealth of the Wang family. So how did the Wang family have so much wealth? When Xie Jingxing saw Shen Miao's gaze, he tactfully continued, the Wang family are the crown prince's people and have some relations with the salt merchants that the crown prince secretly selling to. Wang Bai is the middleman. Shen Miao suddenly came into realization. That was of no wonder. Selling salt privately was a very profitable business that even a fragmentary portion of it would make others jealous. No wonder the Wang family could afford to appreciate incense, and Shen Miao somewhat understood where Shen Dongling was coming from. If Shen Dongling married to an ordinary official, she would definitely operate carefully. But the Wang family was very wealthy and Wang Bai was working under the crown prince, so naturally her position worth more. She was Wang Bai's official wife in infinite glory. Most likely she was blinded by the momentarily glory that her guts had become bigger. Life sprang from sorrow and calamity, but death comes from ease and pleasure. Shen Dongling was unable to maintain a clear mind, thus she was unable to see the facts clearly. There are so many variables in the world, so who could ensure that the crown prince would be able to succeed the throne? Taking 1,000 steps back, even if the crown prince succeeded the throne, who was able to guarantee that Wang Bai had been free from worries under the crown prince, would be able to be promoted steadfastly. There were too many instances of boiling the hound once the rabbit was caught. There was nothing more ruthless than the imperial family. Wang Bai is the crown prince's people. Shen Miao was deep in thought. Shen Dongling's sudden actions are definitely related to Wang Bai, and that means it is related to the crown prince. Shen Miao looked at Xie Jingxing. The relations between me and the crown prince. She want to make a fuss out of my marriage. Xie Jingxing looked at her praising. Smart. You had already knew about it. Shen Miao was somewhat doubtful. It is Shen Dongling's idea. Xie Jingxing picked up a snack and took a bite, letting Huang Fuhao and the crown prince act out a play after an agreement. With you marrying Huang Fuhao as a condition of the alliance with Mingqi, otherwise there would not be an alliance and perhaps even would attack Mingqi. When the news is released, the commoners would beg Shen Xin to marry you to Huang Fuhao. One hand is the commoners, the other is you. Shen Xin would definitely be extreme pain. But no one under heavens would dare to go against Huang Fuhao, and at this time only the crown prince step out and say that there was already a marriage agreement between you and the crown prince. Comparing to you marrying far away, Shen Xin would easily accept you being married to the crown prince and remain in Mingqi and would even be grateful to the crown prince. Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders. This Shu sister of yours is not a simple character. When Shen Miao heard it, her face turned ashen and she sneered. She really exhausts her thoughts and ingenuity for me. She even went as far as to use the commoners under heavens to force Shen Xin, one who had inherited the body and mind of old General Shen's teaching of fighting for Mingqi's commoners. When Shen Xin was forced by the commoners that he loved and the other side is Shen Miao, his daughter, one can only imagine how painful Shen Xin's heart would be. In the Shen residence, Shen Miao and Shen Dongling had always been minding their own business, thus Shen Miao felt an irresistible hate towards Shen Dongling's action. She said, cannot proceed with the marriage with the crown prince. Xie Jingxing stared at her with a smile but not a smile. Why? Do you want to marry me? Not waiting for Shen Miao to be furious, he continued speaking, don't worry. There is still no one under heavens who dared to snatch things from my hand. One feared that he would not be able to want the female I fancied. His words were always had no misgiving and fear, making Shen Miao's face blushed unfathomably. She changed the topic. Shen Dongling dared to scheme against me. Naturally I want to repay her back a few points. Furin's desire is my desire, Xie Jingxing said lazily. Shen Miao. She said, what intentions do you currently have? Exterminate Mingqi and Great Liang would unify. Xie Jingxing's gaze was somewhat strange. If I say yes, you will help me. I said before that on this point, I am the same as you. Shen Miao answered. The joking expression on Xie Jingxing's face started to gradually disappear. He did not know what Shen Miao was thinking about and it seemed that he could not see anything at all. In the matter of the hostility between two countries, Xie Jingxing had never thought that Shen Miao would support him. With Shen Miao's current degrading attitude, Xie Jingxing was already very surprised. With Shen Miao's expression, it reminded him that she was serious about it. She wanted to eliminate Mingqi. Why? Shen Miao was definitely not a person who was greedy for fame and fortune, so it was not to parrot his words. And for her to throw Mingqi to the back of her mind just for her love of Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing did not think it was possible. It was as if from the beginning of knowing Shen Miao, she was already extremely hostile to the Fu family. That was because the Fu family wanted to suppress the Shen family, but Shen Miao was an unmarried female, so how would she know of such matters? Something he found that Shen Miao could see clearer than Shen Xin and Shen Chu. She always stood in front of the Shen family in a protecting manner, as if she had long expected what would happen. The more he got closer with Shen Miao, the more he discovered the many mysterious parts of Shen Miao. However, even Feng Xian pawnshop was unable to find out the reasons behind the behaviors. This made one really suspicious. He hesitated for a moment before asking, you don't like Mingqi? Shen Miao's eyes hung down. The power under heavens that are long divided will be united and those long united will be divided. Such is the way of the universe. It is not changing whether I like it or not. Even if I am not willing and dislike it, these things will still happen. This is destined. She lifted her head and looked at the candlelight that was slightly wavering. Moreover, comparing to the Fu family, I rather the country lands in your hands. Xie Jingxing was startled. The war between two countries has nothing to do with the commoners. Mingqi has been on the decline in these years and has heavy taxes with constant natural disasters and that make the commoners' life difficult. Officialdom circles are dark with the officials decaying in quality. The emperor is fatuous and would scheme and guard against meritorious families that one could not wait to kill them as their appearance is just too ugly to look at. Comparing as such, Great Liang's commoners are living and working peacefully in contentment with all industries flourishing. Shen Miao said, I know that Emperor Longla is a wise monarch. When attacking other small countries, the commoners of those small countries would open their city gates to meet with the army. Isn't that the truth? Xie Jingxing took a long look at Shen Miao and there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. The world said that female were the most short-sighted and would only be able to see what was in front and unable to see the overall picture. It was only because they had never met one. Xie Jingxing had seen a magnanimous and most knowledgeable female which was his imperial Sao, Emperor Yongli's wife, Empress Xianda. But Empress Xianda was the descendant of the historian aristocratic family and had an encyclopedic knowledge and was the mistress of the 6 palaces. Shen Miao was only 16 years old and the furthest she went was Xie Chun City and was even known as an idiot by others. But Shen Miao's words on the current situation were not comparable to majority of Emperor Yongli's aides. Instead of treating oneself as a person of a country but as the highest point in history and calmly look at it as conforming to a regular pattern, just like conforming to the changing 4 seasons. There are not many people in the world that was able to look at things so transparently, but this person sat right in front of him. Xie Jingxing suddenly felt glad as he was the one who discovered this female and Shen Miao was willing to tell him these words. However, Shen Miao did not know what Xie Jingxing was thinking. She previously heard Fu Shuyi evaluating Emperor Yongla, indicating that Emperor Yongla was a distinguished and accomplished character and a wise emperor of a generation. The land that Great Liang initially had was not as vast as it was currently, especially when the late emperor of Great Liang passed on. The internal affairs were turbulent and many other countries seized the opportunities. Afterwards, the current Emperor Yongla succeeded the throne and slowly started to reclaim the lands, and not only that, he started to swallow up the neighboring small countries. Emperor Yongla was very charming and conformed to the people's heart. Some of the commoners of the small countries even hoped that Emperor Yongla would swallow them up so that their difficult lives could improve. And Emperor Yongla did that. At that time, Shen Miao was very surprised by it, and Fu Shuyi was also very jealous with Fu Shuyi. Afterwards, when Fu Ming was studying, he also read that and discussed with Shen Miao with great enthusiasm, thus Shen Miao had a deeply carved memory of it. Xie Jingxing paused for a moment and said unpleased, why do you remember his matters so clearly? Shen Miao. She said, of course I am not that great and it was all for self-protection. If the Fu family were in charge, the Shen family would be eliminated. When the monarch is not benevolent, then naturally officials need not have abide by righteousness and justice. Is it not? Then how would you know if Emperor Yongla would not be like the second Emperor Wenwei and take action on the Shen family? Xie Jingxing questioned. One heard that there is a general by the emperor's side by the surname Li that has very similar experience with the Shen family, but the Li family was treated with deferential treatment. The Shen family military is not as good as General Li, so one does not need to worry about it. Shen Miao was thinking in her heart that at least till before she died, the entire family of General Li lived very well. Xie Jingxing was stunned. How do you know that there is a General Li? Shen Miao heard moved. She had forgotten that she is the daughter of the Shen family and naturally it was not possible to know about General Li of Great Liang. However, she had to say some words to cover it up. This General Li is very famous. It is not strange for Mingqi to know of him. Very famous. Xie Jingxing frowned. More famous than me. Shen Miao was determined not to speak to him about these. Let's not talk about these. Since at the end one would be dealing with Mingqi, naturally one cannot let the Qin country and Mingqi to form an alliance. If so, it would be troublesome for Great Liang to deal with it. You remained in the Ding capital and not leave, isn't it to break up their alliance? Xie Jingxing smiled gently. When one get married, one will follow the husband. You really think thoroughly for me. Shen Miao ignored the part where it should not be heard. There is a good way to break up their alliance, but it depends if you can do it successfully. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up to a smile. Let's listen to it. Assassinating, moving, planting, slandering. She smiled gently yet dignified. Best if the dead can't testify. The days seemed to be especially calm, but whether there were some schemes lurking under the calmness, no one actually knew. These days in the residence of Prince Ding, everyone felt themselves imperiled, especially the few valued aides under Fu Shuyi, and things were done even more cautiously. It was not because of anything, but a few days back Fu Shuyi sent his most valued Pei Lang to the prisons. No one was actually clear of the details, but those who knew about it revealed slightly that T was because Pei Lang was a spy that Fu Shuyi's opponent had sent over. Before this, no one could deny Pei Lang's talent, and even though everyone was jealous that Fu Shuyi's treatment of him, Pei Lang had resolved a number of problems for Fu Shuyi in the past 2 years. Fu Shuyi just captured him like this, and even if one had yet to verify it was true or not, just the night before the arrest, Pei Lang was even drinking tea and playing chess with Fu Shuyi with an appearance of a monarch and his subject in harmony. If Fu Shuyi suddenly have some clues, he would definitely investigate if it was true or not, otherwise he would be accusing injustly an innocence and permanently damaging a confidant's heart. For Fu Shuyi to make such a decisive decision, it only showed that he had long been suspicious of Pei Lang, and even with such doubts he could still put on such appearance of closeness. This Prince Ding was not a simple person. Be it if it was killing the chicken to scare the monkeys or not, the aides were much more respectful when facing Fu Shuyi again. However, Fu Shuyi's heart was not as soothing as what others had thought. He too had some doubts. He had sent people to monitor the princess residence and finally learned that Princess Rongshin actually disguised herself went to the residence of the Count of Pinnan to look for Su Mingfeng. Even though one did not know what they were talking about or what was Princess Rongshin's purpose, Fu Shuyi thought that there was somewhat strange about it. Princess Rongshin dwelled in deep seclusion and rarely came out, that she even did not have close relations with Emperor Wenwei. If there was, it would be having good relations with the late Princess Yuqing in the early years. However, Princess Yuqing had been dead for many years, and it was Princess Yuqing's son, Xie Jingxing, who was close to Princess Rongshin, but Xie Jingxing died 2 years back in the battlefield in northern Zhang. There were no other relations between the residence of the Count of Pinnan and Princess Rongshin. Fu Shuyi had racked his brains to think about the relationship between Princess Rongshin and the residence of the Count of Pinnan, but it was a pity that there were no viable clues. Moreover, what made Fu Shuyi puzzled was that why did Princess Rongshin not look for the Count of Pinnan, Su Yu, but instead looked for Su Mingfeng alone? Su Mingfeng had long been out of the officialdom and would not be of any help, and it was for official matters, and if it was for personal matters, how would Su Mingfeng know Princess Rongshin privately? Just as Fu Shuyi was mumbling Su Mingfeng's name, he was suddenly startled. Su Mingfeng was well known to many people in Ding capital, and it was not only because he was outstanding and talented or because just as he was about to enter officialdom he had a serious illness that there was no choice but to give up on the route of an official, but because he was Xie Jingxing's playmate since young. Many people were puzzled as Su Mingfeng was an upright youth, so how would he always be mixed with Xie Jingxing, who always trifling around without respect? Since the residence of the Marquis of Lin and the residence of the Count of Pinnan were long friends, there was nothing wrong with having good relations. It was as if he had found a clue as Fu Shuyi's thoughts were finally broken through. Su Mingfeng was Xie Jingxing playmate and Princess Rongshin was Xie Jingxing's Yin Yu. If Princess Rongshin looked for Su Mingfeng privately, it was most likely that they were discussing about Xie Jingxing. But wasn't Xie Jingxing dead? Then why would Princess Rongshin suddenly inquired about a dead person? If it was last time, everyone would not speak anything of Xie Jingxing in front of Princess Rongshin, fearing that it would touch a Princess Rongshin's painful matter, so why would Princess Rongshin take the initiative to ask? Could it be that Xie Jingxing was not dead? Fu Shuyi jumped in shock with his guess, but he quickly denied it. He had personally read the secret report on Xie Jingxing's death, so it would not be wrong. Moreover, under the eyes of the public, how would one steal a rafter and replace it with a column? This was impossible. But one was obviously following Princess Rongshin to investigate Prince Rui, so how would it suddenly be Su Mingfeng and even involve the dead Xie Jingxing? If it was so, then the matter had become complicated but also more interesting. Fu Shuyi stood up and thought for a while before instructing the people beside him to the underground prison. There was an underground prison in the residence of Prince Ding that was built in the courtyard of the Ancestral Hall. The Imperial Ancestral Hall was not here, so the Ancestral Hall that was built in the Prince residence were just a place to pray to Buddha and implore for blessings. On the wall a painting of amiable-looking goddess of mercy was hung, and when one lifted the painting up, one would be able to see a little laughing Buddha statue. Upon pressing the wooden fish at the foot of the laughing Buddha, the stone wall would open up, and following the route that the stone wall opened up, it would lead to the underground prison of the residence of Prince Ding. This underground prison was the place where spies or Prince Ding's subordinates who had committed great wrongs. Normal death was not an enough punishment for these people, and there were endless kinds of torture, thus it would be filled with a bloody scent when one entered. The stone walls were covered in a thin leather-like things, and if one take a closer look at it, one would be certain that it was the skin of someone who had died and was hung out to dry. It still had the extremely pained expression on it that would make one shudder with one look. Outside it was an ancestral hall imploring blessings, but inside it was like the shady business of the devil. Under the eyes of the goddess of mercy, this was however like the 18th level of hell, or even more terrifying than the 18th level of hell. Fu Shuyi walked in with a leisurely look, and his eyes were even filled with appreciation as his gaze landed on the human skin on the walls. The subordinate beside led the way inside and only stopped when he reached right to the end. The person who was locked inside the cell was hanging from the beam, and the entire body was soaked in blood. The robes were stained in fresh red color, and one could almost not see the original color of it. Because the body was hanging, there would be blood dripping from time to time, forming a small pool of blood. Fu Shuyi quietly looked at the person. That person seemed to have fainted, thus he gave a look at the person beside, and the person immediately brought a bucket of chilly water and poured it over the person. That person quivered and one's body could not help but tremble. The pain seemed to be indescribable, and it was like one was suffering a great torture. Fu Shuyi smiled and went forward, as gentlemen used to it. When the chilly water pierced the wounds, it had also cleaned up the blood traces on the prisoner's face, and what revealed was a clear and prideful face. It was Pei Lang. Pei Lang smiled gently and replied in a trembling voice, "Thanks to your highness's blessings, one lived rather well." One had long knew that gentleman is not an ordinary person, but one did not expect that not one is exceptional talented. The unflinching righteousness is something that one admired. Else how would the Shen family dispatch one over? Fu Shuyi sighed. Everyone said that the army that Shen Xin raised are all heroes. Gentleman is a scholar, but one's bones are also this hard. This prince really want to know how does General Shen teach others. Pei Lang took a breath and smiled. This one have no relationship with General Shen at all. It has already been a few days, but gentleman is still persistent. Fu Shuyi said, even though this unflinching righteousness is commendable, it is a headache as it made one prepare some unusual games to play with gentlemen. Pei Lang only laughed and did not speak. Fu Shuyi looked at him and his tone was very amiable, as if he still had some nostalgia. As this prince had a master-servant relations, it was actually enjoyable. You have great talents and this prince appreciated it. This prince's heart is naturally soft and is also willing to give you a chance. After atoning for one's crime, it will be like nothing had happened, and this prince and you will be like in the past. This prince will still call you gentleman, and you are still this prince's most capable think tank. He leaned closer to Pei Lang and spoke with a somewhat coaxing and enticing tone. As long as you tell this prince what kind of secrets does the Shen family has and what is the purpose of sending you over to this prince's side. 2 sentences in exchange for an opportunity. How about it? Pei Lang coughed twice and coughed out 2 lumps of blood before smiling with great difficulty. Many thanks for your highness's great fondness, but this official has nothing to do with the Shen family and cannot answer your highness' question. Most probably it is God that did not give this official an opportunity. What a pity. Fu Shuyi looked at him expressionless. After a long while he then smiled lightly and patted his hands to brush away the blood traces on his body. Gentleman's bones are hard and this prince respects it a lot and is also very curious, wondering till when would gentleman's bones would be hard till. He waved at the people by his side. This thing does not enter gentleman's eyes and cannot be used fully. Change to a better one. Afterwards he stepped back and was about to leave before he suddenly thought of something. Even though gentleman did not speak about it, this prince will still be able to discover the secrets of the Shen family. However, this prince wants to ask gentleman. One heard that the Shen family value relations and righteousness, and for gentlemen offer one's life in sacrifice for one's master. One did not know if General Shen would send someone to save gentlemen from the fire pits. He left with the guards. After Fu Shuyi left, Pei Lang vomited a large mouthful of blood. This seemingly gentle and the very most scheming prince actually had such a vicious and violent side. The question that Fu Shuyi asked Pei Lang made him smile bitter uncontrollably. It was not false that the Shen family people valued relations and righteousness, but the person he was working for was Shen Miao. Shen Miao valued relations and righteousness, but it was towards the Shen family. Other than her family and friends, one feared that everyone else was not in one bit important to Shen Miao. As to saving him, like what Fu Shuyi said, Pei Lang thought that it would not happen. Not mentioning that Shen Miao did not have this ability to fish a person out of the residence of Prince Ding, much less from the most secretive underground prison. At the beginning when Shen Miao wanted him to be a hidden chess piece by Fu Shuyi, he had expected such a day to come. Shen Miao knew that once Fu Shuyi discovered it, Pei Lang's ending would be very miserable, but she still did it. Despite logical reasoning that Shen Miao would not come and save him, Pei Lang had a small faint trace of expectation in his heart. He did not know what kind of feeling he had for Shen Miao. In the beginning when Shen Miao used Lu Ying to threaten him, he felt some disgust in his heart as he hated the feeling of being not in control and threatened. Afterwards one did not know why, but he actually thought himself as Shen Miao's people. He would worry for Shen Miao and did his best to be a chess piece. Pei Lang was unable to understand his actions. He was thinking that most likely he had owed Shen Miao something in his past life, and thus in this lifetime, he would spin as she wishes and even his life was changed. The guard that was responsible to torture him came over and Pei Lang threw away the thoughts in his mind and started another round of torture. What he did not know was that in the residence of Prince Rui, Hu Long and Yi Ying was sitting at the tree eating melon seeds. Yi Ying asked, Boss Ji and Gentleman Gao are still not let out till now. How long are they guarding the tower prison for? Hu Long spit out a mouthful of melon seed shells. I guess that master had forgotten about the matter. These days master had been running outside, so how would he have the heart to worry about others? One heard that there was a letter from the palace of Great Liang, so probably master wants to finish these matter and return to the palace. It is correct to say as such, but if Boss Ji keep on staying in the tower prison, then would the information from Feng Xian pawnshop delay matters? Hu Long rolled his eyes at Yi Ying. Feng Xian pawnshop is to earn money, and naturally there would be people from Mo Yu army that will be reporting intelligence to master, so how would matters be delayed? When Yi Ying heard it, she felt that her companion made sense. It is also true. Why bother with so many matters? There were some things in the world where a freak combination of factors. Some things only need a little change in order for the entire trajectory of things to change. In the study of Feng Xian pawnshop, there were stacks of thick letters on the table and it was covered with dust as there was no one tidying up. On the bottom of the stack, there was a letter with 3 words written on it. Residence of Prince Ding. Residence of Prince Ding. There were some movements in the residence of Prince Ding, much less the residence of the Crown Prince. Emperor Wenwei had the heart to give the Crown Prince a favor and let the Crown Prince and Huang Fuhao have good relations. Thus Huang Fuhao strut proudly into the residence of the Crown Prince, instead of secretly fearing that others would discover. It was just that what was discussing in the residence of the Crown Prince was not something that Emperor Wenwei was able to manage. The Crown Prince poured some wine for Huang Fuhao and smiled. How does brother Huang Fu find the words that this prince just spoken? Huang Fuhao smiled and did not agree or disagree to it. You really calculated very well and let this prince be the bad person in it and leave a good name for oneself and even carry a beauty back. The Crown Prince was not annoyed as he also smiled. A gentleman is always ready to help others attain their aims. This prince is happy to see fifth Shen young lady becoming your Qin country's crown prince consort, but everyone knows that it is impossible. The Emperor of Qin was not magnanimous enough to let another country's official's daughter be married to his crown prince. The crown prince consort title not only represented a female but also represent the power of the female's family, and it would be best if it could help the crown prince. Shen Miao, as a person from Mingqi, would not be able to help Huang Fuhao, and needless to say, Shen Xin would not be willing to watch on as his daughter married to Qin country. Huang Fuhao shook his head. What is the rush? This prince did not say that one would snatch another's preference, but he looked towards the crown prince. This prince is not one who liked to do good deeds. Moreover, it is using one's name to do good deeds, and in the future when General Shen hates this prince, it would be difficult for this prince. The crown prince smiled when he heard it. This Huang Fuhao was also a person who understood things, so he realized the interests in the matter. Reputation in Mingqi was something that was useless, and moreover it was not a big thing for Shen Miao to marry over. It was just a sentence that could let Emperor Wenwei and the crown prince feel that they owed Huang Fuhao, so what was there against it? Of course, how would this good turn be exchanged for? Emperor Wenwei had no knowledge of it, and this matter was solely the crown prince's idea, so one had to see how important this marriage was in the heart of the crown prince. What kind of difficulty does brother Huang Fu have? The crown prince asked in smiles. It is not a big matter, it would only make you laugh. Huang Fuhao sighed and gave a worrying look. Even though I am the crown prince of Qin country, but every family has its fair share of problems, much less this prince. Imperial father treats this prince extremely well, but the few brothers this prince has are not to be spared of worrying. If there was a day where these brothers fight with this prince, he looked at the crown prince meaningfully. At that time, one hoped that one would be able to be a powerful force of this prince. The crown prince was first startled before he started scolding Huang Fuhao in his heart. Fighting for the heir apparent was something that every country would have, especially in a country where there were a number of princes. However, what Huang Fuhao proposed was that if one day in Huang Fuhao's fight for the heir apparent in Qin's imperial family, the crown prince must help him. How could a crown prince of Mingqi help the crown prince of Qin country? It was to lend him military power. Huang Fuhao indeed calculated it well. Huang Fuhao saw his hesitation and smiled. What are you hesitating about? Isn't the matter that this prince is helping you on just the same? The crown prince looked at Huang Fuhao without speaking. If it was successful this time and Shen Miao was married to him, then the Shen family would be tied to his crown prince residence. With the Shen family's helping hand, the power of the crown prince would only increase greatly and it would become an important role in the battle of the heir apparently. Currently Huang Fuhao helping him with it, wasn't it also helping him in the fight for the heir apparent? Like this, the conditions that Huang Fuhao set became not so unacceptable. After all, he would have more to gain in this matter. The crown prince's heart firmed up. All right. Since brother Huang Fu draw a sword and render help this time, in the future this prince would definitely not stand by and watch. Huang Fuhao only laughed then and after drinking a few more rounds with the crown prince, he said, you really want to marry Shen Miao? He looked at the suspicious expression of the crown prince and explained, at tribute banquet, this prince had seen that Shen Miao did not have a soft temperament. One feared that she have a very strong character instead. Are you so confident in taming her? What does it consider too? The crown prince waved his hands unconcernedly. No matter how strong one's temper is, she is still a female. As long as one is a female and married to another, that temper would be put away. One don't hide it from you, but in the beginning the crown prince consort also had a strong character when entering the eastern palace, but now still subservient to one's every wishes. For females, as long as one spares some effort to coax, at the end they would be meek, just like cats. When Huang Fuhao heard it, he no longer said anything but snorted somewhat disdainfully in his heart. Princess Ming'an's death till now was still a mystery, but Huang Fuhao always felt that the matter was related to Shen Miao. Afterwards one did not know how the matter between him and Fu Shuyi was used, and now Fu Shuyi had to deliberately keep a distance from him. The Shen family was not ordinary, so there must be people behind Shen Miao who was guiding. Even though the crown prince's power was not weak, he might not necessarily be able to win when encountering Shen Miao. However, these were irrelevant to Huang Fuhao. He was only happy to watch the play. Thus, after a few more laughs, he picked up the wine cup to drink with the crown prince. At the other end, in the residence of the Minister of Land, Shen Miao had actually replied to the invitation. It only said that Shen Miao had agreed to Shen Dongling's invitation to appreciate incense, but she would also be bringing Luo Tan, the Biao young lady of the Luo family, along. Wang Bai was happy when he saw Shen Miao's reply and said to Shen Dongling, didn't you not say that you sisters did not have much relation? One did not expect that she would actually agree to it. Shen Dongling was also somewhat surprised, but she said with a smile on her face, it seemed that you have not seen for quite some time. Now there is only 2 of his sisters left from the residence. She took the reply from Wang Bai's hands before taking a closer look. In all fairness, Shen Dongling did not expect that Shen Miao would reply to the invitation and even agree to come over to appreciate incense. Shen Dongling understood Shen Miao that it was impossible for Shen Miao to come due to her cautiousness. It was not very important for Shen Miao to come over to carry out the plans, and she write the invitation to Shen Miao so as to prove it to Wang Bai that she had done her best for him and hope that Wang Bai would think of her good points in the future. But who knew that Shen Miao actually agreed to it? Shen Dongling's thoughts turned. The reason Shen Miao brought Luo Tan was most probably because Luo Tan knew martial arts and would be rest assured with someone accompanying. Moreover, Shen Miao would definitely bring lots of guards around to safeguard Shen Miao's safety. Since Shen Miao dared to come over, she must have made absolutely safe precautions. However, Shen Dongling did not care about it at all because her purpose was not to scheme Shen Miao. Shen Dongling pushed Wang Bai, husband, since 5th younger sister agreed to come over, it would be easier for an excuse in the future. By calling the crown prince and Huang Fuhao over, in the future one could say that Huang Fuhao saw 5th younger sister during the appreciation of incense and fell for her beauty. Matters that came afterwards would be done much smoother. You females do think more thoughtfully. Wang Bai smiled and hugged Shen Dongling's shoulder. With such a wife, what more can this husband ask for? Shen Dongling smiled his teasing, but her heart felt a different thing. Shen Miao had always been good at scheming others, and Shen Dongling had seen the entire fight between Ren Wanyan and Shen Miao. At the end of the Shen family, the eldest household was preserved, and if one were to say who was powerful, it was Shen Miao and Shen Dongling. Shen Dongling also wanted to see between her and Shen Miao, who was more powerful. To calculate Shen Miao into her schemes was after all much more interesting than scheming Shen Yu. Shen Miao, who was being schemed by Shen Dongling, was playing chess with Xie Jingxing in the room. Xie Jingxing had a good set of chess skills as he stood firmly and fought steadily with Shen Miao. Each steps and plans were different. Xie Jingxing seemed to have long saw with a glance the plans for the pieces that she places and knew where she would move next, then Xie Jingxing would block in the corresponding places. After playing for most of a shichen, Xie Jingxing had won a number of pieces against her, but the battle was in a stalemate and it was difficult to tear it apart. In the past life, Shen Miao practiced diligently on her chess skills in order to have conversations with Fu Shuyi, thus not mentioning she was the first, she could at least be a difficult to beat adversary. However, Xie Jingxing's moves could fight hand to hand and was like a nemesis. Since successfully learning chess, it was the first time Shen Miao wanted to withdraw a chess move. Seeing that Xie Jingxing eat up a few of her chess pieces again, Shen Miao said, tired already. Don't want to play. Don't want to play or cannot play. Xie Jingxing said, beg me and I will teach you. Shen Miao wanted to laugh in anger by his words. He came over in the middle of the night to look for someone to play chess with him, and it was Shen Miao had a good temper as others would had chased Xie Jingxing out. She said, thank you. I don't need it. She did not plan to be a grandmaster of chess, so what was the purpose of learning it? However, it was a surprise for her in finding out that Xie Jingxing had such a high level of chess. Other than hearing that Xie Jingxing was exceptional in the battlefield, one had not heard other areas where he was particularly good at. However, after some thinking about it, this person played the world in the palms of his hands, so what did such small pieces of chess matter? She asked, your people are all arranged for the matter 2 days later. 2 days later it would be the day of the incense appreciation, and it was the first time she and Xie Jingxing schemed others together. Once they schemed, it was for 2 crown princes. If this was spoken, it would make other feel somewhat cold. However, Shen Miao did not think anything to it as she had experiences of a crown prince. To her, the position of a crown prince was not a position that was too high to be implicated. Xie Jingxing also thinks so, since his own older brother was Tei Emperor and the crown prince would be his nephew. So it seems that it was very suitable for her and Xie Jingxing to scheme against the 2 crown princes. Rest assured, there is no danger of anything going wrong. Xie Jingxing said, your horse carriage is also arranged. You really want to go? He frowned. It is possible for you not to go. Why not? Shen Miao said, even if I go or not, it does not matter to me. However, I wish that they can do it with a little more grandiose. Shen Miao gently smiled. If I were to do, they would make the scene more realistic, but at the end would only discover that everything is wrong. Isn't it more interesting? Xie Jingxing said with a smile but not a smile, so vicious. Is it vicious? Shen Miao asked. Vicious. He nodded his head and his eyes were shining like clear water and his thin lips hooked up, but I like it. Shen Miao. Ever since that night, Xie Jingxing's words had become even more frivolous, but it was only with words as his behavior was still very respectful with her. Suddenly someone had squeezed into her life and that made Shen Miao unable to get used to it. However, she had to admit that with Xie Jingxing's presence, a lot of things had become much easier. Apparently things that she would need to be troubled to accomplish would be resolved easily by Xie Jingxing. However, if one were to continue to rely on it, it would still make one feel uneasy. Shen Miao had not yet learned how to trust another, much less trust a male. She had the courage and schemes for everything like usual, but in the matters of romances between male and female, due to the heavy injuries she had sustained before, she was still as clumsy as the child when it happened again. Even if there was someone teaching gently, she was still slow and stupid. Xie Jingxing stared at her heedlessly and one did not know what she was thinking about. The chess pieces were just beside her hands as the young female sat gently and in a dignified pose. The lantern light that shone on her made her look soft and graceful, like a lotus that just bloomed. And his face was handsomely beautiful with dark pupils that were as deep as the night. It was like it was looking at the other party thoughtfully for a while before he suddenly smiled. When this matter is resolved, I will marry you, Shen Zhao Zhao. 2 days later. Shen Miao woke up early and Luo Tan had long dressed up. Luo Tan had a lively character and would not be able to sit still in the residence. Ever since the last incident, Shen Chu and Luo Ling had cut down the number of times the two ladies, Shen Miao and Luo Tan, could leave the house. Even if they were to go out, there would be a long line of guards following them. Shen Miao did not mind it since she was not a real 16-year-old young lady and preferred tranquility, so she had no issues with staying in the residence more. However, Luo Tan was not used to it at all, and once she heard that she could go out to play, no matter for what reason or to do anything, she would always be interested. Shen Chu and Luo Ling sighed before letting Shen Miao bring along Aji and Mo Qing. Aji and Mo Qing were considered the guards with the best martial arts in the Shen residence, but now they had become Shen Miao's personal bodyguards. Shen Chu said, "You don't have to take any grievances. If there are things that you are not willing to do, just leave directly. There is no need for apprehension." When Shen Chu first learned that Shen Miao was going for Shen Dongling's appointed, he was in fact against it. He did not know why, but Shen Chu did not have any good feelings with Shen Dongling. Even though Shen Dongling was not as obvious as Shen Yu, and lived in peace with the eldest household during the Shen residence time, one did not know why, but Shen Chu always felt that Shen Dongling was not a kind one. The second household of the Shen family had committing such a big issue, but only Shen Dongling and Wan Yiniang were safe and sound. Add on the matter of Shen Yu and Shen Dongling exchanging of marriage, even though one did not understand what went on, Shen Chu had always felt that Shen Dongling was involved in it. Perhaps those who had been on the battlefield would have an instinct to be attracted to favorable conditions and avoid calamity, as Shen Chu was not willing to have any relations with Shen Dongling at all, so naturally he was not willing to let Shen Miao get closer to Shen Dongling. If Shen Dongling had other thoughts on Shen Miao and used Shen Miao to achieve her own selfish gains, that would not be good. Shen Miao smiled. I know. There is still Biao older sister accompanying me. Nothing will happen. Luo Tan was filled with smiles. Exactly so. If older Biao brother really worries, one can come along with us. Shen Chu shook his head. There are still matters in the army. Moreover, it would only block one's nose if a rough person like me go and appreciate this would ever incense. Just like civil officials would look down on those rough military commanders, the military commanders did not understand the reasoning and rationale of those civil officials. Shen Chu did not understand what appreciation was needed for incense, not to mention there were people who would spend hundreds of silver for that 1 or 2 liang of incense. That really amazed him. Luo Tan said, "Rest assured, Biao older brother. I will take care of youngest Biao sister." Shen Chu put on a straight face and disciplined her, with your terrible few strokes of martial arts. Don't know who was the one who even almost lost one's life the last time, and it was thanks to Imperial physician Gao who worked hard treating for the entire month. Luo Tan feared others mentioning about this matter the most and quickly stuck out her tongue before looking at Luo Ling for help. Luo Ling smiled gently. In any case, one needs to be more careful. After finish appreciating, return early. The skies will darken early, so it is not safe for females. When he was saying these words, his gaze was fixed on Shen Miao with eyes full of concern. Previously, when the news that Crown Prince had the intention to marry Shen Miao over was spread, Luo Xueyuan was in a rush to settle a marriage for Shen Miao, and the first one who spoke was Luo Ling. There were no bad points of Luo Ling's character and he was one of them, so Luo Xueyan viewed Luo Ling the best. Afterwards, because of Prince Rui's words, the marriage was suppressed and it was no longer a rush for Luo Xueyan to find a husband for Shen Miao. However, Luo Ling had already expressed his heart to Luo Xueyan and Shen Shen, so he could do some particularly obvious things. Even Shen Miao, who had sat on the top of the 6 palaces, might have gotten used to seeing the hardly concealable affection, but she could not turn a blind eye to it and could only evade it slightly. Understood. Many thanks for older Biao brother's concern. Luo Tan urged to leave. All right, it is better to quickly set off, else it would be good if there are delays during the journey. The two of them only then said goodbye and headed off in the carriage. In the horse carriage, Luo Tan said, youngest Biao sister, how do you actually think? Shen Miao turned to look at her, unable to make heads or tails of it. Think about what? Your marriage. Luo Tan looked at her worriedly. Even if the crown prince's end is resting at the moment, one day you have to get married. Previously I heard Gum Yu say that your marriage have to be settled in this year, else even without the crown prince it would inevitably attract other people since you have good requirements. Shen Miao did not speak. The Shen family position was indeed very special. It would be a sharp sword if one used it well, but it could attract disasters if one did not use it well. However, one thing was certain was that the imperial family of Mingqi was restraining their fear of the Shen family and wanted the army in Shen Shen's hand, as they feared that those who had armies would one day turn it towards them. Thus, as the only daughter of the Shen family, her marriage meant a lot more. Sometimes she would not have the freedom to act independently and could not decide for her own. Involuntarily, the words that Xie Jingxing said the other day floated up in her mind. When this matter is resolved, I will marry you, Shen Zhao Zhao. He said it so plainly, as if it was like any other matter and not a promise, but there was somewhat of a guarantee. The most important thing was that when he said this sentence, there was an unquestionable feeling, as if he could really do it. But how could it be possible? One was a daughter of Mingqi's general and the other was Prince Rui of Great Liang. To put it bluntly, Great Liang was a strong power, and with the identity of Prince Rui, it would be considering climbing up if Mingqi's princess married over, much less her. If she really married over, then how would the position of the Shen family be like? It was really a difficult thing. Shen Miao thought deeply and did not expect Luo Tan to push her. She recovered to her senses and heard Luo Tan speaking. Think of what so deeply that you did not answer to my questions at all. Shen Miao asked, what did you ask me? Luo Tan looked at her somewhat grudgingly and said after a moment, I asked you, among the few people who came to propose, who do you like the most? Shen Miao was startled. While Luo Tan was counting with her fingers, older Biao brother is gentle and considerate and one know him through and through. Su Mingfeng has deeply rooted feeling for you, and Su Fern also likes you a lot. Feng Zixian looked highly cultured and reasonable, and with Feng and Ning's protection, you will live quite well. These 3 people are all the top young talents. Luo Tan got closer to Shen Miao and carefully observed Shen Miao's expression. Do you not even like a single one of them? Shen Miao laughed in spite of oneself. No. Luo Tan sat up straight and patiently guiding. Youngest Biao's sister, like this you are not right. Even though it is good to pursue perfection in everything, it is not good to have too high demands. These days I have been looking and find that these 3 are already the top talents in Ding capital. If they were in Shaochun City, one feared that young ladies would have actually fought for a concubine position. These 3 people all agree not to accept any concubines. She looked at Shen Miao for a while before shaking her head and sighed, but thinking about it, it was also true. Normally you do not treat these 3 special, so one's heart was not moved, much less being in love. I read in novels that females whose hearts are moved would have blushed faces and hearts like young deer galloping. The deer in your heart was not yet born, right? Shen Miao did not find Luo Tan's nonsensical words funny and said, what nonsenses are you talking about? Why care about my matters so much? Could it be that you were sick? You don't say. Luo Tan stroked her throat. These days my throat feels a bit tight and one feared that it was that one caught a cold at night. One though of asking Dr. Gao to take a look, but one did not see his shadow these few days. Luo Tan was somewhat dissatisfied. He is really a doctor with no medical ethics. Shen Miao was somewhat speechless. Not mentioning that Gao Yang's identity was a great Liang's official, even in Mingqi, he was an imperial physician after all. Only Luo Tan dared to ask him to take a look of an headache or fever. At the other end, Shen Dongling was in the residence dressing up. Today she was particularly dressed plainly and almost did not put on any powder. She wore a pine rosin-colored long dress and the material was naturally the best kind. However, her jewelry were simple. Xinghua looked left and right. Why is Furen dressed so simple today? Although Furen is born with beauty, isn't it better to be even more beautiful when one goes out? What do you know? Shen Dongling looked at the beauty in the mirror. She had good features and had the charming features that Wan Yinyang had when she was younger. Even with these simple dressing, it looked somewhat seductive on her. Most probably because she was already a married woman, there was an added inexplicable charm to her. The servants in the residence would sometimes whisper behind and said that Shen Dongling had a look of a concubine. The matriarch of big families would have a magnanimous and broad-minded facial features and were often rounder as it depict fortune and blessing. Shen Dongling however had large eyes and sharp chin, as pretty as a fox, and this was a typical face of a concubine. Wang Furen and Master Wang were also somewhat vocal about it, but Wang Bai liked it, thus everything else was ignored. Shen Dongling took a moment to look before pulling out the jade hairpin from her hair and replaced it with a silver one. When Xinhua saw it, she stopped her words. Shen Dongling said, no need to think too much. I am not the protagonist, so by dressing fancily, it would only attract the limelight of others. I would not do such stupid things. There would always be opportunities to vie for beauty, there is no difference without this occurrence. Xinhua heard it and said, Furen's beauty is from heavens. Even without competition, one would be the top-grade beauty. Shen Dongling's expression was happy, but what made her happy was not Xinhua's flattery. Today was the day where the crown prince of Qin would fall in love at first sight with Shen Miao, and she was only accompanying. The more dirt she had on her face would only highlight Shen Miao, and thus fated marriage could go off smoothly and naturally. However, since numerous people were needed witness this fated encounter, naturally it was better if there were more people, thus Wang Bai also went. Like this he could also remind the crown prince from time to time and also gain the greatest credit. Shen Dongling stood up and glanced at that invitation. The timing on it was Xixi, 9 to 11 a.m., and it was still early now, thus she said, first eat breakfast with husband before heading to Yifeng Pavilion. The timing should be just right. She did not know that when she was still eating breakfast with Wang Bai, Huang Fu Hao had already went out. The location where the appreciation of incense was held was in Yifeng Pavilion. Yifeng Pavilion was a pavilion that was located on the outskirts of Ding capital, around the mountain area. When sitting in Yifeng Pavilion, looking down one could see serene and deep canyon, looking up one could see the approaching clear skies. The wealthy people who were particular in elegance would often like coming to Yifeng Pavilion to appreciate incense, as once the incense was lit up, there would be a light breeze blowing up to the clear skies which give one a sense of vastness. Although it was current winter, the canyon was wrapped in silver and white, making it particularly interesting when one boiled the snow and discuss about scent. Huang Fu Hao looked at the rather beautiful invitation and smiled. It really did sound good to fall in love at first sight with an official's daughter at such a beautiful place like this. However, he was only playing a role and letting others take advantage of it. Huang Fu Hao's guard rushed over to inform that the carriage was prepared and ready for set-off. Huang Fu Hao frowned and lifted his feet to walk towards the residence doors. No matter what, this invitation had indicated that one must go to Yifeng Pavilion at Chenxi, 7 to 9 a.m., and it was somewhat too early. He had to get up earlier than usual. It was just that when an act was put up, one had to do everything, thus no matter how unsatisfied Huang Fu Hao was, he could only agree to it. Yifeng Pavilion was in the outskirts and some distance away from Ding capital, thus one had to leave when it was just dawn. Moreover, after reaching the outskirts, there would be a good distance of mountainous road to travel, but fortunately the wealthy specifically repaired the road for carriages, else it would be much more difficult to travel. However, even as such, it would take quite a while to arrive at Yifeng Pavilion. Huang Fu Hao left his guards halfway up the mountain and went forward alone, as this was specifically instructed in that invitation, not to bring his guards over. The more guards there are, the more unnatural the fated marriage would be. Moreover, the crown prince would arrive earlier as there are some important things to discuss, thus it would be inconvenient if there were more people. Huang Fu Hao was not a little afraid of any accidents happening. First, it was because the crown prince would place his guards in this place, thus one did not need to worry about assassins. Second was that the crown prince would definitely not take action on him as there are so many people watching. When he left today, everyone in the residence of Prince Qin knew that he was keeping the appointment with the crown prince, so if anything happened to him, the crown prince would not be able to wash his hands off it. Thus Huang Fu Hao calmly left his guards behind and went up alone. However, there was no regret pill in the world, and Huang Fu Hao quickly paid a hefty price for his own conceited decision. While Huang Fu Hao was heading up from the mountain waste, the crown prince was taking another path up Yifeng Pavilion with his guards. Both of them coincidentally kept a distance from one another. The distance was not big, but because it was not the same path or direction, thus they arrived staggered. After the time when it takes 2 incense sticks to burn 30 minutes, Huang Fu Hao reached Yifeng Pavilion. At the end of Yifeng Pavilion's long corridor, there was someone sitting at the moment. When that person saw Huang Fu Hao, he immediately stood up. It was the crown prince. Huang Fu Hao was somewhat surprised as he did not expect the crown prince would arrive earlier than him. Like this, the timing indicated in the invitation was not at all unacceptable, after all the other party came even earlier. He looked around and said, why have the rest of the people not yet arrived? Since it was a love at first sight scene, then how could it start if the others had not arrived? The crown prince smiled, no rush. Today one called you over this early because Ben Gong have some things to speak to you alone. Huang Fu Hao felt somewhat strange, but he did not think too much about it as his guards were by the mountain waste and it would be in time to rush over. Moreover, there were guards by the crown prince, thus nothing could go wrong, thus he spoke, please speak. The Crown Prince walked to Huangfu Hao's side and said, "Don't Brother Huangfu feel curious why this prince call you over this early and why Brother Huangfu's guards needs to remain at the waist of the mountain? Most probably there are very important matters to discuss." Huangfu Hao was somewhat impatient as the Crown Prince beat about the bush. Both of them had reached to such a point so there was no need to conceal anything. "Don't Brother Huangfu feel that this is like murdering one to ensure silence?" The Crown Prince asked. Huangfu Hao laughed out loudly, "Joking is not your style." The Crown Prince did not reply. Huangfu Hao turned around to look at him and his heart could not help but jump. The Crown Prince's expression was calmly and had no other movements, but it was because of such calmness that made Huangfu Hao's heart suddenly felt uneasiness. He suddenly felt a child chill crawling up his back. But why would the Crown Prince want to murder to ensure silence? Unless the Crown Prince could kill everyone in the residence of Prince Jin, else the Crown Prince would not be able to shake it away. Moreover, Huangfu Hao could not think of the reason that the Crown Prince would kill him. But before he could hear the answer, he saw a flash in the Crown Prince's eyes and his heart was shocked before he unconsciously turned to his side to avoid and evaded the silver sword from the back. That was the personal guard of the Crown Prince. Huangfu Hao was shocked and scared. He finally realized that something was wrong at this moment. The Crown Prince brought guards, but his guards were left at the middle of the mountain. Huangfu Hao could not figure out the reason for the Crown Prince to take action, thus he fell into it easily. He said angrily, "What are you doing?" The Crown Prince looked at him expressionless, "Apologies." Several guards flew over to Huangfu Hao at the same time, making Huangfu Hao shout in despair, "Fu Shuyan, you harmed this prince." The Qin country would not take things lying down. Fu Shuyan was the Crown Prince's name. His voice stopped abruptly. There was a silver sword light that flashed at his chest that seemed to be a silver snake that was reflecting white light, and the blood slowly seeped out, seemed to be glued with the thin ice on the ground. The back of Yifeng Pavilion was the canyon, and Huangfu Hao had exhausted all his energy to scream angrily, so the sound echoed as it bounced around the canyon. Echo after echo, like ripples on the water. At the other end, the Crown Prince's entourage, what was heading towards Yifeng Pavilion, suddenly stopped. They were on the shady side of the bottom of the mountain and the echoes were not clearly. The Crown Prince said with a frown, "Did someone call out this prince's name?" The guards all looked at one another as they could not hear it clearly. The Crown Prince thought about it before saying, "Most probably it is this prince that heard wrongly." Under the skies, other than the Emperor and Empress, no one would dare to call him by his full name. Moreover, there should not be anyone in Yifeng Pavilion at this moment as the appointed timing in the invitation was Sishi 9 to 11 a.m. The Crown Prince had the habit of arriving early, thus he went up the mountain during Chen 7 to 9 a.m. He should be the first to arrive. As he was thinking as such, he then thought that what he had heard just now was only an illusion from his ears. However, the Crown Prince did not know why, but there was some restlessness that formed in his heart, making him speed up his steps. Upon reaching Yifeng Pavilion, he could see someone sitting in the pavilion with one's back towards him, and with one look, he recognized that it belonged to Huangfu Hao. The Crown Prince was somewhat surprised as he did not expect that Huangfu Hao would actually come this early. He went up with a smile to greet. One did not expect that Brother Huangfu also come this. Before he could say the word early, the Crown Prince's hand just lightly pat on Huangfu Hao's shoulder, but Huangfu Hao fell off with a dong sound. The Crown Prince jumped in shock and immediately reached out to pull Huangfu Hao. With the pull, Huangfu Hao directly faced him and the Crown Prince stood out in surprise before letting go of his hands. Huangfu Hao's eyes were wide open and his mouth was also opened, as if he was extremely angry and horrified, but his clothes were wet and cold. It was because around his chest area, the silver robes had been stained with large patches of blood. What is going on here? The Crown Prince panicked and his mind was momentarily stunned. Huangfu Hao was dead. How could this be? Before he even had time to react to this matter, he suddenly saw a large group of people suddenly rushing in, dressed as guards. Seeing that Huangfu Hao was laying on the ground and one did not know if he was dead or alive, they rushed towards the Crown Prince and said angrily, "Audacious! How dare you harm His Highness the Crown Prince? Lay down your lives." Without another word, they descended on the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince had also brought his own guards, and naturally the guards would not let the Crown Prince be harmed, thus fighting with those guards. The Crown Prince only understood at this moment that the ones who drew their swords on him were Huangfu Hao's guards. But where were Huangfu Hao's guards just now? Why did they only rush in now? The Crown Prince remembered to explain and shouted out, "This prince only just reached this place and Brother Huangfu is already harmed. It is not of this prince doing." One of the guards who seemed like the leader heard it and responded with hatred, "What a bunch of nonsense. Just now when I was waiting at the waist of the mountain for His Highness the Crown Prince's order, one heard His Highness the Crown Prince shouting that you were the one who harmed him. We hated that we could not immediately arrive, and now with the evidence all around, how could you deny it?" Finishing, he then raised his sword and approached. The Crown Prince was protected by his guards and his tongue tied. Huangfu Hao shouted that it was he who harmed him. This was simply a joke. He had only arrived at this place and Huangfu Hao was already dead. Why would Huangfu Hao slander him? The Crown Prince's heart suddenly moved. Just now when he had not yet reached Yifeng Pavilion, he seemed to have heard someone shouting his name. It was just that he walked from the back of the mountain and could not hear it clearly. Could it be that it was not an illusion but real? But why would Huangfu Hao call out his name? The Crown Prince's mind was in a mess, but he still said, "This prince only just came here, so how would this prince harm him? You Mingqi dog, you had swindled our Crown Prince over and even indicated in the invitation for the Crown Prince to leave us halfway up the mountain. How can the Qin people be humans if one does not take revenge on people like you?" The Crown Prince seemed to be struck by lightning. The invitation to Huangfu Hao was written by him personally so that this love at first sight scene would be more natural and realistic. The Crown Prince invited Huangfu Hao out to appreciate incense, and this incense was coincidentally the exact same one that Wang Bai found. Who knew that Wang Bai's new Furin was not sensible and invited her younger sister to take a look at this novelty? The four of them would inadvertently encounter an event, subsequently would naturally go with the flow. However, in that invitation there was no mention of leaving one's guards at the waist of the mountain. A guard that was protecting the Crown Prince said, "Your Highness, one can no longer withstand it. These people do not want their lives anymore. It is best that your Highness leave first." The Crown Prince looked at the other party. Huangfu Hao was obviously dead and the dead could not be resurrected. These guards most likely knew that their master was dead, and even if they returned to Qin country, they would be charged with the crime of unable to protect the Crown Prince by the Qin Emperor and would also die. Thus it was easily to put all the crimes onto the Crown Prince and plan to die together with the Crown Prince. Each of their moves were deathly, but the Crown Prince's guards still had to protect the Crown Prince, thus it was difficult to resist the enemies. The Crown Prince was somewhat hesitant. If he just leave like this, without resolving the problems, it would seem that he was the defaulted criminal, but if he did not leave then with the other party's vicious moves, the Crown Prince did not know if he could still return safely. He gritted his teeth and took a glance at Huangfu Hao on the floor again and said hatefully, "Leave." The events of Yifeng Pavilion were still not known to outsiders yet. Shen Dongling and Wang Bai were sitting in a horse carriage and it was still on the way up to the mountain and there was a distance before they reached the mountains. They were only here to be witnesses, so it was not ideal to go too early. Moreover, the Shen mansion was much further from Yifeng Pavilion, so if Shen Miao did not go, it would not be convenient to interrupt the Crown Princess and Huang Fu Hao's conversation. Thus Wang Bai deliberately told the carriage to slow down. Shen Dongling cuddled in Wang Bai's embrace. Husband is in a good mood today. Wang Bai looked at her. When one marry a beauty, of course one's mood is naturally good. Thinking about today, his position in the Crown Prince's heart would rise and Wang Bai could not help but be happy. Although the residence of the Minister of Land was wealthy due to the salt smuggling business, but it was all hidden riches and one had to constantly be wary of being discovered by others and implicate the entire residence. Humans would always look forward and previously Wang Bai's path had always been firm and steady and when one had no shortage of money, power would become more important. He also wanted to soar to the skies in one move. Wang Bai was the Crown Prince's pupil. Even though the Crown Prince occupied the official title among the princes, he was not outstanding. However, now that the fight between the other princes intensified, Emperor Wenwei instead valued the Crown Prince and felt that he could better grasp the Crown Prince. Since Emperor Wenwei had the heart to support the Crown Prince, then the Crown Prince gradually changed his usual style and those who were following the Crown Prince had also gradually developed their ambitions. Wang Bai took a glance at the beauty in his arms. Ever since marrying Shen Dongling, he felt that previously he was firm and steady but it was not easy to get ahead of others. One would be old in a few decades, so what was the point? Shen Dongling was suitable to his taste and would always encourage him to do things that he would have not thought before. Wang Bai's heart was rejoicing as once Shen Miao's matter was successful, the Crown Prince's chances of inheriting the throne would be far greater. Once one was able to attain Dao, even their pets would also ascend to heavens. He would finally able to achieve success. Just as he was thinking, the horse carriage suddenly stopped. Wang Bai parted the curtains and asked, "What happened?" One of the guards ran over. Wang Bai recognized him as he was a person by the Crown Prince's side. The Crown Prince had sent this person to pass message to Wang Bai for a few times, so naturally Wang Bai was familiar with him. However, at this moment the expression on the person was not good, and not only that, his clothes were in a somewhat mess. Wang Darren, something went wrong. Shen Dongling was stunned as she listened in the carriage. Matters seemed to have changed beyond recognition overnight. One did not thought that the previously spring breeze that was filled with glory had become troublesome in a moment. Wang Bai and Shen Dongling did not expect that Huang Fu Hao would be killed by the Crown Prince. No one knew what exactly went on between both of them. Even though the Crown Prince did their best to emphasize that the Crown Prince did not take action towards Huang Fu Hao, and when the Crown Prince reached Yifeng Pavilion, Huang Fu Hao was already dead. But Huang Fu Hao's guards were not convinced a bit. Since the misunderstanding was created, not to mention it was a misunderstanding with blood, so what ensues was a shocking criminal offense. Shen Dongling tried her best to maintain her calm expression as she comforted Wang Bai. There must be some misunderstanding in all of this. As long as the misunderstanding is clarified, everything would be solved. But her heart was sinking into the abyss. From the eyes of the outsiders, it was Wang Bai who found the incense to give to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince then presented Buddha with borrowed flowers and invited Huang Fu Hao to appreciate incense. Thus Wang Bai was the source of the disaster of this bloody case. Even if the matter was not related to Wang Bai at all, the wrath of the imperial family was something that was impossible for Wang Bai to escape safely. Moreover, even if the Crown Prince was lucky and proved his innocence, it was Wang Bai who made the suggestion, and because Wang Bai presented it, Huang Fu Hao died, so the Qin country would not be willing to take things lying down. If the allies of the Crown Prince die, how could the Crown Prince not vent his anger on Wang Bai? So be it left or right, Wang Bai, the sacrificial lamb, could not run away. Wang Bai obviously thought of this level and his expression became extremely ugly. He was after all calmer than Shen Dongling and only said, "Return to the residence first. Go and visit the Crown Prince residence and ask what is going on." How did the perfectly fine Huang Fu Hao die? Who was the one who assassinate? Why did Huang Fu Hao shout the Crown Prince's name? All the complications and confusion was simply incomprehensible. No matter what, one had to first figure out what was going on in order to find a solution to it. The driver turned the horses around and headed towards the city. Shen Dongling suddenly seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Why did one not seen fifth younger sister?" Wang Bai was startled. One had to know what this entire strategy that the Crown Prince used was for Shen Miao. Because Shen Dongling calculated the timing, they should reach Yifeng Pavilion around the same time as Shen Miao so that one could portray sisterly love. They had stopped here for a while, so logically speaking Shen Miao and the rest should have also arrived. One could see out to the mountain road at a glance from where they were, but there were no horse carriage in front or behind at all. Why was Shen Miao not here? Wang Bai only knew that Shen Miao was the Tangmei of Shen Dongling, and because Shen Shen's strong military power she was able to live well, but he did not know anything about Shen Miao's temperament at all. Shen Dongling however had seen Shen Miao's tactics on the second and third household, so her entire heart sank straight down. How would it be so coincident if Shen Miao did not come? Could it be that Shen Miao had long knew that something would happen today? No one had the ability to know the future, so could it be that today's matter was related to Shen Miao? Even if she was supernatural, how would she be able to kill the Crown Prince of Qin country this easily? Wang Bai heard Shen Dongling's words but misunderstood Shen Dongling's meaning. He said, "Yes, if fifth Shen lady is present then matters would be smoother." Wang Bai thought that with one more person, the blame would be shared around, and if Shen Miao was present, then taking Shen Shen into consideration, Emperor Wenwei would not make things too difficult for him, but if he only punished him alone then it would look biased. Thus in order to show justice and equality, if Shen Miao was present, it would help Wang Bai on many matters. He said, "Let's go back to the residence first. Maybe fifth Shen young lady had returned. Let's see how it is at the Crown Prince end first." Shen Dongling nodded her head, but there was a bitter smile in her heart. She did not know why, but she always felt that Shen Miao would not have gone back already. One feared that Shen Miao had never planned to come to Yifeng Pavilion from the very beginning. This opponent, Shen Miao, was much more scary than she had thought to be. At the other side, on the streets, Luo Tan was sitting in the horse carriage as she wiped the sweat on her forehead. What can be done? One had been delayed for such a long time that if one rushed to Yifeng Pavilion, one feared that it would be too late. Just now when the Shen family's horse carriage passed through a bustling place in the city, they accidentally knocked onto an old woman. That old woman was unconscious at the very spot, and the Shen family was not a small family in Ding capital, and Shen Shen was a great hero that everyone respected, thus naturally they would be concerned. Shen Miao and Luo Tan would definitely not leave the old woman alone and leave. The guards were instructed to send the old woman to the nearest medical hall, and they kept watching as the physician took the old woman's pulse and only left when the old woman woke up. Their actions naturally won the approval of many commoners and only felt that the young ladies from the general residence were not arrogant or spoiled and instead were considerate of the ordinary people and had a rarely seen character. The praise earned was not false, but a lot of time was delayed. If one were to rush over to Yifeng Pavilion now, it would be noon when they reach. Shen Miao thought about it before saying, "Don't go anymore." Oh, Luo Tan was still thinking of how to resolve this problem and could not help but be surprised when she heard Shen Miao's words. Why not going? Doesn't youngest Biao's sister hated people who does not keep their promises the most? Shen Miao smiled. The most important factor of appreciating incense is the timing and location. The best time for Yifeng Pavilion is during the morning, as it is during this time when appreciating incense, the air would be the freshest. If one were to appreciate incense during the afternoon, the earth scent would be mixed in and it would not be ideal to appreciate the aroma of the incense. One cannot let others wait for us. This is not nice. She reached her hands out to call for Mo Qing to let him pass a message via pigeon to Yifeng Pavilion indicating that Luo Tan and she would not be able to attend due to some matters. Although Luo Tan had some regrets, she had no interest in appreciating incense at all. It was difficult for her to come out, so naturally she pulled Shen Miao to shop around. Shen Miao saw that it was still early and with Akai and the rest of the guards accompanying, there was no problems in walking around, thus she agreed to it. Who knew that Luo Tan was so excited that after this walk, it was already nearing to evening when they returned to the Shen residence. When their horse carriage reached to the doors of the residence, the servant that was at the door smiled. It is good that young lady has returned. Furin and master have also just returned. Just in time to have dinner. Luo Tan was in all smiles as she pulled Shen Miao by her hands and stepped in. Who knew that upon entering the main hall, Luo Shuiwan was talking to Shen Shen, and upon seeing that Shen Miao and Luo Tan had returned, she was first startled before giving a sigh of relief. Zhao Zhao, Tan where did both of you go? Today Wang Furin of the Minister of Land invited us to Yifeng Pavilion to appreciate incense, but during the journey the horse carriage knocked onto an old woman. Older Biao's sister and me were busy taking care of that old woman and missed out on the timing, thus we have sent over our apologies and did not go. Older Biao's sister and I then walked around. Father, mother, did something happen? Shen Miao called Shen Dongling as Wang Furin of the Minister of Land, deliberately drawing a line on their relationship, not wanting to be any closer to Shen Dongling. Luo Shuiyan did not take note of this point and only took a deep breath. This really scared me. The Qin Crown Prince was assassinated and died in Yifeng Pavilion, and every single person related was taken to the prisons to be interrogated. That Wang Bai said that you were also there, but no one had seen you. Your father and me rushed back and saw that you all were not and feared that something had happened. Luo Tan was startled, assassinated and died. Who have such a courage that would even dare to assassinate the Crown Prince of Qin country in broad daylight? Aren't the Qin Crown Prince's guards highly skilled? How could they not even protect their own master's life? Unlike Luo Tan's shocked face, Shen Miao was very calm as she said, "Don't worry, Biao older sister and I did not go to Yifeng Pavilion. During the day when one knocked onto the old woman, there were numerous of commoners who witnessed it. In case of future trouble, we also had reported it to the authorities. These commoners can testify for us as we were busy with taking care of the old woman, so how does one have time to go to Yifeng Pavilion?" Under the eyes of the public, nothing was fake, and moreover Shen Miao did not have the ability to split herself, so how was she able to appear in the Yifeng Pavilion? Shen Shen scoffed and there were some anger in his expression. Wang Bai is so courageous to actually dare to splash dirty water on my Shen family. It seemed that the Wang family want to pull us into the water. Luo Shuiyan had understood and said hatefully, Shen Dongling is relatives with us and one had never thought that she would have such vicious intentions. How would one scheme against one's family? Shen Miao smiled coldly. In the second and third household of the Shen family, which one actually treated us sincerely? Luo Shuiyan and Shen Shen were silent. Luo Tan felt that the atmosphere was somewhat heavy and smiled. Oh. Speaking of which, youngest Biao's sister and my fortunate is good today. If one did not knock onto that old woman, one feared that we would have really went to Yifeng Pavilion to appreciate incense. Since Huang Fu Hao was assassinated and even his guards could not save him, the assassins must be highly skilled. If youngest Biao's sister and I went, most likely we will also be implicated. Speaking of that, we must thank that old woman. Shen Miao smiled and was about to say something when she heard Luo Tan mumbling, but previously when the invitation was sent to us, it did not mention that the Qin Crown Prince is also going to appreciate incense. Why would the Crown Prince of Qin go to appreciate incense? Is there other people present and were there casualties? Before anyone could answer, Luo Tan continuously questioned, but one saw two people walking from outside. They were Shen Chu and Luo Ling. When Luo Tan turned around she shouted, "Older brother Chu, what happened to you all?" Shen Chu's and Luo Ling's clothes were all somewhat messy and there were some traces of blood on their faces and bodies. They looked like they were in a poor condition. Luo Shuiyan and Shen Shen also jumped in shock. Luo Shuiyan quickly went up and looked over both of them hurriedly. What had happened? Shen Chu quickly explained, "Don't worry. It is not my blood but someone else's." Luo Shuiyan then felt assured, but before she could totally put her heart down, she heard Luo Tan asking, "Older brother Chu, did you and older brother Ling went to arrest the assassins who killed the Qin Crown Prince today? Are the assassins very powerful and difficult to deal with? It seems that it looked difficult for you." Shen Shen frowned and asked, "Shen Chu, is that the case?" Shen Chu and Luo Ling looked at one another and their gaze was somewhat strange. After a moment, Shen Chu instructed the servants in the main hall to withdraw before looking thoughtfully towards Luo Tan and Shen Miao. Shen Miao said, "Older Biao's sister and me would not say it out. Eldest brother, just speak directly." Luo Tan quickly raised her hand to indicate that she would never reveal any one bit of it. Seeing Shen Chu being so solemn, Shen Shen and Luo Shuiyan was somewhat suspicious. Luo Ling nodded his head towards Shen Chu and Shen Chu only spoke after sighing. Today the army squadrons of the Ministry of Defense went to arrest people, but it was not for the assassins who killed Huang Fu Hao but Huang Fu Hao's guards. Guards. Luo Shuiyan frowned. Could it be that they want an explanation from Ming Qi, but things had escalated to such a level? Luo Shuiyan did not have good feelings towards the Qin people. One did not know if it was because the Qin country was only established the shortest among the three countries and did not have any history, thus from the imperial family down to the commoners, everyone had a look of arrogance. Even though the Qin country's power was currently slightly better than Ming Qi, they would always express their arrogance in Ming Qi, which was really unsightly to one's eyes. That was not it. Shen Chu hesitated before speaking. Huang Fu Hao's guard said that the one who assassinated Huang Fu Hao was the Crown Prince and were heading to the Eastern Palace to kill the Crown Prince to avenge Huang Fu Hao. The Crown Prince killed Huang Fu Hao. Shen Shen suddenly stood up. That is not possible. Not mentioning that the Crown Prince had a weak stature and it would not be possible. Currently Ming Qi was trying to form an alliance with the Qin country to deal with Great Liang, so how would one take such a self-destructive plan into action? Killing Huang Fu Hao would only arouse Qin country's anger, and the Crown Prince was not a fool, so how could he do such a thankless matter? I also thought it was not possible. Shen Chu was somewhat bewildered, but those guards said that when they were up on the mountain they heard Huang Fu Hao shouting the Crown Prince's name and said loudly that the Crown Prince was the culprit. Since they are Huang Fu Hao's guards, there was no reason to let the real culprit go and frame another. Luo Shuiyan asked, Huang Fu Hao's guards were not with Huang Fu Hao. Why did they say they heard it? This is the key point of doubt. Luo Ling continued, according to Huang Fu Hao's guards, today it was the Crown Prince who invited Huang Fu Hao over to appreciate incense, and it was the Crown Prince who sent an invitation to Huang Fu Hao. Huang Fu Hao's guard recalled that the Crown Prince's invitation indicated that there was something important to discuss with Huang Fu Hao and wanted Huang Fu Hao to leave the guards at the waist of the mountain and only let Huang Fu Hao go up alone. But the Crown Prince said that this was not mentioned when he wrote the invitation. The officials went to search for the Crown Prince's invitation, but one did not know if the invitation was long thrown by Huang Fu Hao. Now there was no evidence and each side had their story, thus making one anxious. Luo Tan muttered, the Crown Prince invited Huang Fu Hao to appreciate incense. But why the invitation that Wang Furin sent to me and youngest Biao's sister did not mention about the two people? The people in the room were startled. They all only paid attention to the crown prince and Huang Fu Hao and ignored Shen Miao's end. At this moment when Luo Tan mentioned it, they remembered that it. Why was Shen Miao and Luo Tan were brought along when the crown prince and Huang Fu Hao went to appreciate incense? Not mentioning Luo Tan, since she had no relations to the people in Ding capital, Shen Miao was different as she was Shen Shen's daughter. When Shen Dongling sent the invitation over, it was not possible for her not to know that the crown prince and Huang Fu Hao were also coming, so why did she not mention it to Shen Miao? Was it because she had forgotten or was it deliberate? If it was deliberate, then why did she do it and what was being planned? Everyone could not help but gave a cold sweat. Luo Shuiyan said, this cannot do. One has to ask Shen Dongling clearly. Mother. Shen Chu stopped her. Shen Dongling and Wang Bai are already in prison and one cannot rush to visit them at such a time, else it would not be good for others to think that we have anything to do with her. Two crown princes went to appreciate incense and one died, while the other had unphantomably became a murderer. When Emperor Wen Wei knew of the matter, he was so angry that he almost fell off. At one end one had to calm the Qin people's anger and arrest a few people to show that Mingqi was doing things righteously accordingly to the laws, but at the other end Emperor Wen Wei was unable to vent his entire anger. Since it is Wang Bai who brought up the appreciation of incense, then he was the beginning of everything. There would never be an explanation for a monarch's fury and Wang Bai was still dreaming of a sweat dream when one ruthlessly broke in it. Not only that, this time one was not even able to save one's life or even speak anything. Seeing everyone having various expression and only Shen Miao was as calm as before. It was as if the things that she had listened had nothing to do with her and indeed it had no connection to her. She said, this has nothing to do with us, so just wait to see how it is dealt with. Shen Chu noticed Shen Miao's expression and asked, younger sister, why are you not in one bit surprised with the assassination of Huang Fu Hao or not astonished that it was the crown prince that killed Huang Fu Hao? Shen Miao smiled gently, there is nothing to be astonished. Just like what those people said, the crown prince discussed some matters with Huang Fu Hao privately and during the negotiation process, there was no agreement or a fierce disagreement erupted that it was possible that it made the crown prince kill another in a fit of anger. It is not that there were no such cases in Mingqi before, so why the need of making so much fuss out of nothing? Shen Chu was speechless. Shen Miao's words actually said that the entire house of people were unable to remain calm. It was not wrong for Shen Miao to say as such, but to kill another so fiercely, not to mention the other party was the crown prince of a country. Even if Emperor Wen Wei was so angry that he lost all sense of reason, he would not just eliminate another cleanly like this. Shen Xin and Luo Shuiyan were frowning. Shen Miao need not think that much, but they were officials of the country and every move that the courts made could implicate their future way of living. Moreover, this time Huang Fu Hao died in Mingqi and the guilty person was the crown prince of Mingqi. One thought that those guards should have already sent people back to pass the message, and after the emperor of Qin country knew that his pair of children had passed on in Mingqi, who would be the one bearing this thunderous anger? It would be very difficult for Mingqi and Qin country to form an alliance, and moreover it was unknown of what kind of actions would Great Liang take. On this night, because of this sudden matter, even the atmosphere in the Shen mansion was also heavy. However, this was not because of sympathizing Huang Fu Hao or the crown prince, but because of the possible variable changes in the future. When Xie Jingxing came over to look for Shen Miao was in a daze by the window. Huang Fu Hao died just like that. In the previous life, Huang Fu Hao and Princess Ming'an had been the nightmare that she could not get rid of when she went to the Qin country as a hostage. Princess Ming'an was arrogant and malicious, but Huang Fu Hao liked to get others to torture her. Huang Fu Hao was the crown prince of Qin country, so when he tortures someone, the others would follow suit. In fact, there was no hatred between Shen Miao and Huang Fu Hao and Princess Ming'an, but with such malicious insults, it finally accumulated lots of grievances. Unlike others, Shen Miao did not think of letting Huang Fu Hao and Princess Ming'an pay for their lives because it was not them who harmed the Shen family the most. At most, these people only threw stones for a period of her life when she was struggling. If it was not that they have schemed her, Shen Miao would not be bothered to pay any attention to these two people. Now that these people were gone, Shen Miao was somewhat at a loss. After the rebirth, the road that she had taken had always been revenge and protecting the Shen family from repeating the mistakes of the past. But as long as the Fu family people were alive each day, they would definitely not let the Shen family go. Her enemy was very powerful in the beginning and it was not enough to just have a desperate heart. Shen Miao sometimes also doubted if she could walk all the way to the end. The figure under the tree waved his hands in front of Shen Miao. Shen Miao recovered to her senses and saw Xie Jingxing's mischievous smile. Miss me so much that you are in a daze. Shen Miao closed the windows with a paw sound, but Xie Jingxing's hands quickly held it and jumped into the room smoothly. He used one of his arms to press Shen Miao's should and did not let her move as his other hand closed the window. Be careful not to be frozen silly. Kong Yang, who was standing outside at the corner of the frozen wall. Shen Miao pulled off Xie Jingxing's hand and sat in front of the table in the room before asking, how is it handled? No problem. Xie Jingxing also followed to sit down and gestured for Shen Miao to pour him tea. Shen Miao sighed and poured the tea out before unwillingly pushed the teacup over and asked, you are sure that the people of Qin country will not discover it? Unable to discover anything, Xie Jingxing laughed. Not everyone is as intelligent as you and me. Shen Miao rolled her eyes. If one were to praise others, just praise. There was no need to add his own praise in. Seeing that the purple-clad youth was drinking tea opposite, a slight ripple formed in her heart. Today's matter was planned by her and Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing had various specialists among his subordinates, and some had the ability of disguising appearances and some had the ability to imitate others' voices, and there were even those who could write exactly the same handwriting after taking a look at it. The matter between Huang Fu Hao and Fu Shuyan, one only changed Huang Fu Hao's invitation and changed the timing too. Thus Huang Fu Hao and Fu Shuyan would climb up the mountain one after the other. After going up the mountain, Xie Jingxing's people would disguise themselves as the crown prince, and the guard that was following by the crown prince's side with his head bowed was speaking for the crown prince. Even though Huang Fu Hao and the crown prince were familiar with one another, they were not at a position where one would be totally devoted to another. They also did not grow up with one another, so they could hardly detect that the person opposite was like the plum tree that withered in place of the peach tree. In all, it was all a series of misunderstandings. This trick from the perspective of outsiders was that the crown prince killed Huang Fu Hao. No matter what was the excuse, no matter what misunderstanding there was, it was an undeniable and unchangeable fact. The Qin country would not let it lying down. Needless to discuss about having an alliance, one feared that they want to be enemies with Mingqi. Not mentioning that the broken alliance, in order for Emperor Wen Wei to appease to the Qin emperor's anger, he would sacrifice others, and that includes the crown prince. Why are you so confident that the emperor will sacrifice the crown prince? Xie Jingxing's eyebrows raised as he asked. That is his own son. Shen Miao smiled gently. Do you remember my second shoe? Remembered. At the beginning Shen Yuan was also his own son, but when Shen Yuan got into trouble, he was busy clearing his relationship with him. The emperor is also an ordinary person, and the imperial family view relations even lighter. For the sake of the rightness of the world, what does punishing one's family for righteousness matters? Even if one knows that the crown prince was wrongly accused, the emperor would swallow this bitter fruit. Shen Miao spoke with sarcasm, but a faint anger leaked out from the corner of her eyes. Xie Jingxing stared at her thoughtfully. As far as the Fu family was concerned, Shen Miao would always have a kind of hatred for them. Even though she had done her best to cover it up, there would always be a moment where she could not conceal it. These moments were caught by Xie Jingxing and suspicions formed in his heart, but he would not ask forcefully. He said jokingly, "You seem to know the imperial family very well and spoke like you have personally experienced it." Shen Miao's eyes hang down. Didn't she experience it personally in her past life? After marrying to Fu Shuyi, because of the fight of the heir apparent, he actually fought the rest of the brothers to death. In the 9 brothers, there were those that died and some whose whereabouts were unaccounted for. Even if one barely lived, at the end when Fu Shuyi ascended to the throne, they would be eliminated by some unwarranted charges. It was the Fu family's inherent instinct not to leave any future troubles. Even between Fu Shuyi and Emperor Wenwei, there would be Emperor Wenwei guarding against his sons usurping the throne, and Fu Shuyi looked forward for his father's early death. There was still the Empress, Dongshu consort and Shu Xian consort in the inner palace. Whoever talked about family relations, whoever would be the fool. It was a pity that she did not understand it in her previous lifetime and always thought that people had heart and soul. She had forgotten that Fu Shuyi had dealt with his own brothers and father so naturally he could deal with his son. When Shen Miao was deep in the inner palace, those ladies who initially had strong love and hate, they were all smoothened out till it was almost gone. As for Fu Shuyi's remaining love, all of it were built on him as Wan Yu's and Fu Ming's father. Shen Miao thought that no father would not dote on their children. However, Fu Shuyi at the ad sent his own daughter to the Zongnu for a marriage alliance and forced his son up the road of death. She would definitely personally demand this stack of debts back. Seeing a change in the expression in Shen Miao's eyes and at the bottom of it there were some painful emotions, Xie Jingxing's brows wrinkled as he did not know what had touched Shen Miao's unhappiness. He hesitated a bit before saying slowly, "If you have any difficulties, you can tell me. I will solve it for you." Shen Miao looked up at him, "You speak as though you can do it." But she was very clear in his heart that Xie Jingxing could definitely do it. He said kill and 2 crown princes were killed. Even though the crown prince and Emperor Wenwei knew clearly that they were schemed against, there was no chance to refute it. This kind of sinister methods, only Xie Jingxing could carry it out. His guts were so big that it could pierce the skies and he was so cunning and sly that others would not have any leverage on him. It was like there was nothing in the world he could not do. Shen Miao suddenly had a thought that popped up in her head. If only she had met him in her previous life. But she only said, "If one wants you to change the entire face of the country, can you do it?" When the purple robe youth holding the jasper teacup heard it, he only smiled and his features were beautiful, as if the begonia's petal were opening as in spring and elegance oozed out from one's bones. Even though his gaze was as sharp as a sword, his tone was slightly in a teasing manner. "Just some imperial power. If you want it, it will all belong to you." The movements in Mingqi were unable to be hidden from the rest of the world. One did not know how it gradually began to spread in the marketplace that Huang Fuhao died in the hands of the crown prince. Emperor Wenwei had the thought to place Huang Fuhao's guards under house arrest, but now things had become out of control and if it was not managed, one feared that it would become chaotic. But how would the people in the residence of Prince Qin be able to sit and wait? News was sent back to the ears of the Qin Emperor and after some short few days, there was someone who rushed over to send over a message, wanting Emperor Wenwei to give an explanation else troops would be sent to level Mingqi. If it was the previous Qin country, Mingqi naturally would be able to compete with them, but now with unclear ambitions of Great Liang who was lurking at the side with tiger's eyes, with the Qin country's attack, Mingqi would consider to be finished this time. Under the conviction of evidence, Emperor Wenwei had no choice but to send the crown prince to prison. Even though he specifically instructed other to take good care of the crown prince, at the end it was a move to abandon the chariot to protect the martial chess moves. The older Emperor Wenwei had gotten the unwavering and firm personality that he had when young were finally wiped off. Not to mention how the other sons would think, even officials would feel chilling when seeing it. In order to protect oneself, even though he obviously knew that there were suspicious circumstances with the crown prince killing Huang Fuhao, he still sent the crown prince to prison. In fact, Emperor Wenwei was not to be blamed. The reason to why he placed the crown prince in prison, other than to show the Emperor of Qin his attitude, was to temporarily calm the Qin Emperor's anger and to ensure the safety of the crown prince. Huang Fuhao's guards were eyeing him like tigers and had all the intentions to take revenge for Huang Fuhao, thus it was highly possible that the crown prince would be killed by one of the guards if he was careless on any day. Now that the crown prince had become a prisoner and there were so many people guarding in the prison, such things would not happen. Unfortunately, Emperor Wenhui's thoughts were not understood and because of this move of his, even the Empress could not sit still. The Empress stepped into Yang Xindian and angrily asked, "Your Majesty knew clearly that the crown prince was unjustly accused by others, so why is he being locked up? Did your Majesty thought of how would the officials look at him in the future?" Emperor Wenwei frowned as he did not like the feeling of being questioned by others, Gen of one's viewpoint. Emperor Wenwei still had some affection for the Empress as the Empress was his official wife and when the late Emperor was alive, the battle of the heir apparent was as fierce as today and if it wasn't the maiden family of the Empress that was supporting, Emperor Wenwei would not have necessarily be in this position today. Now the power of maiden family of the Empress was deliberately returned to the Emperor, there would not be any possibility of the dictatorship of a family in the court. Thus Emperor Wenwei was willing to give more affection to the Empress and moreover the Empress is the birth mother of the crown prince. Privately the Empress was indeed not a bad Empress. She did not get jealous and also managed the inner palace rather well. Chenqi beseech your Majesty to revoke the order. The Empress said, the crown prince would need to face the court officials in the future thus your Majesty's action would only let the commoners under the sky misunderstand. If it was previously, the Empress would have not refuted Emperor Wenhui's decision but as a mother, one would always be more sensitive with matters of one's son. The Empress was not willing to have any mistakes in the crown prince's future, not even a drop of dirty water could stain him. What was more that this time it was an ordinary fault. Once the crime of murdering the crown prince of Qin country was confirmed, one feared that it would even be difficult to ensure the safety of Fu Shuyan's life. Even though the Empress does not interfere in political affairs, this did not mean that she had no knowledge of the matters in the court. Once there was a dangerous seed that was formed, there would also be a seed of elimination. Emperor Wenwei had been troubled these days when dealing with this matter and his heart was very frustrated. Of all times the Empress chose to agitate him at this time and he said impatiently, Gen do not need you to criticize or give orders when Gen actions. The Empress's heart jumped. After being husband and wife with Emperor Wenwei for so many years, she naturally knew Emperor Wenhui's temperament. She immediately changed to a warm expressed and removed the questioning expression she had before softly speaking. Chenqi knows that your Majesty is frustrated and it was Chenqi who is impulsive just now. Chenqi is also worried for the crown prince. One remembered that when the crown prince was young, his studies not considered good and no matter how the imperial tutor taught, he was unable to learn and it was your Majesty who personally taught the crown prince. Now both Chenqi and your Majesty know clearly in one's heart that the matter has nothing to do with the crown prince. The crown prince's character is gentle and honest so how would he kill another? Even if he did kill another, he would definitely not to be so stupid to assassinate another in broad daylight. Your Majesty, the crown prince is innocent and you are the crown prince's father. Could it be that one would watch with open eyes as the crown prince was blamed and charged unwarranted offenses? These appeasing words played a good role and Emperor Wenhui's expression eased. Among the 9 princes, the one that Emperor Wenwei wanted to support the most was the crown prince and naturally not willing to let the crown prince die like this. Just as he was about to speak, one heard the palace maid outside reporting, "Your Majesty, her ladyship consort Xian has arrived." The empress's expressions were as usual but the hands that was clasped in the sleeves were nightly clenched. Among the consorts in the palace, consort Xian was the most arrogant one as she had gave birth to 2 princes, Prince Zhou and Prince Jing, and was favored upon normally with delicate good appearances. Even though her actions were arrogant, she was able to capture and retain Emperor Wenhui's heart. The empress was not ignorant of the ambition of the 2 brothers, Prince Zhou and Prince Jing. Consort Xu Xian naturally hoped that her sons would be able to sit on that position so once the crown prince was in trouble, consort Xu Xian would not let go of the opportunity to throw stones. One could see consort Xu Xian coming in seductively from outside. Even though she had gave birth to 2 sons, consort Xu Xian's appearance did not show traces of aging. One had heard that she would use sheep's milk to bathe every day so her skin was smooth and firm, even better than young females at the age of 28 but had the charms of a mature woman. There were 3,000s of beauties in the palace but consort Xu Xian's appearance indeed made others jealous so it was no wonder Emperor Wenwei would still favor her often even though consort Xu Xian was domineering and arrogant. When consort Xu Xian entered, she said her greetings to Emperor Wenwei and the empress. Afterwards she then said smilingly, "Lately your majesty's mood is not good so Chen Qi had instructed the imperial kitchen's pastry chef to make some purple snowbirds' nests for your majesty to taste." One did not think that older sister would also be here. The empress smiled lightly and did not want to talk to her but how would consort Xian willing to let this opportunity go? She looked towards the empress and said, "Today for older sister to look for his majesty, is it about the crown prince's matter?" Emperor Wenwei had yet to say anything when the empress raised her eyebrows and said angrily, "Younger sister is managing too broadly." Consort Xu Xian grinned and looked at Emperor Wenwei, who did not say a word, before looking at the empress again and said slowly, "Originally these things should not be said by this younger sister but his majesty is worried about this matter so why older sister cannot understand his majesty and still harass his majesty at this juncture." She let the palace maid put down the basket as she continued speaking, "The crown prince's matter is not about one person's life. A perfectly fine crown prince of Qin country is involved and that day only the crown prince and the crown prince of Qin country are present." Younger sister naturally believed that the crown prince would not do such insane and lunatic actions but one have to bring out evidence. If one is unable to bring out the evidence then how could everyone be convinced? Moreover at the Qin country's end, there are people watching closely. If his majesty listens to older sister's words and let the crown prince out then once the Qin country hear of it, one do not know how much waves would there be. Older sister cannot just think of oneself and the crown prince and have to think of the world. Consort Xu Xian said thoughtfully but the empress's expressions changed. "Shut up," the empress said angrily. Consort Xu Xian feigned a scared look and stepped back a little before looking at Emperor Wenwei with grievances. "Your majesty, Chen Qi persuaded older sister with good intentions but older sister failed to appreciate the favor. Chen Qi is wrong to death." Emperor Wenwei was having a terrible headache and did not want to see anyone. How could he not know that consort Xu Xian's words were of provocation and it was all to let the crown prince not live well but Emperor Wenwei had no way to deny it as consort Xu Xian's words were the truth. The crown prince's matter not only implicate the crown prince but also Qin country's attitude. This time Mingqi could not make a mistake at all as if this matter was not handled well, no one could tell what kind of disaster would be brought onto Mingqi in the future. Thinking about that, Emperor Wenwei felt troubled thinking about the crown prince and became annoyed with the empress too. He said to the empress and consort Xu Xian, "I'll withdraw. Jen want to be alone." The empress took great difficulty before Emperor Wenwei loosened his lips and did not think that when consort Xu Xian mixed in, her previous efforts were of naught and her heart was unwilling to give up. Before she could say anything, consort Xu Xian said, "Since your majesty is not willing to be disturbed by others, Chen Qis would withdraw first. Beseeching your majesty to take care of the dragon's body and don't let this matter hurt one spiritually." Emperor Wenwei did not even raise his head as he waved his hand. No matter how unwilling the empress was, she could only withdraw out with consort Xu Xian. After exiting Yangshan Dian, the empress stopped and looked at consort Xu Xian before laughing coldly. "Ben Gong knows what your heart is thinking. But the sons you gave birth to would never be able to replace Ben Gong's son." 172 to 179. Consort Xu Xian smiled. Younger sister does not deserve older sister's words. The crown prince is as respectable as gold and as precious as jade. This younger sister sincerely want good things for him. The relationship between brothers are close so what is with the words of replacing? She then giggled and admired the empress's seemingly annoyed expression before speaking. It is older sister that younger sister had always wanted to replace. After finishing she then stroked the pearl flower by her temple and walked away enchantingly. The empress remained alone standing in place with gritted teeth. The matter of the empress and consort Xu Xian entering the Yangshan Dian one after the other quickly spread to others' ears. Consort Dongshu was sitting on the couch listening to the palace maid playing chin. She played like mountains were high and water were flowing. The spring water splattering in the tall mountain as backdrop was indeed a wonderful painting. She did not like to fight with outsiders and would pray to Buddha. When she was not normally in the Buddhist hall, she would be sewing flowers and listening to chin at the side hall, not behaving like a consort but an outsider. Among the 4 consorts, the one that was most overlooked was her that one would be amazed as to how she became one of the 4 consorts. Sitting just below her was a man in jade brocade robes, who was slightly smiling as he tilted his head to the side to listen, as if he was immersed in the chin for a long time. At the end of the piece, the maid held the chin as she said her thanks. Consort Dongshu waved her hands and the personal palace maid went forward to bestow money and sent the maid out. When all the people in the side hall had withdrew, Fu Shuyi smiled. Consort mother is exceptionally happy today. The empress cannot sit still. Consort Dongshu smiled. She personally went to Yangshi Dian to plead for the crown prince and of course consort Xian naturally would not miss this opportunity. Prince Zhou and Prince Jing wanted to replace the crown prince and consort Xian would definitely put an effort in the inner palace. It is a pity that it is not a good method. Consort Dongshu picked up the teacup for a sip. However, if the sandpiper and clam don't fight, how does the fisherman profit? Both mother and son smiled together. Fu Shuyi's features resembled more towards consort Dongshu and would look cold normally but when one smiled, it would be soft and tender, making others unable to put up one's vigilance. Consort Dongshu said, "How are you lately?" Fu Shuyi laughed. One had found some interesting secrets and is currently investigating. One think that it would not be long before there would be results. Consort Dongshu looked at him. "You are always one who has a mind of your own so I do not have to worry much about these things. Speaking of which, you should also get married. You are not young of age and if this drags on, one fear that others would inevitably take advantage of it. Consort Xian could not wait for you to marry a female without power and influence as your prince consort." As consort Dongshu spoke, she sighed. Initially that Shen Miao loved you and one had thought that if she carried it on, one would at the end let her enter the family and you would have the power of the Shen family. Who knew that things of the world are fickle, not to mention her temperament has also changed, now the marriage of the Shen family was something that you cannot endure. Fu Shuyi smiled. Although I cannot endure, no one else in Mingqi can handle. Apart from the crown prince, whichever brothers are tied to the Shen family would provoke imperial father's suspicions. Originally the crown prince have success within one's grasp, but beyond expectations, such unforeseen misfortune happened. Most likely the gods are standing on our side. He did not have any trace of regrets and only said, all those official families that have power in Mingqi would not be willing to be tied to the Shen family by marriage. Even though the Shen family is big, it does not mean that Shen Miao could marry well. Consort Dongshu sighed, correct. After speaking, she suddenly thought of something. However, this time the crown prince is indeed suffering grievous and Huang Fu Hao's matter would not end easily. Do you think that this was done by the brothers, Prince Zhou and Prince Jing, or is it by Prince Li? Fu Shuyi did not enter any of the factions as he did not trust his brothers and always held powers alone. At first Prince Zhou's and Prince Li's faction were fiercely fighting, but now that Emperor Wenwei had the intention to support the crown prince and even let the crown prince to marry the Shen family, Prince Zhou and Prince Li were inevitably anxious, but who knew that they would suddenly kill the crown prince. The crown prince had become their enemy and naturally they do not spare any effort to remove him. This time the crown prince killed Huang Fu Hao and everyone who had clear eyes would see that there were flaws to it and most likely the crown prince was schemed. After much calculation, only Prince Zhou and Prince Li had the possibility of doing it. However, such blatant schemes were not the usual style of both people. Fu Shuyi shook his head, it might not be the actions of the both of them. When Consort Dongshu heard it, she was startled and asked, if it is not them then could there still be others? Prince Rui's and Shen Miao's face appeared in Fu Shuyi's mind. There must be some hidden relationship between Prince Rui and Shen Miao. Even though he was not clear as to how this relationship was maintained, as long as it was about Shen Miao, there seemed to be a master coordinating behind the scenes and the indications was undoubtedly Prince Rui. Previously when Emperor Wenwei instructed the Empress to test the waters of the Shen family and let out rumors that Shen Miao would be marrying into the residence of the crown prince, not too long after, Prince Rui said those specious words to Emperor Wenwei, making Emperor Wenwei dispel the thoughts of wanting Shen Miao to immediately marry. Now it was obvious that this appreciation of incense situation was targeting Shen Miao and now it was Huang Fu Hao's and the crown prince's side that were suffering but Shen Miao was safe and sound. One heard that on that day Shen Miao was also heading towards Yifeng Pavilion but during the journey, she knocked onto an old woman and did not go as she was delayed. How could matters be that coincident? Could it be that Prince Rui was also manipulating everything from the back for this time too? If it was the actions of Prince Rui, he was in Mingqi but dared to act so blatantly and schemed against two crown princes. This Prince Rui was indeed somewhat fearful. Seeing that Fu Shuyi was so engrossed in thinking about something, Consort Dongshu asked, what is it? Fu Shuyi recovered to his senses, nothing. He then suddenly stood up and looked at Consort Dongshu. This son suddenly remembered that there are still some matters and will not continue chatting leisurely with Consort Mother. Official matters are important. Consort Dongshu said, you can go first. At the other end, thank goodness Ji Yushu and Gao Yang were finally let out of the tower prison. These days both of them oversaw the prisoners of the tower and saw the many means and methods of torture. It was still a little better for Gao Yang but Ji Yushu had a delicate body and had gotten a lot thinner. It was not because of anything but unable to eat due to nausea. It would be a wonder if one did not slim down. After much difficulty they were then let out and both of them looked at each other in tears wordlessly. After a long while Ji Yushu said, I have to go ABCK to Fengshan Pawn Shop for a shower and change of clothes. We'll say one's farewell here. Finishing, he ran away in a puff of smoke. Gao Yang sighed and looked at his dirty face before his heart was stripped. Xie Jingxing was so ruthless and did not even overlook a little bit and sent them to the tower prison. The tower prison was a place that even Tai Yi was unable to handle when he first went in, much less Ji Yushu and him, who were so pampered. When Ji Yushu returned to Fengshan Pawn Shop, he instructed Hong Luan to draw a bath for him and took a long beautiful bath and eat some snacks before returning to the study. As soon as one stepped in, a smoke of dust flew up. Ji Yushu did not allow the servants to enter this area as there were many secrets thus no one came in to clean. Ji Yushu initially wanted Hong Yuan to clean up for him but after thinking about it, he gave up and gave into his fate and started cleaning up. It was difficult for everything to look all right before Ji Yushu sat down at the desk and started reading after looking at the thick stack of letters on the table. When he flipped to the last letter, Ji Yushu was already a little drowsy but as he looked it, his sleepiness wiped off and his expressions became serious. Pei Lang was actually locked up by Fu Shuyi. Pei Lang's identity was revealed. Heavens! Did anyone know that such a big thing had happened? Could someone rescue? Of course there was none. Observing Pei Lang was Ji Yushu's own decision. After all he was curious why Shen Miao wanted Pei Lang to be a spy by Fu Shuyi's side. Even if Pei Lang had some talent, being a spy would require a great lot of loyalty and Fu Shuyi was very good at managing his subordinates. Won't Shen Miao be worried that Pei Lang would rebel? The most important thing was that Shen Miao relationship with Pei Lang before was just plain and normal so how would she dare to make such a decision? However one had not thought that this move had played a significant role. Ji Yushu turned his head and wanted to leave and pass this letter to Xie Jingxin when he stood still after standing up. Would third older brother lock me up again? Ji Yushu muttered. The reason why Xie Jingxin locked Ji Yushu and Gao Yang up was because that day the Empress summoned Shen Miao to the palace and tried to marry Shen Miao to the crown prince. This matter was left out in the report to Xie Jingxin by the two of them so upon return, Xie Jingxin threw both of them to the tower prison. Third older brother valued Shen Young Lady seriously and this Pei Lang seemed to be interested in Shen Young Lady and even said that he wanted to marry Shen Young Lady. As such, Pei Lang is third older brother's love rival. Since he is a rival, will third older brother beat one up if one tell third older brother now? Third older brother would definitely not want to save him. Ji Yushu mumbled to himself, just like me, I do not like young lady Xiao Yao smiling at that gentleman from the prime minister's family. Afterwards when that gentleman of the prime minister's family fell from the horse, I was very happy about it. Ji Yushu came to a conclusion by himself, it is better not to inform third older brother now. Since there is no new information, he should not have died yet. Let him stay for a few more days before one talk about it. Ji Yushu thought that he had done well but did not know that this action of his would create what kind of changes in the future. Shen Chu and Luo Ling were commanding officers of the city garrison and they were very busy these days. Huang Fu Hao was dead and left behind a pile of problems. As to the guards from the residence of Prince Qin, if they were killed, it would provoke the emperor of Qin country's dissatisfaction. If they were not killed, they keep harping of giving justice for Huang Fu Hao and spread to the commoners that the crown prince was the murderer that these days it was chaotic in Ding capital. One could not kill and could only place them under house arrest. However the Qin crown prince's guards were all personally chosen by the Qin emperor to protect Huang Fu Hao, so how would a normal guard's ability be able to match? Today they were house arrested, tomorrow they would be able to find ways to escape. In order to avoid chaos, the garrison troops had doubled so that innocent people would not be harmed by those guards from Qin country. After matters are finished today, the skies had slowly approached to evening. Shen Chu and Luo Ling walked on the streets shoulder by shoulder. It was close to the end of the year and the streets of Ding capital would be bustling but due to the matter of Huang Fu Hao, the commoners were reminded by the troops of the city garrison and returned back home early. There was only a few people walking even though it was not nighttime. Shen Chu sighed, if the Ministry of Justice do not speak, the city garrison would no longer be able to handle it. After the crown prince was imprisoned, at one side the Qin emperor kept on pressuring for an explanation and the other side, Emperor Wenwei felt reluctant to part with his only eldest son, thus the commoners had to suffer. It is not peaceful this year. Luo Ling shook his head. No matter what the result is, one fear that Ding capital will be chaotic. Both of them looked at one another and both of them saw the worries in each other's eyes. Shen Chu said, don't speak about this anymore. Yesterday I heard mother said that younger sister's marriage have to be reconsidered from the beginning. Even though one did not need to worry about the crown prince's side, but the more chaotic the situation seems, the more someone would want to take advantage of the Shen family. Younger sister's identity is special, so it is inevitable that others would lust for. If one does not set the marriage earlier, it would not be good for the future. When Luo Ling heard those words, he was however startled for a moment, and before he could speak, he heard Shen Chu speaking. Younger Biao brother, what do you think? Luo Ling's face turned slightly red. Doesn't older Biao brother already knew my thoughts? Shen Chu snorted and one of his hands sling onto Luo Ling's shoulder. You are after all one who practiced martial arts and followed Juju to the army camps, so why when you speak about this matter, you are like those weak scholarly tarts? He said, from my view, everything about you is good except you have a thin skin. With regards to this matter, you don't talk to younger sister about it. Could it be that you want younger sister to take the initiative to look for you? Luo Ling smiled somewhat awkwardly. Shen Chu tempted. My younger sister temperament on surface is gentle and soft but was stubborn and proud to the bones. If you wanted younger sister to take the initiative to look for you, then one fear that you should not think about it. Males must have a sense of manhood. Like means like, just go directly. Even though you cannot beat me. Shen Chu looked somewhat picky at Luo Ling, but the current situation is different and you barely qualify. If you are my Mei Fu, I will recognize it. Shen Chu said heroically, but Luo Ling was more startled. This also requires younger Biao's sister to agree. You don't even talk of it. How would younger sister know of your thoughts? Shen Chu blinked, not to say anything else. First you have to find an opportunity to confess to younger sister what you actually think. Younger Biao brother, I will honestly tell you, I don't like that Su Minglang was previously sick. Feng Zixian, the last time their Feng family almost caused younger sister to lose her life, thus this should not be mentioned. Speaking of this and that, you are actually not bad. Many thanks to Biao older brother. Luo Ling smiled. If there is an opportunity, I will do it. Shen Chu still wanted to say something when he saw a horse suddenly galloping over from the other side of the streets. That coat of fur on the hose was smooth and shiny that even if it was evening, it was heroic and eye-catching. Shen Chu and Luo Ling could not help but be attracted to the horse. The person on the horse was also valiant and one could tell from afar the graceful manner of the person. When the person got closer to the both of them, suddenly the horse stopped and its front hoofs raised up, but the person who sat on it was extremely stable. It was obvious that the riding skills were exceptional. Shen Chu could not help but say, good. The person on the horse said, Vice General Shen. Shen Chu was startled. Upon seeing that there was a person sitting on the horse, that purple gold noble clothes were getting more radiant under the lantern light. The person's stature was tall and there was a silver mask on the face, revealing an ideal shape of one's face. One's chin was clean and thin lips were slightly tilted as a pair of eyes looked downwards, as if it has some style of laughter but not laughter. Your Highness Prince Rui. Shen Chu and Luo Ling quickly bowed with hands held in front. They have seen Prince Rui during the tribute banquet, thus knew undoubtedly that this was Prince Rui. Moreover, only Prince Rui alone had this lazy and arrogant temperament. Prince Rui said, no need to stand on ceremony. Just now this prince thought that one had seen wrongly and did not expect to really see Vice General Shen. Thus one stopped to greet. He only spoke to Shen Chu and did not look at Luo Ling. Shen Chu was somewhat shocked with the flattering. This Prince Rui had always had the temperament of not placing Emperor Wenwei in his eyes, and he actually took the initiative to greet him and spoke so courteously. At one end, Shen Chu was secretly alert, wondering if the other person was up to some trick, and on the other end felt a sense of self-satisfaction. Could it be that his vice general reputation was so famous that Prince Rui of Great Liang would be so eager to pursue? However, he did not see Luo Ling's pale white face. On Prince Rui's waist, there was a safety pendant that was hanging, which was oddly familiar. The pattern around the safety pendant was very special and one could recognize it from a glance. Luo Ling's expression thus became very ugly and he asked, one dare to ask your Highness Prince Rui. Where does the safety pendant on one's waist came from? Shen Chu looked at Luo Ling strangely. Luo Ling was one who knew his boundaries and would be very calm outside, however he rashly asked Prince Rui and this was simply too abrupt. Prince Rui was in a good mood and came over to greet, and it was one's honor. One had to see if Prince Rui was willing to answer when one asked Prince Rui a question. Unexpectedly today Prince Rui would give him face and untie the safety amulet. He spun it in his hands and said with a lazy smile, this. It is given to me by a young lady. Shen Chu. Prince Rui's words were a lot today. Why did he need to bring up these romance matters to both of them? Shen Chu felt awkward as he felt that one would die faster if one knew some stuff, but he was not at all interested in Prince Rui's private matters, so why did Luo Ling ask such stuff? Luo Ling's face became paler and he could not help but stared at the safety pendant in Prince Rui's hands. However, Prince Rui only took a glance at him before hanging the safety pendant back on his waist and said to Shen Chu, this prince still have some things and would not be chatting more with Vice General Shen. If Vice General Shen is free in future, do come over to the residence of Prince Rui for a visit. He continued with a smile but not a smile, this prince really wants to exchange notes with Vice General Shen. Finishing, he pulled the reins and the horse lifted its hoofs before suddenly leaving. Shen Chu and Luo Ling stood stunned on the same spot. Shen Chu muttered, could it be that this Prince Rui want to draw me to his side? Without any rhyme or reason, why did Prince Rui want him to visit the residence of Prince Rui? Shen Chu dared to say that one feared that Prince Rui did not say such things to the princes of Mingqi before. Although his martial arts were indeed outstanding, it could be that Prince Rui had taken into fancy his martial arts skills. Shen Chu felt self-contented when he suddenly Luo Ling's unusual expression. Feeling that it was somewhat strange, he asked, younger Biao brother, what is wrong with you? Are you not feeling well? Why is your expression so ugly? Luo Ling regained to his senses and forcefully smiled, nothing. Let's go back. Alright, Shen Chu looked as Prince Rui disappeared at the end of the streets and said, it seemed that Prince Rui likes that young lady a lot and actually carry the love token on his waist. One does not know which family's young lady is that fortunate. One feared that she would be awakened in her dreams. Shen Chu's heart was magnanimous but did not discover on the route back, Luo Ling's steps were staggering. It seemed that he had been attacked very hard. As expected by everyone, Huang Fu Hao's assassination in Mingqi had brought a lot of trouble. Although the Crown Prince's clique had been striving for the Crown Prince's innocence, but there was no movements from the investigation bureau. It seemed that the Crown Prince would be imprisoned for a long time. Emperor Wen Hui's action also gave the court officials a new impression. The tea cools when the person left. When the Crown Prince was imprisoned, some people saw that it was not right and in a turn of a head, quickly turned towards another prince. The situation in court changed but it was not mentioned at all. The winds at night were cold. When one went out with Luo Tan in the daytime to buy fabrics for the new year, Luo Shuiyan said that both of them were young ladies had to have more clothes, thus they almost went around the entire Ding capital. When they returned to the residence, Shen Miao was so tired. After instructing Jing Jie and Gu Yu to draw the water and after Shen Miao came out from her bathe, she saw that there was an additional person in the room. When Xie Jingxing turned around, he saw Shen Miao wearing her middle garments and one hand holding on to a towel, drying her hair. The young female was different from 2 years ago. Although her stature was still petite, but just like a bud that bloomed and was waiting to be released, the scent was very fragrant. Her middle garments was slightly damp and one could almost seem to see through the material and under the light. Her lips were red and her teeth was white and eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of moisture. Her hair was black and wet, sticking to her face and if one looked down, one could see the snow white. Xie Jingxing looked away. Before Shen Miao could even react, she saw a thick cloak thrown towards her and almost hit her. Holding onto the cloak, Shen Miao said angrily, "What are you doing?" "Wear it." Xie Jingxing frowned. "No one would care if you catch a cold." Shen Miao was angry. This person would always make good words sound so hateful but she indeed felt somewhat cold and covered herself with the cloak. Xie Jingxing then turned his head over and swept his eyes on her. Seeing that Shen Miao almost did not care that there was a male in the room and continued to dry her hair normally, Xie Jingxing's lips could not help but twitched. However, one could not blame Shen Miao for not having this thought. In her previous life, she loved Fu Shuyi but from the beginning till the end it was her own wishful thinking and the couple was not harmonious at all. When Fu Shuyi was acting towards her, the very most he would be grateful and respectful. As for those appearances that make one's heart jump, there was none. Afterwards she became the empress and the most she faced was the 3,000 beauties in the palace and saw eunuchs the most. Thus she did not find that there was anything wrong with this appearance of hers. As she dried her hair, she walked over to sit down. Seeing Xie Jingxing looking at her thoughtfully, she did not know why but her face warmed up and she asked, "What are you looking at?" "Thought that you would not be shy at all." Xie Jingxing said lazily, "Fortunately not. One can be relieved." Shen Miao felt unfathomable. Xie Jingxing pinched her chin and asked her as he looked at her, "What are you looking for me for?" Today it was Shen Miao who instructed Kong Yang to think of ways to get Xie Jingxing over and since there is someone in the room that could pass the message, it was a waste not to use. However, Kong Yang was really very useful as Xie Jingxing was here now. Shen Miao's hands stopped drying her hair and she hesitated before asking, "Gentleman Pei had not returned my letters for a long time. Help me to inquire about the residence of Prince Ding. Did Gentleman Pei fall into mishap?" When Shen Miao said Gentleman Pei, there was somewhat of a hesitation. She did not take the initiative to tell Xie Jingxing about Pei Lang's matter but with Xie Jingxing's means and methods, one feared that he had long knew the relationship between Pei Lang and her clearly. Pei Lang previously would have written to her every 3 to 5 days and would pass on some information about the residence of Prince Ding but these few days there was no letters. Shen Miao guessed that something had happened and if there was no Xie Jingxing, she would have directly went to look for Feng Xian pawn shop. Since Xie Jingxing is around and Ji Yushu was one with Xie Jingxing then she could directly entrust it to Xie Jingxing. Hearing that, Xie Jingxing's gaze paused and he looked at her meaningfully, "Pei Lang." He said faintly, "You really care for him?" Shen Miao frowned, "I am not a person who destroyed the bridge after crossing the river." Even though she was dissatisfied with Pei Lang in her previous life, in this life Pei Lang was after all standing at the same side with her, thus she was unable to do any betraying things. Xie Jingxing nodded casually, "All right, I will inquire about it for you." Shen Miao, why did it feel that Xie Jingxing was just perfunctory speaking about it? Both of them were silent, making the atmosphere a bit awkward. Shen Miao changed the conversation topic and asked, "One heard that the crown prince was not released yet. What is the situation in Tai Palace now?" Xie Jingxing gave her a glance and said, "Don't worry. The crown prince is finished." Shen Miao was startled, "What?" The emperor of Qin country had already gave that old emperor a final threat. If he does not deal with the crown prince and avenge Huang Fu Hao, he would send troops to attack Mingqi. Xie Jingxing stared at the cup, watching the leaves sink down and one was unable to hear any happiness or anger in his voice. At this juncture, the old emperor dare not take the risk. Shen Miao said, "Had already sent the final threat. Could it be?" But, she lifted her head and looked at Xie Jingxing. For such words to be spoken so quickly, it seemed that the emperor of Qin did not investigate the reason behind it and take the crown prince as the scapegoat. Does he not want to catch his son's true murderer? Shen Miao's thoughts were that even though one could guess this result, but she did not expect that it would come that quickly. After all, it was not a small matter when a person died. No matter what, the emperor of Qin country had to investigate it and Emperor Wen Wei and the other party had to be in deadlock for some time. Xie Jingxing's lips twitched, naive. Shen Miao, it had been a long time since someone called her naive. She could hear Xie Jingxing continue speaking, the imperial family only cared about the result and the truth is not important. After all, Huang Fu Hao cannot come back to life. He placed with the teacup in his hands and said faintly, the Qin country had lost a crown prince and a princess. The Qin country might not have any other suitable princes and the court in Qin country must be in chaos due to this matter. The Qin country is vigilant with Mingqi and naturally would want Mingqi to pay the same price. No matter if the crown prince is the murderer or not, the crown prince must die. Xie Jingxing's smile was indifferent, only with the crown prince death, Mingqi and the Qin country can be even. Shen Miao's heart took a slight breath of cold air. Xie Jingxing's words indeed unfeeling but it tore through the cloth that was covering the surface. Mingqi's and the Qin country's power were comparable and now that the Qin country had lost a crown prince, the fight between the princes would only throw the court in chaos. If Mingqi remained the same, it would only make others angry. In any case, the first reaction of one who was in the mud was not to climb out but to pull someone beside together in. All the so-called alliances that share the gains and pains were nothing but bundled interests and these interests were all carefully calculated. One feared that Emperor Wen Wei had already saw this point clearly so very quickly the crown prince had been a weight that was required to balance this unfair situation. Mingqi had a crown prince thus the crown prince was wiped out. No matter how much one could not bear, because of the country, one had to give it up. Shen Miao was silent and did not speak. Xie Jingxing laughed instead, 1 arrow, 2 eagles. You did a good job. Shen Miao said, I am only responsible for the idea. You were the one who contributed in the effort. This act was thought out by Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing was responsible for perfecting it. Xie Jingxing had many talented subordinates and among these, they could calculate the crown princes and Huang Fu Hao's route and punctually acted out the entire performance and all these was not completed simply. Shen Miao felt that it was Xie Jingxing that should be credited the most. Xie Jingxing gently smiled and did not deny it. After speaking for a while, Shen Miao's hair had dried and she yawned twice. When Xie Jingxing saw it, he started to leave. When he was leaving, Shen Miao suddenly stopped him but hesitated for a moment before asking, did Princess Rongxin look for you recently? No. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. Then, what do you plan to do? Xie Jingxing did not turn around as he was up towards the window and threw out 3 words. Not doing anything.